Our story opens on a man crushed by exhaustion, hauling a massive spike torn from a fallen monster. The orders were brutally simple: clear the battlefield before sundown or no one eats. For the living, the only option was to keep moving. The man faltered under the weight. Instantly, the captain's venomous glare fell upon him, his voice dripping with scorn. "Get a move on," he roared. This struggling soul was Yi Yi, just another ordinary man trying to survive in a world gone mad. And this forgotten face in the crowd is destined to be our main protagonist. In the year 2026, humanity faced an apocalypse beyond all reason. From the depths of the earth, colossal insects erupted, tearing open countless gateways to other realms. People named these gateways abysses, and from their depths crawled monsters born from nightmares, creatures from the most brutal video game dungeons. But these abysses didn't just bring monsters, they bled a mysterious radiation into the world. A chosen few absorbed this energy, gaining unimaginable powers. They became humanity's hope, the awakeners. But for the unawakened majority, survival meant doing the dirtiest, most grueling jobs. For Ye Yi, it meant loading monster carcasses onto a truck until his body screamed. His strength finally gave out, and he collapsed onto all fours. Seeing this, the captain stormed over and struck him across the face without a second thought. He was berated for his weakness, accused of faking it. Ye Yi could only caress his cheek, biting his lip to swallow his rage and humiliation. Though his face was already bruising, a pathetic thought crossed his mind. He hoped the captain hadn't hurt his own hand on his face. The captain sneered, calling him a useless burden. "Can you work or not? If not, get lost and die somewhere else." "I can," Ye Yi whispered. The captain bellowed that the corpses had to be moved by nightfall, reminding them that food was a reward, not a right. Ye Yi promised he would finish the job. But just then, a violent tremor shook the very ground beneath them. He thought it was an earthquake, but the truth was far worse. A monster erupted before him, a terrifying worm with 4 tusks and a maw lined with razor-sharp teeth. The color drained from his face. A wave of pure terror washed over the workers. One of the beasts was still alive. They scattered, running for their lives. The captain saw Ye Yi frozen in fear, knowing a blind retreat was a death sentence. In that instant, he made a cold, calculated decision. A gunshot ripped through the air. Searing pain exploded in Ye Yi's leg. He stared in disbelief, turning to see the smoking gun in the captain's hand. As Ye Yi crumpled to the ground, the captain sprinted past him. "The weak are meant to be bait," he shouted over his shoulder. The horrifying truth crashed down on him. He was left behind, a sacrifice so the others could escape. All he ever wanted was to live. But why was survival itself so impossibly hard? He finally understood. For someone as weak and powerless as him, this cruel world offered no hope from the very beginning. Tears of despair streamed down his face. Through his blurry vision, he saw a small insect crawling over his hand. A bitter thought surfaced. Cockroaches have it easy. They can eat anything, survive anywhere, while he fought every moment just for a scrap of bread. They were invincible survivors. Even the abyss radiation couldn't kill them. If there really was a next life, he thought, maybe being a cockroach wouldn't be so bad after all. And with that final thought, the monster consumed him whole. In that moment, unseen by any human eye, ethereal screens lit up. Human transformation initiated. Evolution system activated. System failure. Retrying reconstruction. After 4 failed attempts, it reached the 1,599,999th reconstruction. Success. When Ye Yi opened his eyes again, he found himself in a filthy, dark space. Was this the afterlife? He lifted a hand to his face, but what he saw wasn't human. He scurried toward a nearby mirror and stared at his own reflection. He reeled back in shock, the same primal horror a human feels when seeing a cockroach, because that's exactly what he had become. Is that me? He couldn't process it. His desperate dying wish had actually come true. He was a cockroach. He even had 2 extra arms. But the strangest part? It felt completely natural. As if they'd always been there. The only thing that felt alien was a strange, powerful muscle on his back. He flexed it, and his wings erupted, launching him into the air. He panicked, screaming internally for it to stop. Crashing into a wall, he tumbled to the ground. He realized that with just a slight tension in his back, the wings moved on their own. A wave of immense regret washed over him. If he had known death wishes were this powerful, he would have asked for something so much better. Suddenly, a voice boomed in his mind, calling him ungrateful. A magnificent golden cockroach materialized before him, radiating divine offense. "How dare you mock the blessing of the Cockroach God?" The Cockroach God declared that in 5,000 years, Ye Yi was the first human ever to pray for its power. "I was prepared to grant you the ultimate abilities," the god declared, "but now I see you regret receiving my gift." Ye Yi's mind reeled. The isekai novels were real. He frantically tried to appease the deity. "Oh, great cockroach system, No, wait, father. He apologized profusely, but the cockroach god remained silent, its golden form fading away into nothingness. A system screen flickered before him with a final, devastating message. System shutting down due to user dislike. He had just managed to anger his one and only cheat code. For the next 10 days, Ye Yi tried everything he could to summon the system again. He prayed, he begged, he groveled, but nothing worked. He noticed other cockroaches watching him, chirping to each other in confusion. And in that moment, he realized he could understand every single word they said. His first night as a creature was spent in utter solitude. Joking about becoming a cockroach was one thing, but living it was a nauseating reality. He glanced at the others nearby, who were in the middle of their meal. The sight made him want to vomit. They were feasting on actual dung. One of the cockroaches took notice of him. It brought him a piece of fresh waste, encouraging him to eat. He turned pale, yelling at it to get away from him. But the roach insisted, shoving the foul meal right into his face, letting him have the runnier piece as a supposed treat. On pure instinct, Yi slapped the creature to force it back, and it fell hard onto the ground. It looked up at him, its feelings clearly hurt. Yi apologized, explaining it was because its breath reeked of filth. He suggested it go die somewhere else before they ever spoke again. And so, on the 5th night, Yi could only lie on the ground, defeated. He cursed his own biology, because now even the stench of dung was starting to smell delicious. He knew he had to find food fast, or he might just sleepwalk into a pile of it. He rummaged through plastic bags, knowing a sealed one could hide food that normal roaches couldn't smell. But he was different. Based on his human knowledge, he expected to find something edible within the mountain of trash. He saw a plastic container labeled as 3 years expired. With a surge of hope, he rushed to open it. The system chimed in, notifying him of an expired egg yolk pile. It contained approximately 385 calories and was edible for his new body. The thought was disgusting, but his stomach roared with hunger. In the end, he devoured it. Joy overwhelmed him as he ate. Even the smell was heavenly. He knew no human could eat this, but for a cockroach like him, it was a magnificent feast. He cried, having finally received what he wished for. But by the 10th night, the cockroach god still had not returned. He thought becoming a cockroach would make the apocalypse easier to survive, but reality had struck him with a cruel blow. He was so miserable he even considered ending his own life. But as a cockroach, he couldn't die from falling, drowning, or even poison. His only option was to find a predator and let it eat him. But having been eaten in his past life, the mere thought of it sent shudders of agony through him, forcing him to cling to life. He felt fortunate that at least cockroaches were social insects. He believed that if he could dominate a colony and become its king, he would have a much better chance at survival. In that moment, he felt he didn't even need a system. With his human intelligence alone, he could conquer this world. He started with the one right beside him, a creature he decided to call Little Fatty. He asked him to team up, but was aggressively rejected for not even being able to secure fresh poop. He realized in this world, power wasn't about comfort, but about being a provider. He understood then that he needed an opportunity to prove his worth. On his 20th day as a cockroach, that chance finally came. A muscular cockroach announced that from that day forward, they were moving to a better feeding ground. They could either join them or stay and wait to be devoured by predators. One of the listeners cried out that they no longer had any poop to eat. In Ye's mind, these cockroaches were pathetic leaders. The crying roach then bawled, expressing his fear of going outside. He looked at the other cockroaches and wondered why they all looked so terrified. Was it possible they were just that lazy? The muscular cockroach asked if anyone would volunteer to scout ahead. He demanded they speak up, but everyone remained dead silent. Yi didn't involve himself. He didn't need their disgusting poop to survive anyway. But then the system appeared, relaying a message from the cockroach god. If he accepted this mission, he might be forgiven. Without a second thought, he raised his antenna and volunteered to lead the charge. Little Fatty looked at him, completely in awe of his bravery. A grin spread across his face as he thought to himself that his cheat code was finally back online. A few moments later, they were hiding behind the grass. All they had to do was cross the dam, which he thought would be easy. But Little Fatty was shaking with fear, telling him he knew nothing. He revealed that every time food ran low, the big cockroaches sent the little ones to scout new locations, turning them into a walking buffet for predators. He screamed that they were all going to die. Ye finally understood. This wasn't a mission, it was a suicide run. It made him realize the cockroach god was screwing with him, sending him to die as a sacrifice. He yelled out that he was backing out. Besides, he had a way to keep them all fed. Little Fatty looked absolutely terrified. Yi was confused by his reaction. Little did he know, the massive cockroach was standing right behind him. It hissed, asking where he thought he was going. Then it told him that beyond the dam, there were monster corpses just waiting to be eaten. First come, first served. He realized that cockroaches in this world had evolved to eat interdimensional monsters. One cockroach exclaimed that it was amazing. It was like having free food forever. Yi told the big guy that he was on a diet and that they should just go on ahead. The big cockroach stared at him suspiciously. Then, in a flash, it moved and grabbed him by the neck. The ultimatum was clear: scout for them, or become their next meal. Ye understood with chilling clarity that the law of the jungle applied even to insects. It was a grim echo of his human days, when his own team was used as cannon fodder, sent out on missions simply because they were expendable. His old leader's cruel words rang in his ears. Searching for food is a privilege. He saw that same tyrannical arrogance in this giant cockroach. It slammed him to the ground with contempt, sneering that he should be grateful for this chance at life. Then, its foot came crashing down on his head. Pinned and humiliated, a fire ignited within him. The power to eat anything was not enough. He had to get his true cheat code back. His resolve hardened. He would grow stronger. Leading the way across the dam, he commanded his brothers to spread out and advance. His order was simple: signal the group at the first sign of trouble. He tried to shake off little Fatty, but the poor thing was paralyzed with fear. Yi scanned the path ahead, a sense of dread creeping into his heart. They were nowhere near a river, so why were there wave barriers here? Meanwhile, the large cockroaches sighed in relief. They were halfway across, and the coast seemed clear. With greedy smirks, they prepared to move in. They wouldn't let those weaklings claim all the best resources. Taking to the skies, they sped forward with a cowardly plan. If danger appeared, the little ones would be the first sacrifice. Yi scoffed in disgust. They could fly, yet they forced others into danger. Pathetic. But then, a chilling presence emerged from the shadows behind them. He first saw them as giant, glowing red eyes. Terror seized him. For a moment, he prayed they were just stones, but then the horrifying truth dawned. They were toads. Cries of horror tore through the air. Lightning-fast tongues shot out as the cockroaches scattered in a blind panic. A desperate voice screamed, "Run for your lives! Scatter and fly!" One was caught in an instant. Its shriek was cut short by a sickening crunch. Within moments, several more were devoured by the monsters. Suddenly, the system window appeared before him. Predator detected. Analyzing biological data. Target identified. Mutant toad. It's an amphibian whose powerful legs allow it to leap 20 times its own body length. Its tongue extends at 4 meters per second, lined with barbed teeth and coated in a paralyzing mucus. Its weakness: it cannot perceive stationary prey. Yi's voice cut through the chaos. "Everyone, freeze. They can't see anything that doesn't move. Get down and hold your breath," he commanded. At that very moment, the voice of the Cockroach God echoed in his mind, presenting a fateful choice. Option 1, take the safe route and escape with your life. Option 2, save your fellow cockroach and gain the first loyal follower on your path to becoming the Cockroach King. His first thought was cynical. What good was being king if he was already dead? The choice seemed obvious. Until he heard little Fatty's desperate wails. He saw the absolute terror in its eyes as it stared right at him. A painful memory surged back. The one thing he ever truly wished for in his past life wasn't to become a bug. He just wished that once, just once, someone would have turned back to save him. As the god began the final countdown, Yi relived that old despair. That desperate longing for a hero who never came. In a flash, he grabbed Fatty and took flight, yelling at him about needing a diet. Overjoyed, Fatty cried out, "Bro, I love you." "Shut it!" Yi snapped. "Your breath is distracting me." But his retort died in his throat as a sudden darkness swallowed them whole. They were flying straight into a toad's gaping mouth. This was the end. He looked at Fatty and made his final decision. With all his strength, he hurled Fatty to safety. As Fatty turned, he could only watch in horror as his savior was consumed, his world shattered. But then, a new system window appeared. Test of the Cockroach God. Passed. Your selfless spirit has moved the heavens. System access fully restored. New trait unlocked. Devour all things. Now activating. New abilities acquired. Sticky tongue. Acidic mucus. Absorbed from mutant toad. In that instant, the massive creature exploded from within. A special reward has been granted. Ye stepped out from the toad's remains. A notification appeared. Bionic body has been unlocked. He stood in his human form, drenched in green blood. The god's voice boomed. Even facing death, you upheld righteousness. You are worthy to be my successor. Does that mean? Ye asked, hope surging through him. I don't have to be a cockroach anymore? The Cockroach God explained that a cockroach is small, yet strong, and because of this, it is indestructible. Since you have already attained indestructibility, it declared, the form you take is of no consequence. Ye blinked, admitting he was terrible with riddles. Could you put that in plain words? The god roared in frustration. It means you can keep your human form and still be immortal, you idiot. He was human again. He wasn't a cockroach. Overcome with pure joy, he leaped high into the air, shouting in celebration. The cockroach god watched, impressed. Few humans ever showed compassion for insects, yet this one had sacrificed everything for his companion. But as he landed from his triumphant jump, he felt a soft squish under his foot. He lifted it slowly and saw a completely flattened, little fatty. The god's voice thundered with sheer disbelief. You just stepped on the very companion you died to save. A cold sweat trickled down Ye's back. He became human because he saved little fatty. Now that he'd squished him, would he turn back into a cockroach? He had to think fast. He took a deep breath. His survival no longer depended on power, but on his acting skills. The cockroach god sneered. What a fool he had chosen. But his words were drowned out by Ye's piercing scream. He feigned utter heartbreak over little fatty's death, acting as if his entire world had just crumbled. The performance was truly next level. He even thrashed on the ground, wailing hysterically. This display made the cockroach god pause. Perhaps the bond between this human and the roach ran deeper than he ever imagined. The god ordered him to silence his tears. Little fatty wasn't truly dead. To be precise, it could not die. It had become his guardian spirit. As long as its king lived, it would revive endlessly. His mission was simple: slay mutant monsters to refill its energy, and it would be reborn. Their eyes fell upon the unsuspecting toads. He had planned to show mercy, but that was no longer an option. He would make them remember the terror of humanity's dominance. As he lunged for a toad, his massive, steaming, naked form was a clear homage to a certain titan. The toad sensed the approaching threat. In an instant, it launched itself at him. But this creature moved like Captain Levi in his prime. A powerful slap struck him across the face, bruising his cheek. He seethed with annoyance. This Levi wannabe dared to take on a titan? He trapped the creature in his hands, but the cockroach god's warning came too late. He looked down at his palms only to find them scorched. The toad's body secreted a corrosive mucus. He roared in agony, dropping the creature. As he shook his burning hands, his entire naked body jiggled in sync. Just then, the toad noticed a small, dangling, caterpillar-like object. Its bizarre tongue shot out with terrifying speed. The tip split open like a grasping hand and seized Ye's most private part. A blood-curdling scream echoed as he jerked upwards in pure agony. He finally wrestled the toad free. He admitted his defeat to the cockroach god. He couldn't even handle a single mutant toad. The god was completely unfazed. The toad was using its innate abilities, while Yi was just flailing around like a fool. Yi desperately searched for a power of his own. The cockroach god reminded him of the gift he bestowed. The divine trait, devour all things. Devour the frog, and its immunity would be his. The god held the wriggling creature before him, declaring, "When you devour everything, you shall ascend to godhood." He begged to cook it first, but the cockroach god shoved it straight into his mouth. Swallow it raw. He desperately craved power, but the instant his tongue met the amphibian's skin, over 10,000 taste buds screamed in revolt. The taste was beyond disgusting. He retched violently, crying out that he couldn't do it. The god warned him plainly, do it or die. He was already surrounded. And right on cue, a horde of toads leaped toward him. Panic seized him, but then a thought surfaced. In his past life, he'd worked himself to death for not even a scrap of food. But now, power was literally being served on a platter. Why was he still hesitating? With newfound resolve, he devoured the toad. A system window materialized before his eyes. Trait Devour. All things has been activated, detecting the creature's traits. Yi had acquired corrosive mucus, frog leap, and elastic muscles. A look of profound enlightenment washed over his face. He faced the remaining toads with a smirk. Your little tricks are useless against me now. He moved like a gymnast, dispatching them with graceful ease. After the last one fell, he sighed dramatically. True invincibility is such a lonely existence. But suddenly, a blinding light pierced the darkness. He shielded his eyes. The light came from a military convoy. A soldier's voice boomed. We've found a naked weirdo performing unspeakable acts on the local fauna. Yi called out, asking if they were his rescuers. But in the blink of an eye, the order was given to execute. Anesthetic darts rained down upon him. Just moments before, as the trucks arrived, Yi had spotted a familiar insignia. It was the mark of the legendary Extermination Squad. He knew their name from his past life. They were humanity's strongest shield, the elite force of the apocalypse. Every single member was an elite-class awakener. They hunt monsters on the surface and in the abyss, track new threats in real time, and maintain order within the cities. It was said that under their protection, civilization had almost returned to its pre-disaster peace. Seeing them, Ye believed he was saved. But to his utter shock, he became their target. He collapsed as the soldiers moved in to capture him. As they cautiously approached his fallen form, they were stunned to see him stir. His body trembled as he forced himself back to his feet. His new skill, elastic muscles, had activated. He could now control every fiber in his body, allowing him to dodge attacks with superhuman agility. With a subtle flex, the dart simply popped out of his skin. The soldiers immediately recognized the danger. They snapped into combat formation. Yi raised a hand, desperately trying to explain. A soldier yelled the order to fire, but a new voice cut through the tension. Stop. All eyes turned. A woman sat atop a truck, ordering them to capture him alive. It was their captain. Ye's annoyance grew. Didn't any of these people understand human speech? The roar of engines shattered the silence. Bikers swarmed in from all sides, surrounding Ye completely. Steel ropes sliced through the air, lashing around his neck, his arms, and his feet. Then the bikes roared to life, dragging him mercilessly. He was suspended in the air, pulled taut, as the bikers sped off in 5 different directions. A guttural scream tore from his throat as his body was stretched to its absolute limit. Veins bulged across his skin as he unleashed his power. Corrosive mucus! A caustic slime instantly oozed from every pore. The captain's eyes widened. The ropes dissolved into nothing, and he was free! As the bikers crashed in a heap of tangled metal, the captain realized he was an awakener too. She gave the order, catch him. Her squad moved as one, chasing him down. The green-haired soldier tackled his torso, but Ye tore himself free with raw strength. The soldier glanced at his hand, watching it steam from the acid's touch. How interesting. Another soldier lunged for Ye, leaping high for a devastating punch, but Ye twisted away at the last possible second. The punch slammed into the concrete, sending debris flying everywhere. Through the dust, another soldier appeared, baseball bat ready to swing. Ye slid low across the ground, bending backward just as the bat whistled inches above his face. He desperately called for his cheat code. The system activated. Frog leap. The world blurred around him. When he looked back, his pursuers were already specks in the distance. He couldn't help but mock them, but his celebration was cut short as he suddenly tripped and fell. A purple cord was wrapped tightly around his ankle. The beautiful and deadly captain hadn't even moved. She simply stared down at him. Did you really think you could escape? Panic seized our boy's heart. He thought he was safe. She reeled him in like a fish on a line as more ropes shot from her fingertips, ensnaring his whole body. In a single, fluid motion, she jumped down, cinched the ropes tight, and pinned him to the ground with her boot. She attached the line to her bike and drove off, dragging him into the dust. Spare me, Ye cried as they sped toward the stronghold city. A massive gate began to open as a voice announced, Vice Captain Eileen has returned. Don't open it too wide, she ordered. We don't want any unwanted guests. She slipped through the gap, and the gate slammed shut behind her. They brought Ye to the extermination squad's prison, flanked by 2 women in lab coats, with Eileen leading the way. I'm harmless, he pleaded. And since when is being naked a crime during the apocalypse? The woman on the right gasped. It can talk? She whispered that he was different from the last 12. Eileen warned them not to let their guard down. She explained that over the past week, 12 unknown refugees had appeared, and every time, the story was the same. All naked, all grinning like idiots, and completely mute. The tests say they're normal humans, but something about them feels wrong. The woman on the left scoffed, We should just kill them all. It would save us a lot of trouble. Her colleague shot back, If we start executing people just for being mentally impaired or ugly, we'd be no different than the monsters outside. Quit complaining. The gene test results will be out tomorrow. Ye's blood ran cold. He'd been arrested simply because he matched the profile of those 12 weirdos. Then he thought about the gene test. He desperately asked the Cockroach God, Can they detect me with that? The Cockroach God replied, What's a gene test? Ye knew he was screwed. The cell door opened. Eileen glared at him. Whether you're a pervert or one of them, just sit tight and behave. Why are the lights out? He asked. One of the researchers peered into the darkness, noticing the vacant chairs. She turned to her partner. Did you move the prisoners? There's only one left in there. No. The ponytailed woman replied, her eyes wide with shock. The lone prisoner inside sat perfectly still. Eileen sensed a deep malice. Suddenly, the prisoner's head began to swell. They all looked up and gasped in horror as the others floated near the ceiling. What is that? Ye stammered. The prisoners' heads had inflated like grotesque balloons, keeping their bodies suspended in the air. What's more, they all wore the same creepy, vacant expression. Absolute terror seized Ye's heart. Behind him, the restrained prisoner roared as its skull began to crack and splinter. Something was breaking out. Ye and the researcher spun around. Before them stood a monster that looked like a twisted tree, with mushrooms on its head, 3 glowing eyes, a spiky mouth, and writhing vines. The vines shot out, wrapping around them in an instant. Then, the creature targeted Eileen. She leaped back to avoid it, realizing this was its true form. Horrifying bumps erupted on the researcher's skin, multiplying instantly until she was covered in boils. Ye felt them on his own body, confused and terrified. The Cockroach God's voice screamed in his mind, "You have been parasitized! Chew on the pores at once," it commanded, "or you'll turn into a zombie." The monster shrieked in delight, "I want your body!" Eileen was stunned. It can talk? She'd never seen a species like this before. The infected researchers began to move like puppets. They shambled toward Eileen. She fired a rope to the ceiling and pulled herself up, evading their grasp. In her mind, she cursed. Dealing with parasite-type monsters is always a pain. This isn't an enemy she can just rush in and punch. In this place, her abilities were practically useless. And she was fresh out of magic crystals. Then, her eyes spotted something on the table. Scalpels. She snatched one and sent it flying. The creature saw it coming, whipping its vines to intercept, but it used the researchers as a human shield. Eileen's eyes widened in shock. She was forced to yank back her threads. It was a last-second stop. Any closer and she would have struck the researcher. The monster taunted her, calling her a coward. Meanwhile, Ye was in agony, unable to eat the spore fast enough as it drilled into him. The Cockroach God boomed, "Stop your whining and swallow it already." He choked it down. A system window flashed before his eyes. By devouring the parasitic spore, he had acquired parasite resistance. His resistance level skyrocketed to 45%. Eileen grabbed the rest of the scalpels. "You're the coward," she spat. Hiding behind hostages, she hurled another blade. "Your struggles are useless," the monster sneered. She smirked. "Are you sure about that?" With a flick of her wrist, she manipulated the scalpel to curve around the researchers. The monster reeled back, stunned that the blade had struck it. A nearly invisible thread was attached, allowing her to steer it. The creature let out an unearthly scream. Just as Eileen had predicted, its true body was pathetically weak. That's why it needed hosts to survive. But suddenly, blood began to seep from the researchers. From the exact same places the monster was hit, Eileen stared in horror. The monster was transferring the damage to its hostages, instantly restoring its own body. What a foul trick. Then, it pointed out, "You've been infected too." She hadn't even realized. Looking down, she saw her own arm twisting and transforming. It refused to obey her commands, her own hand wrapped around her throat, choking the life from her. The beast gave her no chance to cleanse the spores. The monster froze, confused when it saw Eileen smiling. She quickly bound her rogue arm with her own silk, looping it to her thigh to pull it away from her neck. It was a stroke of luck that she was the one caught in its trap. Had it been any of her teammates, they would already be dead. Her spider silk could control an enemy's body, but she could also use it on herself. Using her threads, she launched the scalpel once more, a direct hit. She glared at the creature. "Too bad for you. It'll take more than this to break me." "Keep struggling," the monster hissed. "You'll only bleed out and lose the strength to fight." The monster then threatened that if she dared to run, it would butcher the researchers. It even suggested they should just escape together. Her reply was ice. "Even if you begged, I would never leave. Not until I've put you in the ground." Meanwhile, Ye was still eating. The loud crunching sound finally drew the monster's attention. The creature realized it couldn't control him, so it would simply kill him. Ye panicked. He was a sitting duck, completely unable to dodge. In a flash, silky threads wrapped around him. With lightning speed, Eileen yanked him to safety, leaving the monster dumbfounded. Ye screamed his lungs out. "You saved me!" he cried, landing right below her. His nose began to bleed as his cheeks turned crimson at the unexpected view. Eileen was utterly speechless. This man wasn't a hunter. He was just a shameless pervert. "I've been trying to tell you," he shot back. She ignored him. "Since that thing can't take over your body, we have two options. Either we both die here, or I hold the monster back while you run for help." Our main character was stunned into silence. He hated both choices. "I pick option C." Eileen stared back. "What the hell is option C?" "We team up," he declared, "and blow this ugly mushroom to bits." She couldn't believe his eagerness to die. "Why?" she asked. His face hardened. The question unearthed a painful memory. A time he was left to die. "Because I hate people who abandon their teammates and run," he stated firmly. "Cowards like that are worse than the monsters themselves." "So, you're a brave young hero," she remarked, but her inner voice was screaming, "This guy is a complete idiot." In reality, Ye was fully prepared. The system had already informed him that the monster's real body was weak. Now that he was immune, he could easily defeat it. He thought to himself, "If I can win this fight, I can finally earn a safe place under the extermination squad's protection." "Humans," the mushroom grumbled, "always trying to impress the opposite sex in battle. How pathetic." It unleashed a storm of vines in their direction. He knew Eileen could control bodies too. "Hurry up and control me," he yelled. "Let me fight." "I'm not afraid of the parasite," he confessed. "But I have no idea how to fight either." Eileen shot out her spider silk, warning him, "I can't guarantee your safety." The threads wrapped around Ye's limbs. Her fingers danced like a puppeteer's. "Go!" He charged forward. The monster scoffed. "He can't dodge my tentacles. How will he break through my combat puppet?" Blocking his path stood one of the researchers, her eyes empty and her body controlled by the monster. With a twitch of her fingers, Eileen made Ye grab the researcher and throw her aside. Immediately, the ponytailed researcher lunged in to attack. With Eileen pulling the strings, Yi moved like a marionette of destruction, sliding between the creature's legs before launching himself forward. The monster registered his sudden burst of speed. It finally dawned on the beast. The woman was controlling him. Eileen smirked, commenting that the monster had a brain after all. Yi coiled his fist, pouring his rage into a single explosive shout, "Die!" Instantly, the monster's vines erupted, weaving a dense barrier to protect its core. It was confident that a weakling like Ye could never break its defenses. But as he closed in, a hidden trait roared to life. Elastic muscles combined with corrosive mucus. His fist connected with a sickening crunch. The monster coughed up a spray of green blood. Eileen watched in shock, realizing Ye had been hiding these abilities. A huge chunk of the monster simply dissolved, leaving a gaping hole in its torso. The beast reeled, unable to comprehend Ye's sudden power. A confident smile spread across Ye's face. Refusing to die, the monster tried to transfer the damage. But to its absolute horror, the wounds refused to heal. Its gaze then fell upon Eileen, crouched beside the researchers. She had already extracted the parasitic spores from their bodies. She crushed them in her palm, taunting the creature. "I can't wait to see you all sliced up." The monster's eyes burned with pure hatred. Her words pushed the hideous beast over the edge. Suddenly, the human balloons floating above began to convulse. They burst open, spewing a crimson liquid. Eileen and Ye could only watch as the blood flowed towards the monster. The massive hole in its torso began to seal shut. A sense of dread washed over them both. The creature's body started to liquefy. It was transforming before their very eyes, becoming a giant, red slime with piercing, malevolent eyes. When the transformation completed, a muscular, red bipedal horror stood before them with 4 eyes, razor-sharp teeth, and a long tongue. It looked nothing like a tree. A red venomous beast was a far more fitting name. Eileen and Ye stood on guard as the monster spoke. "You are the first humans to ever witness this form." "I hope," it hissed. "You won't disappoint." In the blink of an eye, its fist was already inches from Eileen's face. The speed was terrifying. The impact sent her flying backwards, slamming her hard against the far wall. Yi's eyes widened. He never expected this level of strength. The creature was on a completely different level than before. He saw it lunging for her again. It grabbed her by the head and mercilessly smashed her into the ground. As it dragged her, she carved a trail in the concrete floor. Then, the monster threw her body aside. She was already coughing up blood. She lay curled on the ground as the beast loomed over her. Suddenly, an attack struck its back. It whirled around to see Ye. The monster knew exactly where the attack came from. Ye knew they were in a hopeless situation. The beast closed the distance instantly and unleashed a devastating punch. He was sent flying, crashing to the ground beside the researcher. Our boy was knocked out cold. A system warning blared in his mind. All bones broken, internal organs severely damaged. A fatal injury had been detected. The immortality trait has been activated. Full body regeneration was in progress. After a few agonizing twitches, he awoke, whining that he had truly almost died that time. He then noticed the Cockroach God beside him, who warned, "If you take another hit like that, I can't guarantee I can save you." Hearing this, Ye immediately played dead. He silently cheered for Eileen, praying she could win. The monster stood over him, calling him weak. But a sudden snap made it turn. Eileen launched a powerful kick, but the monster caught her leg in its grip. She couldn't believe its reflexes as it yanked her off her feet. The beast began swinging her from side to side, smashing her into the ground with brutal force, again and again, as if she were a mere rag doll. Then, it hurled her upwards. She crashed into the ceiling, vomiting even more blood. The monster grabbed the very chair Yi had been tied to. At that moment, Eileen began to fall. It lifted the chair, complaining about how uncomfortable it was. Then it swung the chair like a baseball, connecting with Eileen and sending her crashing into the wall yet again. More blood poured from her body. The pain was unbearable. Both of her legs were shattered. But she refused to give up, since her arms still worked. Yi witnessed this in disbelief. Not even the vice captain of the extermination squad could beat this thing. He wondered if anyone could save them. Just then, a voice called out his name. It was the researcher. She urged him to tell the vice captain to unleash her full power, opening her palm to reveal a glowing red gem. Yi saw the stone and reached for it. But there was one massive problem. How could he possibly deliver it to her? The Cockroach God suggested a plan. If he pushed his elastic muscles trait to the absolute limit and charged, he might just find an opening. And based on its calculations, the success rate was a mere 10%. That's basically a death sentence, Yi cried out. The Cockroach God replied coldly, it's either a 10% chance of survival or a 100% chance of dying. Gritting his teeth, Ye cursed his own body as it moved on pure instinct. Activating his elastic muscle trait, he let out a roar and charged headfirst into danger. The monster's gaze locked onto him instantly, but the beast's reaction was faster than predicted. The Cockroach God warned him. His chance of success just plummeted to 5%. There was no turning back. It was do or die. He had to risk it all. He launched himself into the air, soaring over the beast. The Cockroach God's voice echoed. Only 1% left. He had to reach Eileen, but a claw clamped around his foot. The creature sneered, asking what he thought he was doing. Yi was yanked from the sky with brutal force, and the Cockroach God declared it was now 0%. He was slammed into the ground with devastating impact. The earth itself cratered beneath him. The monster raised its foot to deliver the final blow, but a fire of defiance still burned in his eyes. He refused to believe it was over. It wasn't 0%. Not yet. This was his last gamble. With all his remaining strength, he hurled the stone, screaming for Eileen to catch it. The beast stomped down, mocking his weakness. But its foot never connected. A sudden shock ran through it. Something was wrong. An intricate web of spider silk had stopped the attack cold. The monster whipped its head around, its gaze falling on Eileen, and she understood instantly. Yi had risked everything to get that crystal to her. A wave of profound emotion washed over her. The same silk was already mending her own wounds. It was time to unleash more of her true power. Silken threads erupted from her fingertips, ensnaring the beast in an inescapable net. With a single pull, she brought it crashing down. As the monster hit the floor, her hand transformed. It morphed into a razor-sharp weapon. The spider snow blade was unsheathed. She lunged forward, slashing with blinding speed, but her blade met only air. The monster had vanished. A dark shadow suddenly loomed over her. It sneered that awakened humans were still nothing but insects. The creature grabbed her blade and shattered it with ease. It seized her by the throat, then used her own broken blade to pierce straight through her body. Yi could only watch in horror as she fell, motionless. Utter despair washed over him. The monster raised the shard for another fatal strike, but in a flash, its hands were severed from its arms. A man with long brown hair swept Eileen to safety. The beast roared in fury, and Ye stared in disbelief. A massive, broad-shouldered man stood before the creature. Two more figures appeared at his side. The monster snarled, demanding to know who they were. A silver-haired woman with sharp eyes, a tall, maroon-haired man in a sweeping brown cape, and the brawny warrior now holding Eileen. They all wore the same distinct uniform. The woman's gaze fell upon the fallen researchers. She assessed their condition with a grim expression. Their bodies were a wreck. Organs, bones, and flesh were completely mangled. Immediate treatment was their only hope. This was the captain of Extermination Squad 10. The giant man was Philo, captain of Extermination Squad 2. He assured the healer that no creature would pass his guard. And the chief commander himself, Cory Varan, stepped forward. He declared he would play with the beast for a while. He was intrigued by a talking monster, a true rarity. Eileen stirred, weakly warning him that this creature was unlike any other. She pleaded for him to be careful, but the chief just grinned. Don't worry, he said. I'm built differently too. Haley, the healer, cut them off with a sharp command. She needed absolute silence to begin the treatment. She produced a glowing green stone. A massive root burst from the earth. Using the technique runic revival, giant flowers bloomed, enveloping each researcher. Philo gently placed Eileen inside one of the blossoms. Yi found himself engulfed by one as well. Confused, he felt a soothing warmth spread through him, like a hot spring. His eyes grew heavy, until the Cockroach God screamed in his mind not to pass out. It even forced a shot of adrenaline straight into his system. The burning sensation jolted him awake. Haley noticed, confused why her healing would cause pain. The Cockroach God told him to consider himself lucky. It urged him to open his eyes wide and witness the absolute pinnacle of power in this era. Cory Varan formally introduced himself. Since the monster could clearly understand him, he casually invited it to have a little chat. But the beast's reply was chilling. We don't converse with our food. Cory's amused expression faltered. Suddenly, blood began to drip from the cracks above. Now, he was paying full attention. The crimson drops coalesced, taking on a horrifying new shape. They were the devoured captives, reformed into a grotesque army. The monster declared that every single human here would die. The newly formed abominations charged, aiming for the healer. Ye's heart pounded. They were surrounded, from the left, right, above, and below. But then, Philo took a solid combat stance. He threw a single punch into the air, unleashing a shockwave that obliterated the entire horde. Meanwhile, Haley began to manipulate the very air around them. He watched as the wind swirled around the healing flowers, forming a powerful cyclone barrier for protection. Philo told her to focus on the blood. He would handle the beasts. She shot him an annoyed look, but didn't argue. Yi could only watch with his jaw on the floor. This was the overwhelming power of a captain-level awakener. The beast gloated, having successfully stalled 2 captains. And its first target for elimination was Corey. Its underlings were liquefied into puddles. The main creature let out a guttural roar as it absorbed their essence. And then, its body began to transform. 2 new heads erupted from its shoulders, along with monstrous arms. It was now a grotesque, towering behemoth. Ye cried out, "A 3-stage transformation? That's just cheating!" But Corey just smirked. "You know, I almost envy guys like you, getting to grow bigger whenever you want, while I have to go through such a hassle." The monster lunged its fist like a wrecking ball, but Corey was already gone, a blur of motion. He teased it with a grin. "Ooh, almost got me." The monster's rage boiled over. It threw another punch, but he simply leaped to evade it. Then he ducked low, avoiding the next swing. The monster unleashed a furious barrage, but he was agile enough to dodge every single strike. The beast grew frustrated. This human moved like an annoying insect it just couldn't swat. As Corey vaulted into the air, a vine shot out with impossible speed, coiling around his torso. "It's over," the monster snarled. But our hero wasn't finished. His blade flashed, a silver streak in the chaos. Slash after slash rained down, and he landed gracefully as the monster fell apart in pieces. What an absolute legend. The creature couldn't even process what had just happened. It trembled in pure fear as Corey approached. And with a simple flick of his finger, the monster's massive form disintegrated into dust. Corey watched, his gaze cold and intense. All that remained was its core, a tiny, mushroom-like body. With one swift move, Corey sealed it inside a bottle. He beamed with delight, like he'd just caught a rare Pokemon. He was ecstatic. "My first talking monster. This is historic." "So, do I get the honor of naming it?" Haley's voice cut through his excitement. "Quit messing around. Start thinking about how to explain this demolished research facility to the council." She and Foe muttered in perfect sync. Stupid boss. Ye, however, could only stare, unable to fathom Corey's immense power. The Cockroach God's voice echoed in his mind. "Did you see it? The gap in his power? You can rest now." Sometime later, in an unfamiliar room, the place looked cozy, like a home. Ye slowly opened his eyes. "Where am I?" He was shocked to find himself sitting in a bathtub, and then he saw it. A woman's silhouette through the shower curtain. His face instantly turned crimson. He was completely lost. Just then, Eileen peeked around the curtain. "Oh, you're awake." With her hair down, she looked like a totally different person. "Your gene results aren't back yet," she said, "so you should still be locked up for another night. But, since the prison was destroyed, I had to bring you home under my supervision." Ye frantically tried to cover himself. "Do we really have to be in here? Naked? Together?" She didn't seem to care one bit about her own body. "Stop being so shy," she lectured him. She explained, "The hot water is only available during this time slot. We have no choice." She then introduced herself properly. "I'm Eileen. Thank you for what you did earlier. What's your name?" Our boy was so flustered he could barely speak, but he managed to stutter out his name. "Scoot over," she said, sliding right into the tub with him. Ye looked like he was about to have a heart attack. "Turn around," she instructed. "I need to check your wounds." His face burned an even deeper red as her hand touched his back. Asterisk. Doesn't this woman understand personal space? Asterisk, he screamed internally. If this kept up, he felt like he was going to explode. His thoughts were cut short when she gasped. "This is incredible. All your wounds have completely healed. There isn't even a scar." She patted his back, amazed by his regeneration. The Cockroach God system announced, "Heart rate has increased to 120 beats per minute. Testosterone levels have spiked. Blood flow has been redirected downwards. Activating. Reproduction mode?" Ye shrieked. "No, absolutely not!" Oblivious, Eileen pointed to a scar on her chest. That monster was pretty brutal. She showed it to him without a second thought, and his jaw hit the floor. The system began its countdown, reproduction mode activating in 3, 2. Before it could reach one, Ye shot out of the tub and fled the bathroom. Eileen was left behind, utterly confused. Little did she know, she'd nearly witnessed a cockroach man in full reproduction mode. Ye gasped for air outside the door, his heart pounding. He knew if he'd stayed in there 1 second longer, He would have died from sheer embarrassment. He cursed that stupid system. Just then, a news report on TV caught his attention. Recent spatial fluctuations detected near Minghai City. A small human outpost 50 kilometers away, run by non-government forces, has been attacked. A chill ran down his spine. That was where he used to live. He wondered in horror, asterisk. Is everyone gone? Asterisk. The news anchor continued. By the time the extermination squad arrived at the distress signal, the entire outpost had already been abandoned. He realized with terrifying clarity that if he hadn't left, he'd be dead too. The public was warned that abyss portals are gateways to other realms and must be reported to the authorities immediately. The Cockroach God's voice echoed, telling him to cast aside his doubts. In fact, there was a reason to celebrate. His fallen comrade, Little Fatty, had been reborn. Not just revived, but now an Imperial Guard. Ye's eyes widened in disbelief. The god explained its newfound power. Little Fatty was now immortal. No matter how many times it was crushed, so long as Ye drew breath, it would rise again. This ability seemed completely overpowered, but Ye was still skeptical. How could an unkillable cockroach truly protect him? The Cockroach God revealed another secret. Little Fatty could also level up, and right now, it could share its vision with its master. He tapped the summon icon on the system screen. The screen dissolved into pixels. A tiny hand began to move, and soon, Little Fatty materialized before him. It greeted its master with pure joy, chirping about how much it had missed him. A genuine smile spread across Ye's face. But then, Little Fatty grew despondent, lamenting its ugly, new, human-like form. Ye was at a loss for words. The Cockroach God urged him to test its abilities, starting with a simple flight command. He was then told to close his eyes and synchronize his senses with his familiar. Through its eyes, he saw the world anew, slipping under the door and through the tiniest cracks. It soared over the bathtub, causing Ye to panic and scream for it to get out. Little Fatty cheekily replied that it could sense its master's hidden desire to peek, but they weren't alone. Eileen sensed the intrusion. In an instant, she shot out a single strand of spider silk, wrapping Little Fatty in a deadly cocoon. It dissolved into nothing, and searing pain ripped through Ye. Blood poured from his eyes, nose, and mouth. A violent torrent of crimson erupted from his nose. Ah, a tiny detail the Cockroach God forgot to mention. When your familiar dies while you're sharing senses, you suffer a devastating backlash. The next day, his test results were finally in. Eileen delivered the news. All his results were perfectly normal. He stared at the report, and she told him he was free to leave. But a dark resolve had settled in his eyes. He set the report down. In a voice filled with conviction, he made a declaration. He wanted to join the extermination squad. Eileen was taken aback. That squad wasn't a place for the faint of heart. Its mortality rate was astronomically high. He shot back a question of his own. Did she really think the survival rate for ordinary people was any better? He was an awakener now. He had the power to fight alongside them. With a clean record, he saw no reason why he should be denied. He pressed her for an answer. Can I join, or not? Her gaze was intense. Finally, she revealed the path. The Extermination Squad selection tournament, held only once every 4 years, was in just 7 days. She acknowledged his skills weren't half bad. But there were rumors about this year's competition. They were calling it the most brutal trial in history. But our hero's expression was unshakable. He simply told her to leave it to him. He then played his trump card, reminding her of the life-saving debt she owed him. A flicker of annoyance crossed her face as she told him to stand. Impressed by his shameless persistence, she granted him a chance at special training. But lurking in the shadows, Corey observed their every move. Beside him, a doctor questioned his orders, asking why he'd been told to forge Ye's medical report. The real gene test revealed a shocking truth. Ye wasn't entirely human. Corey just smiled, replying that this little secret needed to be kept for just a bit longer. Deep within the training base lay a gate to the abyss. And what our hero saw next left him utterly speechless. The so-called special training Eileen mentioned? It meant being thrown headfirst into that very abyss. He prayed it was some kind of cruel joke. The abyss was a nightmare realm, crawling with monsters far more powerful than any found on the outside. It was said that not even an entire army could survive in there. How could this suicide mission possibly be called training? To make matters worse, his new teammates were just 4 other teenagers: Justin, Lu Yao, Suk Kai, and Song Tao. Eileen began the briefing. Each abyss, she explained, was a direct gateway to another world entirely. The danger level was ranked from E-class to S-class, based on how much that other world had bled into theirs. Higher ranks meant stronger monsters and a vastly larger area. She assured them this particular gate led to an abyss that had already been scouted by the extermination squad. She pressed a button on a console. Their mission was simple, yet terrifying. Enter the abyss, eliminate all monsters, and stall the invasion from the other side. These abysses, she continued, were the very tunnels carved out by giant worms during the Great Cataclysm. With another press of a button, the entrance to the gate began to hum with a terrifying light. The portal was now active. Since Justin was the only one with prior experience, she appointed him as the team's leader. He accepted without hesitation. The team stepped through the gate and into a silent, foreboding jungle, a location classified as E-Class. The jungle was lush and overgrown, yet eerily silent. This was Ye's first dive, and already, a creature with the body of a monkey and the tail of a snake had locked its eyes on them. Ye couldn't believe his eyes. The spiders were the size of small cars, and the trees pierced the sky like ancient towers. His head was on a swivel, taking it all in. Was this even Earth anymore? He felt like he had truly stepped into another dimension. His teammates stared, speechless at his rookie excitement. As they began to move out, Justin turned and tossed his heavy backpack straight at Ye. He gave a stern warning. The newbie wasn't to engage a single monster. His only job was to stay behind them and act as their baggage mule. Ye was completely reeling. Justin was convinced he'd spent the night with the vice captain. A storm of fury brewed within Justin. How dare this nobody make a move on his goddess? Ye's utter silence only fanned the flames of his rage. Don't you even care? Justin finally roared, but inside, Ye was overjoyed. Keeping his hands to himself meant he had survived another day. He cheerfully scooped up their bags, leaving Justin utterly dumbfounded. Meanwhile, Ye was celebrating his hard-won safety. Justin was sure the guy had a few screws loose. Ye, oblivious, moved on to collect the others' gear. First was Yao, the only woman on the team. "I've got it," she said, her voice like ice before she turned away. A question lingered in Ye's mind. Why was he, of all people, forbidden from hunting? He figured it couldn't be that dangerous, until he witnessed the true power of awakeners in the abyss. Yao unleashed her skill, heavenly curtain thunder wrath. Lightning rained from the sky, scorching monsters across a massive area. Then, Justin's blade became a silver blur, slicing through several beasts at once. This was the awakeners' secret. Their crystal weapons absorbed power from every abyss monster they killed. It was a system straight out of a video game. The more they slayed, the faster their power level would rise. But he soon saw that even the strongest awakeners his age had their limits. The endless fighting took its toll on them all. After felling 310 monsters, Justin finally leveled up. But Ye was built different. He simply spread out a napkin and prepared to dine. He feasted as if he were in a fine restaurant, but his meal was the fresh monster corpses littering the battlefield. A new trait appeared. Snake ape long arms. Ye didn't need to kill. By consuming a part of them, he could steal their very essence. He continued his grotesque buffet, gaining and enhancing his traits, toxic resistance, jungle adaptation, and even sunlight affinity. His belly was stretched to its limit. A loud burp echoed as he collapsed onto the ground, completely satisfied. He'd made up his mind. If he ever joined the extermination squad, he was going straight to the logistics team. This was the life, watching everyone else fight for their lives. While he got stronger just by eating, the Cockroach God appeared, suggesting he show some gratitude. So Ye threw his arms in the air and waved enthusiastically, catching the eye of the exhausted awakeners. Their frustration boiled over. They were risking everything, fighting tooth and nail, while he was in the back enjoying a private buffet. Elsewhere in the dark jungle, a new predator stirred. A jungle heavy-horned beast charged, its target another powerful monster. The king of the snake-tailed monkeys. A single impact was all it took. The Monkey King was sent flying, mortally wounded. Ye watched from the shadows, his blood running cold. He recognized that overwhelming aura anywhere. It was the final boss of the abyss. To defeat a near-night-level monster so easily, Ye felt the crushing weight of the power gap. This was a completely different league, but Justin was resolute. "We've got this," he declared, "as long as everyone follows my lead." Even for a rookie squad, his will to conquer the beast was absolute. Eileen's warning echoed in Ye's mind. If he got hurt, crippled, or worse, by recklessly ignoring the established rules, the health insurance wouldn't cover a thing. He spoke up. "Eileen warned us not to fight the boss. So with that, I'm out." Justin lunged, grabbing Ye's collar. "We don't need a coward like you anyway," he spat. "Go sit in the safe zone and guard the bags," he ordered. Through it all, Yao said nothing. Justin jabbed a finger at the map, marking the spot. Ye simply picked up the bags, turned, and wished them all good luck. Kai and Tao exchanged a pleased smirk. But Yao knew the truth. The location the captain sent Ye to was the planned ambush point for their final battle. Justin's reply was cold. That was the entire point. "I stuffed all 4 of those backpacks with explosives," he revealed. "Once the boss targets him, I'll trigger the blast. We'll swoop in and clean up whatever's left." He showed no remorse, stating, "The only cost is one useless teammate." That's completely twisted, Yao whispered in horror. But as the words left her mouth, Justin's blade was suddenly at her throat. Cut the pity act, the captain warned, his voice deadly serious. I'm only letting this slide once. Meanwhile, Ye arrived at his destination, the so-called safe zone. Suddenly, the ground began to shake violently. He wondered if the team's fight was so intense that the tremors were reaching him all the way out here. He sensed an approaching danger. A chill ran down his spine. Something fast shot past him, then another. A whole troop of monkeys, fleeing for their lives. He was confused by their panic. Until a deafening crack split the air. A giant tree snapped in half. He spun around, and his heart stopped. The boss monster was charging straight for him. Its massive horn pierced his body without resistance. Ye coughed up mouthfuls of blood as the beast carried him, crashing through trees until it slammed into the side of a mountain. Why is it here? Ye wondered, impaled and broken. A notification appeared from the Cockroach God. Fatal injury detected. Expelling foreign object. Commencing repairs. Through the haze of pain, Ye asked, "Where is everyone? Was the whole team wiped out?" At that moment, a flaming arrow soared through the air. It landed near a bag, lighting the fuse of a dynamite stick. He thought it was some kind of signal rocket. Then his mind raced. What was really in those bags? The horrifying realization dawned just as the world erupted in a blinding explosion. Everything went black, but his consciousness held on for one last, devastating thought. He'd been abandoned, betrayed, used as bait. Again, a blinding explosion ripped through the air. The other four could only watch from a cliff above. A wicked laugh echoed from Justin. He sneered, mocking the priceless look on Ye's face. Once the dust settles, he declared, they would descend and finish off the boss. He reveled in his plan to kill two birds with one stone. But then, Yao spotted something in the smoke. Her warning wiped the smile right off Justin's face. The explosions finally died down. As the smoke cleared, a figure emerged completely unharmed. It was Ye, his eyes glowing a menacing yellow. Justin's jaw dropped in disbelief. Ye was still alive. The main character calmly pulled the horn from his torso, and his skin instantly regenerated. A terrifying fury radiated from him. With sheer power, he lifted the massive monster by its horns. Justin could only stare in stunned silence. Our hero then hurled the beast straight at them, roaring that he wasn't so easy to kill. The impact against the cliff triggered a catastrophic explosion. Justin braced himself for the earth-shattering impact. A desperate voice cried out for the captain. It was Tao. Half his body was crushed beneath the rubble. His plea for help stunned the survivors. But Justin simply declared him a lost cause. He warned the others to focus on the boss if they wanted to live. Then, he coldly pointed his blade at his fallen comrade, Tao. Tao pleaded for his life, but Justin mercilessly activated his trait, flesh-bursting arrows. Tao's body grotesquely swelled and then detonated beneath the beast. The monster roared in agony and began to rise. Seizing the moment, Justin ordered the attack. Kai unleashed a blazing whirlwind of fire, engulfing the monster in a vortex of flames. Yao followed up with a storm of lightning, electrocuting the boss monster. It shrieked in pain. Justin saw his chance. It was nearly finished. A smug grin spread across his face. This legendary beast was far weaker than he ever imagined. After all, if that weakling could toss it like a rag doll, how strong could it be? He charged forward, greatsword ready to land the final blow. But the monster withstood the fire and lightning. It rose to its full, terrifying height. Justin froze, his arrogance shattered. The elements swirled, feeding directly into its horns. The horrifying truth dawned on Yao. It was absorbing their energy. She screamed at them to stop using elemental attacks. The more they hit it, the stronger it would become. Justin knew it was hopeless. The beast was too powerful. His eyes fell on Kai, a new plan forming in his mind. Then, he struck his own teammate from behind. Kai collapsed, stunned by the sudden betrayal. Yao watched in horror as Justin turned on her next. A moment later, she too was on the ground. He sneered that they were only getting in his way. They might as well be useful for once before they died. He told them to be grateful, and then fled like a coward. The boss monster lumbered towards his fallen comrades. It raised its massive foot and crushed Kai instantly. As it loomed over Yao, a blur of motion saved her. It was none other than Ye. He moved like lightning, pulling her to safety. Why? Why did you only save me? She asked. He simply stared back at her. He replied coldly that she was the only one back then, who never bullied him or treated him like dirt. Ye remembered his past life. Because he was weak, people treated him as cannon fodder without a second thought. Now, as a cockroach, nothing had changed. He was just bait, meant to die for the stronger ones. He never provoked anyone, yet betrayal found him anyway. He finally understood. In this world, Only the strong have the right to control their own fate, and so, he vowed to become overwhelmingly strong. Just then, a pathetic cry for help echoed out. It was Justin. The monster had him pinned beneath its foot. Ye reminded him of his own arrogant words, that not a single monster should be touched by him. A cold, mocking smile spread across Ye's face. Justin's face twisted in rage, and in the next instant, he was crushed. Ye then turned back to Yao. He released a cloud of sleep-inducing pollen. The tranquil bloom, a pollen that causes deep unconsciousness. It was best to keep his new monster abilities a secret for now. And with that, only he and the boss monster remained. He faced the beast head-on. His aura blazed to life as he announced that this monster would be his stepping stone to true power. The monster prepared to charge. But Ye's tongue shot out like a whip, latching onto a high branch. He activated his snap-tongue trait. It launched him into the air, effortlessly dodging the monster's thunderous charge. He had absorbed countless traits on his journey, and now it was time to unleash them all. Activating Mantis Scythe. The 4 limbs of a rainforest mantis, capable of slicing through any prey with terrifying ease. His scythes cracked the very stone around him. But when he struck the monster, its hide was like solid steel. Even with his enhanced scythes, this wouldn't be easy. Its outer shell was like armor. But he spotted a weakness. Its exposed abdomen. He lunged forward and stabbed true. The monster roared as blood sprayed from the wound. Ye knew he was on the right track, but now he had its full attention. It spun around and swatted him into the air. He crashed to the ground, bouncing hard before slamming violently into the mountainside. He coughed up a mouthful of blood. He realized that despite its massive size, the beast was incredibly fast. The boss monster's horns began to crackle with power. A storm of lightning erupted, screaming towards him. This was bad. Very bad. Lightning struck his last position. The blast engulfed the entire area. Smoke choked the forest, and as it cleared, a giant tree lay shattered. But the beast's eyes widened in shock. Ye's arms were transforming into solid wood. He had activated trance skin. A trance hide is a natural insulator to lightning, but it's utterly defenseless against flames. Just as Ye predicted, no matter how powerful the foe, nature always provides a counter. He knew this defense wouldn't last forever. He needed one perfect, finishing blow. His mind was set. Activating long arms, he snatched Justin's blade. This next strike would decide it all. He raised his foot high and slammed it down, unleashing treant vines. It's a technique used by treants to ensnare their prey. When they hunt in packs, countless vines erupt from the ground, trapping any creature in the jungle's grasp. The beast roared in fury as vines coiled around its limbs. Ye lunged forward, pouring everything he had into this single attack. But the boss monster's will to live was just as strong. It shattered the vines with sheer power. Ye's eyes widened in disbelief. There was no time to evade. He activated elastic muscles, reinforcing his entire body for the impact. Steel screamed against the monster's horn, and then shattered. The force sent Ye stumbling back. Glancing at the ruined blade, he tossed it aside. The beast charged again, a blur of rage, but a smirk touched Ye's lips. The final piece of the puzzle was now in his hands. He devoured the broken piece of its horn. The beast's own power now his to command. His entire body began a radical transformation. He was encased in monstrous armor. With massive spined blades fused to his arms, he vanished in a blur of motion. The beast met his charge head-on. Their clash erupted in a blinding flash of light. When the dust settled, Ye stood panting, victorious. The forest around them was utterly devastated. Ye was wounded, but he had won. And then, a mysterious key materialized before him. The key to a secret realm. Using it within the time limit would grant entry to a hidden dimension. A secret realm. What could that be? But outside the abyss, chaos was unfolding. A training mission had gone horribly wrong. The casualties were horrific. 3 dead, 1 critical, and only 1 with minor wounds. Medics were scrambled to the scene. Suddenly, a hand grabbed Ye's collar. An officer glared at him with pure fury, ordering him to explain what happened in the abyss. "Why are you the only one who walked out?" Ye was speechless. Saying he was lucky felt like a pathetic lie. A hand rested on the officer's shoulder. It was Captain Corey. "It seems the military suspect's my vice captain's recruit." He continued, "If that's the case, are you suggesting my vice captain orchestrated this disaster?" Ye couldn't believe what he was hearing. The officer immediately panicked. "No, sir. It's just, all the casualties were military-selected recruits, so it seemed natural to ask." Corey's cold gaze shifted to Ye for a moment. "That's enough. No one enters a dungeon and expects 0 casualties. I'm glad we cleared that up." His words were a clear dismissal. "Ye, you're free to go." Ye left without another word. Later, he found solace on a quiet rooftop. Did the captain cover for him just because the vice captain recommended him? He sighed. Overthinking it was useless. Right now, only one thing mattered: the key to the secret realm. The Cockroach God materialized beside him. It's a hidden dimension within the abyss, he explained. Humans normally can't acquire such a thing, but your DNA is nearly identical to a monster's. So the abyss registered your battle as a territorial dispute between two beasts. And that is why you were rewarded. So, it's a private dungeon just for me? Ye realized. Precisely, the god confirmed. But be warned, the creatures inside are on another level entirely. Plus, you'll have to face the entity that originally granted the horned beast its power. He stated, it could be like the Myconid you fought, an intelligent being guarding the abyss's deepest secrets. What's the countdown for? Ye asked. Use it within 24 hours, or it vanishes forever. The god looked at him intently. So, are you going? Ye's gaze fell upon the key. Yes, but there's one thing I need to do first. After all, I might not come back. Ye was on his knees outside an apartment, asking Eileen for a date. Her response? A swift, powerful kick. She was absolutely furious. Are you messing with me? She warned him not to say it again. But with a dead serious face, he repeated his request. Her only answer was a flurry of punches. He took the beating, blood dripping from his face, as she dared him to say it again. With swollen cheeks and blackened eyes, he said it one more time. She froze, finally seeing the look in his eyes. It was a look she recognized all too well. The look of a soldier before a final, desperate mission, trying to erase one last regret before facing death. A brilliant laugh escaped her lips. She praised his courage and accepted his offer. I know some of you out there are feeling a little envious. Maybe you should take a hint. Anyway, the first stop for our hero and Eileen was a cafe, sharing a single drink with 2 straws, a classic move. Next up, a horror movie, where Ye found himself clinging to her in fright. Afterward, they captured memories in a photo booth and rode a bicycle along the shore as the sun began to set. A wave of pure joy washed over Ye. His very first date. A moment he had dreamed of for nearly 20 years. He confessed that every detail was perfectly planned. The only thing missing was someone special to share it with. But now, he could finally die without regrets. Her eyes studied him intently. Then, her pedaling slowed to a stop as she called out his name. Eileen told him she'd seen countless soldiers on the brink of death. No matter how many final wishes they achieved, nothing could ever replace the gift of being alive. She admitted she couldn't possibly know the horrors he faced in the abyss, or the thoughts storming inside his mind. But she urged him. Instead of planning a perfect death, he should fight to live. Because only then could he grasp the life he truly desired. Her words struck him like a bolt of lightning. He fell silent, processing her profound wisdom. After a long moment, all he could say was, thank you. A small smile played on her lips, hoping he'd find the courage to ask her out again. That night, the Cockroach God seethed with contempt. All this power, and the boy's only wish was for a simple date? Yi retrieved the key, and with a sharp crack, it shattered. Space itself began to warp and tear, a swirling portal manifesting before him. Stepping through, he knew the god would never understand. This was his own way of closing the final chapter of his past life. And with that resolve, he vanished completely. The portal sealed shut behind him. He had arrived in the secret realm. Darkwood Forest. Our hero's eyes widened in disbelief. Looming before him stood a monstrous snake-tailed monkey. Its danger level? Guardian class. It was the same species from the training grounds, but its aura was infinitely more terrifying. The old him would have fled in terror, but he was no longer that person. Yi activated the heavy-horned beast's sharp horn. He surged forward without a shred of hesitation, looking like a mere insect before the colossal beast. In a flash of movement, he slashed its arm, drawing first blood. He aimed for the nape, a critical weakness, but another monster ambushed him from behind, seizing his leg. He was hurled through the air, crashing violently against a tree. A pained groan escaped his lips as a horde of identical monsters charged his position. One beast caught him in its massive hands, and with a sickening tear, ripped him in two. His upper torso was torn from his lower half. He landed hard on a high branch, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He released a cloud of sleep-inducing pollen, instantly shrouding his position. Then, flesh and bone began to regenerate. The undying skill had been activated. He analyzed his foes. Each monkey was only slightly weaker than the jungle heavy-horned beast, but their sheer numbers were overwhelming. Without his undying trait, that last attack would have been fatal. He knew then, a direct confrontation was suicide. But a realization dawned on him. This realm's ecosystem was just like the abyss, which meant these monkeys had a natural predator. His mind raced back, remembering how the beast was defeated before. As the pollen cleared, the monkeys spotted him, whole again. His plan was set: lure the entire pack into their predator's den. Activating Frog Leap, he bounded to the next branch. There was still a chance. He had to believe it. The monkeys roared in fury, giving chase. He moved with desperate speed, but one managed to grab his foot. He countered instantly, firing a blast of corrosive mucus to break free. And then, Yi saw it. He had found exactly what he was looking for. Spiders. A giant hunter spider. Another Guardian-class monster. Ye's form shifted, sprouting wings like a bird, as he activated the white-tailed grouse feather. The colossal spider's attention snapped towards him. He took flight, landing on a branch high above the sprawling webs. He had to mimic a spider's natural enemy to avoid becoming its prey. He felt a surge of gratitude for the countless traits he'd absorbed. And in this moment, that power was paying off. From his perch, he watched the scene unfold. The pursuing monkeys charged blindly into the trap, becoming entangled in the webs. Silently, the spiders began their descent. The monkeys could only roar in terror. One spider lunged, its sharp legs piercing its prey. The monkey writhed in agony, foam spilling from its mouth. From the shadows, Ye observed the massacre. He watched as the snake-tailed monkeys were annihilated by their predators. But he knew hunter spiders typically hunt isolated targets. This time, however, an entire troop had foolishly invaded their nest. The spiders hissed, and the forest floor began to tremble. This was the chaos Ye had been waiting for. He activated Mantis Scythe. As two spiders cornered a lone monkey, Ye descended upon them all. He struck the spider first, then the monkey. His goal wasn't to help either side win, but to even the odds and prolong the battle. He lunged, tearing off a monkey's finger with his teeth, and swallowed the flesh whole. He was trying to absorb its traits, but nothing happened. His body remained unchanged. He demanded to know why it wasn't working. The Cockroach God's voice echoed in his mind, calling him an idiot. Did he really think the power was that simple? He couldn't just devour a random monster and expect to grow stronger. To gain superior traits, he must consume key parts of his foes. The system offered to pinpoint the location for him. The monkey's arm glowed with an otherworldly light. A screen appeared, revealing the trait's core, deep within the giant ape's bicep. He devoured it without hesitation. Instantly, a new power awakened. Snake ape long arms, an evolution of his giant snake ape arms. He surveyed the raging battlefield with cold eyes. This chaos was a buffet. A golden opportunity to evolve endlessly. New traits flooded his system, endurance enhancement and the venomous spider stinger. With them came paralytic venom and its perfect counter, paralysis resistance. Once his feast was complete, it was time to clean up. With a single slash, he wiped out several monkeys at once. By the time he finished, dusk had fallen. He finally arrived at a foreboding place, where a fiery red door, carved from solid stone, stood waiting. Behind that door lay the boss's territory. He could feel a suffocating aura pouring from within. It was overwhelmingly powerful. Then, he noticed something. A strange pile was stacked to the side. He wondered what it could be. As he picked up an orange marble, the Cockroach God explained its true nature. It was a secret realm marble, found only in the monster graveyards unique to these hidden dimensions. In essence, it was an ultra-rare magic crystal. Over countless years, it had absorbed the lingering energy of fallen monsters. The marble pulsed with an almost limitless amount of power. The Cockroach God laid out his options. He could absorb its entire power at once, or use half to rip open a rift and escape the secret realm to safety. He weighed his choices, a safe retreat, or a gamble for supreme power. But he knew this was his greatest chance to evolve yet. If he retreated now, an opportunity like this might never come again. He hadn't even faced the boss. There was no way he would run away. Stepping through the doorway, he entered a chamber engulfed in fire. And there, sitting on a throne of bone, was the boss monster. The system identified it, the heavy-horned beastman. Its danger level was unknown. He was shocked the system couldn't read it. Even from a distance, the terrifying pressure it radiated was enough to crush a lesser being. This was truly the aura of a secret realm boss. In a voice like grinding stone, it spoke. "Are you the one who slaughtered my kin?" Ye froze. It could talk. He instantly realized its kin were the heavy-horned beasts from the abyss. Could it be that these monsters have a society, just like humans? Before he could process the thought, the boss monster vanished, charging forward as the very ground shattered beneath its feet. Flames erupted from the impact crater. But the boss knew it had missed its target. It sensed something strange about this intruder. That's because our hero had already transformed. Activating the fearsome giant snake monkey arm, the monster was confused. The connection to that other world was not yet open. "How did a mere human like you get in here?" it demanded. Ye was stunned by the revelation. They were trying to connect this secret realm to Earth. He pushed the thought aside, letting the boss monster continue its monologue. It glared, its eyes burning with rage. And in the blink of an eye, its fist crashed into him. Ye's vision went white as he coughed up blood. He slammed into a pillar with enough force to leave a massive crater. His torso was nearly torn in half. But his undying skill activated instantly, and the regeneration began. The boss monster's eyes narrowed. Witnessing his incredible recovery speed, it sneered, "You are more like one of us." It found this development interesting. It decided to cut him open and study him piece by piece. As it lunged to strike again, Ye's dynamic vision activated, enhancing his perception of high-speed targets. He saw the spear streaking towards him. Every detail became crystal clear, though the boss monster's strength was terrifying. Its attack patterns were brutally simple. He dodged the blow and closed the distance, ready to strike. He knew that in close-quarters combat, he held the advantage. He activated corrosive slime. He had to get that monster's trait, but before he could even land a blow, it swatted him away like an insect. The boss grumbled that the spear was cumbersome, preferring its fists. With Ye on the ground, it unleashed a merciless, non-stop barrage of punches. Dust and debris filled the chamber. When the assault finally ceased, Ye was a broken mess, but the monster could tell he was still alive. Ye was thankful. His elastic muscles had absorbed the worst of the impacts. The boss monster picked up its spear again. "This is becoming boring," it declared. It planned to end this now, with one final stab from its flame-wreathed spear. It moved faster than sight, but Ye managed to block the attack with his forearms. Hardened skin activated. It was a tough hide from the jungle beasts, capable of self-repair and providing extreme defense. The boss attacked again, but this time Ye deflected the spear, using only his own body. The Cockroach God suddenly appeared, warning him that the hardened skin was melting under the intense flames. He urged him to use the secret realm gem to retreat, but Ye refused to accept defeat. He saw an opening and leaped into action. He activated the giant monkey arm fist, putting all his power into one attack. But the boss monster just spun its spear, and the sheer force of the movement blasted Ye away, sending him crashing into yet another pillar. Flames rose and danced at the boss monster's command. It locked its gaze on Ye and unleashed a raging inferno directly towards him. He saw the attack coming. With a desperate leap, he dodged, but the flames pursued him like a predator. Activating Frog Leap, he vaulted away. But the cursed fire was too fast, searing a hole straight through his thigh. The undying skill activated. But a vicious curse clung to the wound, nullifying his insane regeneration. A cold dread washed over him. His trump card was useless. The beast roared in triumph, promising to melt him into nothing. Ye stared into the inferno, roaring that he'd drag the monster to hell with him. Activating the heavy-horned beast spear, he charged forward, a spear of pure will. Frustration boiling over, he put everything into one strike. He aimed for the horn, and his blade bit deep, creating a spiderweb of cracks. But the monster simply stared back, unfazed. Ye's eyes widened in shock. His blade was trapped, as the beast gathered a storm of fire in its own spear. Flames consumed Ye in a fiery vortex. His agonizing screams echoed through the chamber. Even as he collapsed, the inferno raged on. The Cockroach God's voice pierced the chaos. "This is not a foe you can defeat." He pleaded with Ye not to throw his life away. He forced open an escape portal with a secret gem, but to his utter disbelief, Ye slapped the gem from his hand. It shattered on the ground, sealing their fate. Annoyance flared in the god's mind. But Ye's gaze was solid steel. He had made his peace with death long ago. The Cockroach God was left speechless. Suddenly, a crimson mist enveloped Ye's body, instantly extinguishing the cursed flames. He became a blur around the boss monster. His body bathed in a golden light. Then, he shot forward with the speed of lightning. The beast reeled back, utterly bewildered. What just happened? A system window materialized in the air. Ye had not fled from certain death. He had passed the second trial of the Cockroach God. His fighter form was now unlocked. A powerful gale exploded from his body as he transformed. He slowly looked down at his own hand. His body was now a canvas of raw muscle, reinforced with hardened, stone-like plates. He could feel an unimaginable power surging through him. "What is this fighter form?" he asked. The Cockroach God explained. It was a state that allowed his traits to evolve without limit. But the god wasn't finished explaining. When a fresh wave of fire roared towards Ye, the boss monster unleashed its lava-burst stream. The ground erupted with molten rock, and the entire area was shrouded in blinding steam. But when the steam cleared, Ye stood completely unharmed. The god continued his explanation. The new armor fused cockroach carapace, elastic toad skin, and the hide of the heavy-horned beast. And with every new trait he acquired, this living armor would continue to evolve. Ye was astonished. Not even a scratch from that lava burst stream. This biological composite armor was incredible. The monster smirked, certain of its victory. But through the smoke, a hand shot out. Before the shocked beast could react, it was struck, Ye had combined the giant snake monkey arm with his elastic muscles. It was essentially a long-range, whip-like punch. The god revealed the form's true power. He could now activate multiple traits at once, chaining them into devastating combos with zero cooldown. Ye's mind raced. By combining his traits, he could unleash attacks his enemies would never see coming. Better yet, his strength, stamina, and agility had all increased tenfold. The feeling was absolutely incredible. The boss monster was stunned. Not a single scratch on him. In disbelief, it lunged forward once more. Ye calmly watched its approach. He combined dynamic vision, elastic muscles, and the mantis scythe blade. With a flick of his wrist, he effortlessly parried the spear. Then, in a fluid motion, he extended his leg and kicked the monster square in the chest. While the beast was still airborne, Ye's fingers stretched out like tendrils, wrapping around its arms and legs. He yanked downwards, slamming the monster into the ground with catastrophic force. The beast roared in pure, humiliated rage. It threw a desperate punch, but Ye met it with his own. For a moment, they seemed evenly matched, but the monster was quickly overpowered. The great beast was now trembling before him. Its eyes darted towards its fallen spear, struggling just to reach for it. It made a desperate gambit, one that would risk resetting all its progress. It plunged its claws into the ground, summoning a volcano of lava to restore its power. Ye was startled by the sudden eruption. Molten rock flooded the chamber floor, and in seconds, he was completely surrounded. The boss monster laughed maniacally. "You'll regret not finishing me," it roared. "That was your final chance." But Ye just settled into a combat stance. In his fighter form, a new world opened up to him. He could see the enemy's weak points, and the glowing zones of their extractable traits. The stronger the trait, the more brilliantly it shined. Ye coiled his muscles, ready to strike. In a flash, he vanished. The monster frantically looked around. Where did he go? Before it could even blink, Ye's foot connected with its face. The powerful kick sent the beast crashing into the rock wall. The beast stared in horror, calling Ye the true monster. That last move was a perfect fusion of Frog Leap and the Mantis Scythe. With no hesitation, our hero grabbed something from the ground and ate it. Just then, the boss monster lurched to its feet, its power fully restored. It unleashed its ultimate skill, Molten Spiral. A terrifying wave of lava surged forward, ready to incinerate Yi to ashes. The beast roared, certain of its victory as the swirling inferno closed in. But in that moment, a brilliant golden aura erupted from Ye's body. The molten wave crashed down. But with a single, effortless swing of his blade, it was utterly annihilated. The boss monster's eyes widened in disbelief. Yi now wielded a spear forged from the monster's own horn. He casually remarked that the horn tasted a bit like black pepper sauce. And with a wicked grin, he declared, "I freaking love it." That devilish smile sent a wave of pure terror through the monster. It stumbled backward, scrambling away from him while crying for its mommy. It shrieked that Ye wasn't a human, but a monster who devours other monsters. Ye calmly asked the beast if it was ready to face its own ultimate attack. The system chimed in. The trait, Heavy-Horned Beast's Sharp Horn, had evolved into Heavy-Horned Beastman's Sharp Horn, gaining a powerful molten attribute. The newly evolved horn could now be summoned as a formidable lance. Yi then activated the skill, Scorching Heaven Molten Spiral. The boss monster begged for its life, pleading with him to stop. But Ye's attack was already launched, causing the beast to scream in agony. Its terrified screams echoed as the lava completely enveloped it, leaving absolutely nothing behind. Smoke filled the chamber, with Ye standing victorious at its center. Suddenly, an oblong marble materialized before him, with a tiny monster sealed inside. He wondered what this strange new item was. The Cockroach God explained that this was a monster seal. A rare drop obtainable only from Lord-class monsters in a secret realm. Using it would unlock a monster record for his Imperial Iron Guard, allowing a transformation. Yi instantly realized. This was the key to making Little Fatty truly useful. He tapped the marble, and it shattered into light. A new screen appeared. Fatty had obtained the Heavy-Horned Beastman record. Yi was prompted to summon his Imperial Iron Guard. He confirmed, and Fatty materialized from the system screen. A brilliant light enveloped its body, and it began to transform, taking the shape of the terrifying boss monster from before. Fatty looked down, confused as to why Ye suddenly seemed so small. Yi stared in awe at the incredible sight. His two-man army was becoming truly overpowered. Fatty then knelt before him, and a status screen appeared above its head. It displayed his new race, Heavy-Horned Beastman, at the formidable Guardian class. Even Fatty couldn't believe his new form, commenting on how ugly he looked. The Cockroach God interjected that this transformation was more than just skin deep. As Ye defeated stronger monsters, Fatty's own power would scale up with each new record unlocked. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the chamber. The massive pillar behind them was collapsing right on top of them, but Fatty simply flexed his newfound strength and effortlessly stopped the colossal pillar from crushing them, tossing it aside. Tears streamed down his face. He was now so huge he couldn't fit through doors, making him feel useless. Yi bonked him on the head, telling him to get a grip. His purpose was to evolve and fight alongside him. Ye challenged him, wanting to see what his new form was truly capable of. In response, Fatty lifted his hand and summoned a molten lance, then charged. The same attack that had sent Yi flying before was now blocked with just his forearms. But our boy Fatty didn't hold back. Upon impact, his lance exploded with searing lava. Yi emerged from the blast completely unscathed, steam rising from his body. He was shocked. Not even the original boss's flames packed that kind of punch. The Cockroach God looked on with pride. It explained that Fatty no longer needed to expend energy maintaining the secret realm. This meant he was fighting at 100% of a Lord State's power. The true strength of the Imperial Iron Guard was finally on display. With the test complete, Ye ordered Fatty to return to his side. Yi was beyond pleased. His strongest trait had evolved once more, now imbued with the devastating molten attribute. On top of that, Fatty could now transform into a powerful fighter. He would be the perfect hidden card, ready to turn the tide of any battle. He had risked his life to become this strong, and now he was finally ready to face the selection tournament. With his newly acquired traits and a full-power Secret Realm Lord at his command, he was confident he could overcome any trial they threw his way. He was certain he would earn his spot in the elite extermination squad. 3 days later, at the tournament arena, a new contestant arrived. The stadium was packed with people, and of course, our hero was among the competitors. While the crowd roared from the stands, he was stunned by the sheer number of people present. The audience was massive. Ye overheard someone say this tournament was the single most important event in Nurai City. It wasn't just about recruiting for the squad. It was a brutal political battlefield for control over the city itself. High above, Eileen and Corey watched from behind a glass window. Eileen explained that each of the city's major families had sent a representative to compete. The tournament's victor would determine which family secured the speaker's seat, controlling the city's power for the next 4 years. Just then, a group of men in black robes passed by Ye. He recognized them instantly. The man with the eye patch was from the notorious Bay family, which controlled the city's intelligence bureau. The ones with him were all elite operatives. Another powerhouse enters the ring. Tony Olaf, the face of the military. He's the overwhelming favorite to dominate this year's tournament. Eileen knows the military's true plan, to turn the extermination squad into a mere support unit, seizing absolute control over all of Ney's armed forces. When Hao and Tony met, the military man declared that this tournament would secure the Olaf family's 4th term in power. He didn't need to say more. The immense pressure was understood. Hao simply pledged that the B family's support for the Olafs would remain unwavering. Suddenly, a stir rippled through the crowd. A woman had arrived. It was the Saintess of the Esper, Karen Yer, making her first ever public appearance. Intel suggested Karen's ability was a powerful form of hypnosis or mind control. This is why her followers wear blindfolds, to shield themselves from her commanding gaze. A bizarre group flanked her. With their eyes covered, torsos and hands bound, and twisted postures, they seemed more like monsters than men. One glance at these followers was enough for Yi to sense something was deeply wrong. Eileen admitted that, for now, the church was a useful ally. Remote regions relied on their influence for stability, and their research on espers was invaluable. Even giants like Tony and Hao couldn't look away from Karen. Hao was stunned the church would send their saintess to compete, but Tony told him not to waste his energy. She wasn't their real target. His gaze shifted to a short figure in a white robe, stating the boy in the uniform and glasses was the one to watch. This was the Zhang family's representative, Zhang Jie. And up close, the boy looked completely overwhelmed. Tony sneered, asking if the Zhang family had no one better to send than their useless young master. His aura turned menacing. He offered Jie a humiliating deal: drop out now and surrender, and they might let the Zhang family cling to a single honorary seat in parliament. Jie shot back that even if stripped of their seats, they would never become the military's lapdog. But Tony just laughed, saying soon only 3 major families would be left anyway. Even from a distance, Yi could feel the suffocating tension between them. Eileen explained that the Zhang family, who runs the Esper Technology Research Institute, are allies of the extermination squad. But she also confirmed that Jie was, by far, the weakest of the 4 main representatives. The military was poised to devour the Zhang family's seat and tighten its grip on parliament. Through the mic, she told Yi the captain was counting on him to rank high, giving them a chance to shield the Zhang family. Yi promised to do his best. Then, Eileen removed her earpiece and asked the commander if he truly believed in the boy. She knew in her gut that if the military gained total control of the parliament, their entire squad would be in grave danger. But the commander simply said Yi had saved Yao and returned from the abyss alive. That alone proved he had hidden strength. Just then, fireworks lit up the sky as the crowd roared with excitement. All eyes turned to the arena's center as vines erupted from the ground, blooming into a giant flower that revealed Haley Carmen. She introduced herself as the examiner for round 1. She explained the tournament consists of 3 grueling assessments. The first is called the extreme climb. Behind her stood a mountain path formed by 100 massive stone steps. Simply reaching the 10th step is a pass, but Haley added a chilling fact. Historically, 2/3 of all contestants die on this climb. The examinees' faces went pale with shock. Haley assured them that Squad 10 of the Extermination Squad would do their best to ensure their safety, but she still advised extreme caution. With a sharp cry, she declared the first round had begun. But a wave of fear kept most contestants frozen in place. One man, forcing down his terror, scoffed that it was just a climb and charged forward. His reckless courage sparked a fire in the others, and they followed, scrambling up the steps. But the true elites, Karen, Jay, Hawu, and Tony, remained perfectly still. Tony smirked, calling the runners a bunch of fools, charging to their deaths without even knowing the cause. One of the men up ahead yelled back, mocking the 4 families for cowering together like puppies. He boasted that he would be the victor of this round as he continued to ascend. Then, his entire world shifted. He was no longer on a mountain but standing in a city. The man was utterly confused, but in reality, he was still on the steps, frozen like a statue. Yi watched intently, wondering why they had all stopped moving. Haley knew the truth. This was no mere physical test. The 100 steps were carved from the bones of a Ghost King-class monster. It was one of the most powerful creatures humanity had ever managed to defeat. And even as mere bones, its cursed power could trap anyone who stepped on it within a powerful illusion, forever barring their path. If the examinees couldn't break free from the illusion soon, ravenous monsters would devour their helpless bodies, a truly gruesome end. Haley's voice echoed, announcing that the failed examinees had been eliminated. She then unleashed a resurrection halo upon them. He was shocked to learn that those players had actually died. Eileen fitted her earpiece back on, explaining that every illusion has its own objective. It could be surviving until a timer runs out, reaching a specific point, or defeating a designated monster. Once the condition is met, the path to escape the illusion opens. She warned that she couldn't contact him inside, so he'd have to trust his own judgment. Tony turned to his squad, reminding them of their one mission, to climb higher than anyone else. In perfect sync, they stepped onto the first stair. Tony braced himself for the trial ahead. He was instantly transported to a volcanic mountain as a timer blazed in the sky. The flames swirled and twisted, forming a fearsome dragon. He saw through the illusion's design immediately, a perfect counter to his abilities. But Tony simply smirked. His only task was to survive for 5 minutes. His squad was right there with him, immediately executing Plan 1. Torrents of water erupted from their hands. While the others acted like firefighters, Tony stood perfectly still. Then, with a flick of his wrist, he snapped his fingers. A massive chunk of ice shot up from the ground, piercing the fire dragon's core and making it vanish. The military team proceeded onward. Corey watched, deeply impressed. He noticed there was no resistance at all, realizing even the subordinates must be awakened ones. He commented that the military was truly betting everything on winning this year. Eileen wondered how the commander remained so unfazed. He advised her not to get nervous just yet. The first 10 steps, he explained, are merely a filter to weed out the rookies who aren't squad material. For these elite candidates, it's barely a warm-up, but the higher they climb, the more ruthless the illusions become. Eventually, they'll run out of subordinates to use as shields, and that is when the real showdown will begin. He declared that to reach the summit, one must either unleash a technique that can overwhelm 100 foes, pushing their power to its absolute limit, or they need a mind that can calmly adapt to any trap destiny throws their way. The audience suddenly noticed something strange. There was still one person left in the launch zone. They wondered if he'd already chickened out and quit. They were all looking at Ye, who finally opened his eyes and began to climb the stairs. The first illusion descended upon him. He found himself sliding down a sheer, icy cliff, falling into the abyss. He drew his lance in an instant, plunging it deep into the cliffside. The blade held firm, halting his fall. But then, he sensed a hostile presence. A bizarre blue bird with a gaping mouth appeared from above. He was in a terrible spot, on a frictionless cliff where even standing was impossible. And now, a flying monster was diving straight for him. Just then, the system screen materialized. Ye tapped. Attack, then venomous stinger, followed by sticky tongue snap. He executed the entire combo, gaining a powerful stinger whip. The whip absorbed the bird's lightning attack, glowing an ominous blue as the power was reflected back, striking the beast and sending it plummeting into the chasm below. Ye thought it was almost too easy. He resumed his climb without missing a beat. He mused how these illusion monsters looked intimidating, but their strength was on par with mere grunts from the silent shade jungle. He recalled Eileen's intel, which mentioned that near the summit, the monsters were Guardian class. He was confident that at his current level, he could handle them. He took another step, and the illusion shifted once more. This time, it was a maze. Labyrinth illusions like this were always the most treacherous, with completely unpredictable terrain. If someone ran into an enemy that countered their powers here, they could be trapped forever. But that wasn't a problem for our main character. He used his spear's lava ability to incinerate a massive area, clearing a direct path for himself. With that, he instantly saw the exit. Ye was certain his adaptable abilities could overcome any environment. He charged straight through. The man beside him, who had just cleared 2 steps, scoffed, thinking Ye had started last on purpose just to show off and act like some protagonist. Ye took another step, and another, ascending at a blinding speed. The men he passed were left completely stunned. "How is that even fair?" one shouted. Another just called him a beast. A third man desperately begged Ye to take him along. It was the same one who had just called Ye a show-off. The other 2 beside him shot him a death glare. They took out their anger on him for his big mouth, convinced they'd lost their chance to be carried. Corey commented that Ye was faster than he ever expected. At this rate, he might actually make it to the summit. Eileen seemed worried. Not long ago, he was just a clueless, thick-skinned rookie, and now he was aiming for a height that not even the commander could achieve. The 4 from the elite companies were still holding the lead. Haley announced that someone had finished the course at 38 steps, Karen had completed 35, and Tony currently held the highest score at a staggering 40 steps. He glanced behind him and saw Ye, panting and out of breath. The frustration was written all over his face. His lackeys had already been wiped out. He was now completely alone. Tony had timed their entry into the illusion to match his. And then, they ambushed him. Despair washed over him. He'd only made it 31 steps. Still 9 agonizing steps short of his family's greatest record. Was this truly the end? Their demand echoed in his mind. Bark like a dog 10 times and surrender. Only then could his family cling to a single seat in Parliament. It was a devil's bargain offered by Tony. A single sacrifice to save his family's honor. Tears of shame streamed down his face. He bit his lip until it bled. When a new presence made itself known. Yi had caught up. Tony was stunned. Especially since Ye was all alone, with no underlings to sacrifice along the way. "Who goes there?" Tony demanded. But Ye just kept climbing. Zay watched in awe, marveling at his strength, thinking if only they knew someone so powerful in their own city. They would have begged him to be their champion instead. Over the earpiece, Eileen ordered Ye to assist Zay, but our boy just kept ascending. His silence made her wonder. Could he even hear her commands? One of Tony's men gasped in admiration. Tony instantly berated him, reminding him that the Olaf family spent a fortune training them for this very moment. He ordered them to follow his lead as they pushed up several more levels. His goal was to shatter his family's 50-step record. But one by one, his last 2 subordinates collapsed. He knew it was reckless, but he was gaining ground fast. Then a chilling thought crossed his mind. Where did that kid go? To his absolute horror, Ye was already standing right behind him. The shock twisted Tony's face into an ugly mask. Ye casually strode past him, remarking that second place was all his for the taking. The insult set Tony's blood on fire. Ye turned back, a smirk playing on his lips. "Giving up so soon?" he taunted. "A real man doesn't quit that easily." The words struck a nerve, pushing Tony deeper into rage. By noon, Haley's announcement echoed. Ye was now in the lead with 60 steps. Soon he hit 82 steps, then 99. In that moment, he had tied the commander's all-time highest record. Just one more step to the summit. The crowd roared with excitement, knowing they were about to witness history. A single question was on everyone's lips. Who was this kid? One of the other examinees wept, admitting his defeat. But the casino boss. He recognized Ye. He remembered the insane bet. Ye had wagered all of his own organs on a victory. Seeing his unstoppable climb, the boss knew he was completely ruined. Before taking that final legendary step, Ye had one more thing to say. He looked down with utter arrogance and asked, "Is this really all there is?" Suddenly, a burst of static came from his earpiece. "Quit showing off!" Eileen yelled, her voice laced with fury. She was livid that he had ignored her direct order to help. "You clear one round, and suddenly you think you're a god?" She fumed. He simply replied, "I'll complete the mission." Just as I promised. Then he moved. But he was heading downwards. Confusion swept through the crowd. Why was he descending when a safe path awaited him? He was walking right back into the illusions. Tony saw him approaching. "What's wrong?" Yi mocked. "Not at the 50th step yet?" Tony seethed. It felt like Yi had returned for the sole purpose of humiliating him. He stopped right in front of Zay, his shadow casting over him. Zay stared, completely baffled. Without a word, Ye grabbed him. To everyone's astonishment, he hoisted Zay over his shoulder. Tony couldn't believe his eyes. He was going to drag dead weight back up the mountain? Not only that, He was attempting a two-person difficulty illusion, all by himself. Instantly, the illusion activated. A hellscape of molten lava erupted around them. The heat would have incinerated them if not for the barrier Ye instantly erected. They cleared it, only for another illusion to take its place. This time, they were in a dark forest, surrounded by vicious monsters. Yi simply dangled Zay from a branch as he dealt with the threats. The next illusion threw them into a raging sea. Titanic sea monsters lunged, trying to devour them. Yi transformed into a massive bird, and Zay clung on for dear life. Zay desperately wanted to help, to not be a complete burden. But Ye's speed was inhuman. Before Zay could even shake off the dizziness of entering a new illusion, Ye was already clearing it. And in that moment, he understood. The best way to help was to shut up and hold on. To be the perfect, silent accessory. The sun climbed high into the sky. They landed safely on another step. By now, Zay was gasping for air. They reached the 50th step. As long as you're one step above Tony, Ye said, you'll be safe. Tears of gratitude streamed down Zay's face as he bowed deeply. From this day forward, he declared, you are a benefactor of the Zhang family. You! Tony's enraged scream cut through the air. Yi glanced at him, unimpressed. Tony was shaking with fury. Do you have any idea what you've done? Do you really want to destroy the Olaf family's plan? A plan 4 years in the making? He tried to threaten him, roaring that anyone who messes with the Olaf family is finished. But our main character, he didn't even flinch. He remembered what Justine did, how the military officer had framed him. It dawned on him. These people are so used to their tyranny, they expect the entire world to bow before them. He had to wonder. How do people like this not have enemies everywhere? He turned to Zay with a smirk. Hey, want me to help you vent some of that frustration? Zay's eyes lit up as he gave an enthusiastic thumbs up. Consider it part of your reward. At those words, Ye vanished. Tony was still screaming. In the blink of an eye, Ye's fist connected with his face. A tooth went flying as Tony tumbled backwards, his mind reeling. Even the commander of the extermination squad wouldn't dare defy them so openly. He demanded to know who the hell Ye thought he was. In the next moment, he was sent tumbling down the stairs. From the shadows, a figure watched everything on a screen. Seeing the fall, the man on the couch shot to his feet. He roared for Genting to bring him a full report on Ye by nightfall. Understood, Chairman, Genting replied instantly. This was Genting, the formidable head of Near City's intelligence bureau, and the current patriarch of the powerful Bai family. The chairman, Lord Olaf, sneered, I don't care who he is. If he dares to mess with me, he will pay the price. As the chairman of Near City's parliament and patriarch of the Olaf family, his power was absolute. Meanwhile, at dusk, Ye returned to his small apartment to rest. He sprawled on the couch, eating potato chips with his feet on the table. The first round of the selection tournament had ended 2 days prior. And to everyone's shock, Tony, the tournament's top contender, had only placed third. Though Ye had to admit, the guy had guts. After being kicked off the mountain, he'd clawed his way back up to the 49th step before collapsing. Before the match had even started, Ye had wagered every magic crystal from the abyss, even his own organs, and won big on insane 10-to-1 odds. The casino boss practically wept with gratitude for his life. That boss had to liquidate every asset he owned just to pay Ye the promised 50 gold coins. In this world, a single gold coin is worth about $100,000. 50 gold was what Eileen earned in a full year of grueling monster hunts. In other words, Ye was now incredibly wealthy. And as for the reward from the Zhang family's young master, his thoughts were shattered by someone barging through his door. His eyes widened in shock. Eileen had kicked his door clean open. Oh, he was in deep trouble now. He immediately shot up to attention. She couldn't believe he'd refused a 3-story villa from the Zhang family to live in this dump. Are you an idiot? She demanded. Ye was stunned. He explained that it was close to the extermination squad's tower, making it safer. Eileen's own home was inside that very tower. Stop wasting money, she snapped. Every coin should be spent on getting stronger. She informed him of an auction happening that night. He needed to attend and broaden his horizons. She handed him an invitation. As night fell, they walked through the shadowed streets. Ye nervously scanned his surroundings, jumping at the squeak of a mouse. He couldn't believe an auction was being held in such a creepy alley. Is this even legit? He asked. Eileen explained the items sold here weren't allowed on the open market, but were in high demand. That's why, she said. It's called the black market. Ye was floored. He knew this was illegal. And not only was she not stopping it, she was participating. In the dead of night, Eileen knocked on a hidden back door. 3 sharp knocks, followed by a tense silence. The door creaked open. Stay close to me, she whispered as they stepped inside. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind them. Then, the lights blazed to life. Ye was blinded by the sudden glare. When his vision returned, He saw robed figures pointing guns at them. They were completely surrounded. One man pulled back his hood, demanding their invitation. Eileen calmly handed it over. After a tense inspection, the man grunted, "Follow me." They were led through another door, into a massive auction hall. The seats were already filled with powerful-looking figures. Ye was amazed at the size of the crowd. They found their seats. He leaned over. "Are you sure this is legal?" She smirked. "With the Bai family backing it, illegal becomes legal. Besides," she added, "ordinary people can't even get in." Meanwhile, on the second floor, in the Olaf family's private room, a man in a military uniform sat on the couch. This was Hart, a top agent for the Olaf family. One of his guards pointed towards the crowd below. "Sir, Eileen from the extermination squad is in seat 17, with Ye." Hart looked down, a devilish grin spreading across his face. Well, he murmured, "it's a small world, isn't it?" A few moments later, the host appeared on stage in a sexy bunny costume. "Tonight," she purred, "we have over 100 rare treasures. Your visit will be more than worthwhile. Our first item is a genuine merfolk tail. It was an extremely rare monster part, edible by normal humans, and it was legendary for its powerful anti-aging effects. Everyone knew just how incredibly difficult such an item was to obtain. The bidding started at 1 gold coin, and the crowd erupted. It was a brilliant move to start with such a premium item. It was so rare, it could save the life of someone's grandfather in the audience. The Cockroach God screamed in his mind about how amazing it was. But Ye just saw it as a useless, trash-tier trait. He couldn't understand why everyone was fighting over a piece of junk. Eileen shot him a look. "It extends a person's lifespan, you idiot." She thought he was a fool for not grasping something so basic. The next items were unsold relics from previous auctions, now offered at a deep discount, starting at 100 copper coins. The audience groaned. They knew they were being offered a collection of useless trash. They were seasoned enough to know that not every monster corpse was a treasure. Some were just bait for clueless newcomers. The Cockroach God's senses flared, evaluating the traits as grade E, A, C, D, and A. A confident smirk played on Ye's lips. He raised his hand, his voice echoing through the hall, declaring he would take them all. The auctioneer's face lit up with pleasure. She was thrilled they'd found a sucker. Ye's readiness to spend only solidified Eileen's belief that he was a naive fool. But next, one of the night's most awaited treasures was unveiled, a relic from the treacherous Siink Abyss frozen plateau. This was the very item Eileen craved, a magic crystal from the plateau's lord, the Frostfang Plateau Spider. The auctioneer boasted that the crystal's purity exceeded 50%, perfectly preserved, and of the highest possible quality. It was the ultimate prize for any ice-type awakener. The bidding began at a single gold coin. After the humiliation with the evolved mushroom monster, Eileen was determined to win this. Once her Snowfang blades achieved ice infinity, their power would be unmatched. She refused to suffer such disgrace again. She raised her paddle high. The auctioneer acknowledged her bid, then scanned the room for another. Suddenly a button lit up. Seat 1 bids 10 gold coins. The bid came from the honored guest suite on the second floor. From now on, she announced, each raise would increase by 1 gold coin. In that instant, Hart knew exactly what Eileen was after. It was the same item their young master Tony demanded. Eileen's eyes shot daggers at them. With the Olaf family now in the fight, everything became complicated. She bid 11 gold. Seat 1 shot back with 15. She pushed her bid to 20 gold, but Seat 1 instantly offered 25. The crowd whispered, she must be insane to challenge the Olaf family. They knew who she was. Ye realized this was bad. Hart knew a mere vice captain couldn't have deep pockets. He calculated her limit was 30 gold. Annoyance flashed across Eileen's face as she bid exactly 30 gold. The bidding war, the auctioneer declared, was just getting exciting. Would the treasure fall to seat 17? That was every last coin she owned. She prayed it would be enough. But the auctioneer's face brightened once more as seat 1 bid 35 gold. Jaws dropped across the room. Eileen's world crumbled around her. One of Hart's men approached her, a cruel smirk on his face, to deliver a message. "Already out of money?" he sneered. "If you can't afford to play, don't show up. This place isn't for paupers." Hart laughed, imagining the look of defeat on their faces. The auctioneer began the final call. Suddenly, Ye snatched the paddle from Eileen's hand. He rose to his feet and roared, 50 gold! The entire hall fell into stunned silence. Eileen stared at him in disbelief. Hart found this interesting. In all his years as an Olaf agent, no one had ever dared to outbid them to the bitter end. He pressed the button, raising the bid to 55 gold. The price continued to skyrocket. Seat 1 was now at 80 gold. Ye countered with 90. Eileen warned him they couldn't possibly go any higher. But Ye had it all calculated. They had 80 gold, and Zay had said the villa was worth at least 20 more. He knew they could win this. Don't panic, he told her. Focus on securing the item. If we're short, I'll talk to Zay. A voice from behind them replied, He's right. It's just a few gold coins. Zay was standing right there. Don't worry, he said with a grin. Whatever you're short, I'll cover it. Hart's subordinate leaned in. They couldn't keep bidding. They were far beyond the family's budget. And with Zay backing them, it was impossible. Yi raised his middle finger, mouthing their own words back at them. If you can't play, don't come. Hart's face twisted in rage. The auction was over. That night, Eileen thanked them for everything. She swore to Ye she would repay every last coin she owed him. He brushed it off, telling her not to be so formal. Every coin, he reminded her, should be invested into becoming stronger. He was simply following her own advice to the very end. But just then, the ground began to tremble violently. Zay cried out, What's happening? An emergency alert blared on Eileen's device. All extermination squad members were to respond to a disaster, level A, in the stronghold. Outside the walls, a storm of birds took flight, and from the earth itself, a colossal monster clawed its way to the surface. It resembled a giant caterpillar, but with a gaping maw filled with razor-sharp teeth. As its massive foot crashed down, it unleashed a tidal wave of energy that grew stronger with every second, shaking the very foundations of the city. That's when Eileen received her summons, with orders to gather patrol teams and escort civilians to the nearest shelters. She was about to say something to her two companions, but Ye cut her off. You don't have to say a word, he declared. In a crisis like this, every combat unit counts. I am yours to command. Zay was ready for action too. Follow me, she ordered, and the three of them sprinted into the chaos. Parts of the city were already engulfed in flames. A drone's voice boomed from above, ordering all civilians to evacuate to the shelters immediately. Panic filled the streets as people ran for their lives. A terrifying roar froze everyone in their tracks. A woman pointed to the sky, her face pale with horror. Gigantic insects were swarming above, descending upon the city. It crushed them without mercy. Witnessing the carnage, a wave of absolute terror washed over the humans. They scattered in a blind panic. But a little girl, frozen in fear, cried out for her mother. In a miraculous moment, her mother found her. Debris rained down from the sky, a deadly shower that injured countless people below. The culprits were monstrous spiders, clad in sharp, chitinous shells, letting out an eerie squeak. Without warning, they began their assault. They feasted on the living as blood painted the streets. One after another, the monsters attacked. The mother clutched her child and ran, only to find her path blocked. She froze, watching the creature lunge. All she could do was shut her eyes tight. But in that desperate moment, Ye arrived. The beast was cleaved in two, a clean strike from Ye's lance. He channeled blazing flames through his arms into the weapon, utterly annihilating the monster. The mother stared, speechless at the sight of her savior. She offered her heartfelt thanks. Just then, Ye noticed a commotion nearby. Eileen had two men hoisted by their collars. Someone recognized them instantly. They were the same cowards who appeared with Tony. He couldn't fathom it. So-called awakeners who just stood by, watching civilians get slaughtered by monsters. And now they were disguised as ordinary people, trying to sneak into the shelter. Eileen introduced herself, her voice like ice. She was drafting them into the reserve forces, effective immediately, for the city's defense. The brown-haired man sneered, saying he was here to get paid, not to throw his life away. He questioned what good money would be if he was crippled. The other chimed in, arguing it was the squad's problem and had nothing to do with them. Then the first man shot a look at Ye. He hoped the monsters would tear the show-off hero apart. As he turned to leave, Eileen's spider silk shot out, wrapping around the man and yanking him to the ground. He screamed, asking what she was doing. She planted her foot on his cheek. Was I not clear? She asked, her voice dangerously low. This is a conscription, not a negotiation. Take them away, she commanded. Treat them as deserters. No, the man yelled. He was an Olympic athlete, not even part of the extermination squad. He shrieked that she couldn't do this. Ye pointed out the obvious. The city was crawling with monsters, yet this man was still trying to curry favor with the four families. Such weakness made him unworthy of the squad. Suddenly, Eileen received an order. Assist the Vermilion Gate. At that very moment, a massive explosion rocked the city. She called to Ye, telling him to come with her. They sped off on a motorcycle. As they neared the gate, a second explosion tore through the air. Monsters were pouring through the breach. She grit her teeth. There was no time to wait for backup. They were going in alone. She slammed the brakes on the bike, shooting her spider silk upwards. Gripping Ye, she vaulted them both over the chaos. Landing atop the wall, she saw a scene of utter devastation. The corpses of humans and monsters littered the ramparts. Ye cursed, frustrated they were too late. He looked over the other side of the wall. An endless sea of monsters stared back. He asked if it was really just the two of them against that horde. Eileen scanned the area, her mind racing. Then she saw it. A cannon. If that cannon still worked, she told him, they might just hold the line. Buy me 2 minutes, she yelled over the roar. Hold them off while I get this thing running. As if on cue, gigantic insectoid monsters took to the sky, flying right at them. Ye felt a cold sweat. Just him. For 2 whole minutes. He had no choice but to stand his ground. He unleashed his cockroach scythe, his attack instantly wiping out a swarm of creatures. He spotted a crawling monster slipping past him. He shot out his sticky tongue, wrapping it around the beast and hurling it from the wall. None of you will get past me, he roared. A deafening shriek from a massive beast caught his attention. In the blink of an eye, the monster was on him. He summoned his lance, slicing the creature in half just in time. He was already gasping for breath. Another monster towered over him. In that moment, he finally understood. He understood the terror that made those 2 cowards run. One wrong move, one split-second mistake against these things, meant certain death. He glanced at a human corpse beside him. The man's skin had melted away, revealing muscle and teeth in a horrifying grin. Ye's gaze hardened with resolve. He turned back to the monster. He leaped, evading its deadly strike, then plunged his lance down from above. Fear, he thought, should never be an excuse to abandon your duty. He ripped a piece of flesh from the fallen monster and consumed it. A new power surged through him. He had acquired the dragon-grasping claw trait. His arms transformed, becoming powerful weapons that tore through the monsters swarming him. But then, an attack came from his blind spot, faster than anything before. Dust exploded as the monster's razor-sharp legs slammed into the ground where he had just been standing. Meanwhile, at the base of the Vermilion Gate, a bloated monster crawled forward, carrying a massive egg sack filled with countless spawn. It hurled the sack into the air. The impact was like a bomb, shattering the egg and unleashing a tide of ravenous baby monsters. At this point, Ye was running on fumes. He knew that at this rate, the waves of monsters would never end. Where was his 2-minute backup? But he also knew that if he lost this wall, the city would fall, so many more would die. That thought alone was his fuel. He declared to the heavens that from the moment he stepped onto this wall, retreating was never an option. He rose to his feet, unleashing a torrent of flames. A relentless tide of monsters surged straight for him. More fire erupted, coiling around his lance in a deadly vortex. This was the trait known as Scorching Heaven Molten Spiral, and it incinerated hordes of monsters in a single, devastating blast. But the inferno of battle raged on. Inside the city's control room, the peaceful night sky on the main screen was a cruel mockery. Frustration boiled over as one man slammed his fist on the console. None of the defense systems were online, and the main crystal was completely dead. He desperately ordered the activation sequence again. It was a hopeless situation. The sequence ran, but the crystal gave absolutely no response. I'll do it, a voice cut through the panic. Everyone turned, confused. They saw it was just a rookie they didn't recognize. But then, recognition dawned in their eyes. That was Ji, whose entire clan was responsible for developing the city's whole defense system. A murmur of hope spread. No one in the world knew the system better than him. As Ji got to work, 2 monstrous phantom arms erupted from his back, typing furiously alongside his own. His eyes scanned the data streams instantly. He saw it. The crystal loop was functioning, and the crystal energy amplifiers were online. Plus, all threat detection signals were stable. The crystal hardware was perfectly fine. That meant there was only one horrifying reason for the shutdown. His fingers flew across the keyboard. And there it was, just as he suspected. An energy interruption. Someone had used the emergency override during system diagnostics to cut off all energy output from the crystals. From the watchtowers and outer bunkers to the energy cannons and even the triple-layer core, every single defense had been disabled by this shutdown. He also knew that this specific command wasn't used, not even for regular maintenance. The chilling truth crashed down on him. This was deliberate sabotage. Someone had betrayed them all. They were practically handing the city over to the monsters. With grim determination, he began rebooting the city's internal defense weapons. As he typed, the crystal began to hum with power. The cannons began to glow, and then they roared to life, unleashing hell upon the invaders. A cheer erupted in the control room as the systems came back online, but Z remained focused on his work, watching as people were finally rescued from the front lines. He felt a wave of relief, thankful the extermination squad had run full-scale disaster drills so frequently. The church was handling evacuation and medical support, while the intelligence bureau maintained order within the city walls. They guided civilians to safety, even as the military revealed its cold strategy. They had planned to let the extermination squad get worn down, stepping in only when the city was on the brink of collapse. But now, the sabotage had forced their hand. Z couldn't help but think, if they had just mobilized earlier, the damage would never have been this catastrophic, even with the system down. He knew this fight was far from over. Even with the system rebooted, the few remaining turrets had to hold the line, no matter the cost. The wall could not fall. If they lost it, the entire city would be annihilated. Meanwhile, Ye was already panting, barely able to stand. He'd killed countless monsters, but more just kept coming, an endless wave of death that wouldn't even give him a moment to breathe. After that last molten spiral, he couldn't fire another one for a while. "Eileen!" he roared. "Aren't you done yet?" Just then, a colossal monster loomed over him. Its body was long and grotesque, with countless legs. Its mouth gaped wide, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth. Though exhausted, Ye charged forward, piercing the monster's mouth with his lance and making it explode from within. He leaped back, checking the cannon desperately. Eileen said it just needed 2 minutes. But 2 minutes became 4, and now almost 10 minutes had passed with him fighting all alone. "Are you done already?" he screamed. The monster suddenly ignored him, its gaze locking onto the cannon as it moved with terrifying speed. It soared over his head, going straight for the cannon. Alarm bells shrieked in Ye's mind as he launched himself into the air, landing right on the monster's head. He gripped his lance with both hands, gathering every last shred of his strength to pierce its skull. But the beast wouldn't stop. Just as it was about to crush their only hope, the cannon fired, hitting the monster directly. "Is it over?" Ye gasped. Eileen stood and replied, "It took longer, but the crystal has been restored." The cannons continued to fire, one after another. Countless monsters were vaporized in the blasts. At that moment, armed soldiers marched in. Ye saw them as Eileen declared that they were finally in position. She ordered them that the wall turrets would be back online soon, but until then, they must hold the line, no matter what. "Yes," they all replied. But little did they know, smaller monsters were watching the wall, and they launched themselves into the air. The extermination squad immediately opened fire. They hit the airborne beasts, but one managed to land on a soldier, devouring him instantly. The man's colleague saw it and emptied his weapon into the monster. He turned to his fallen comrade, but from his side, another monster appeared, latched onto his neck, and dragged him down. The other men kept firing, fighting on through the tears streaming down their faces. The monsters were hit again and again. The battlefield was pure chaos. A symphony of furious screams, pleas for help, and the horrific noises of the beasts. And Ye kept fighting too, slicing up a large monster while breathing in ragged, desperate gasps. He glanced over his shoulder. "Can you hold out?" he yelled to the soldiers. "I'll cover this flank. Fall back for now." But when he looked again, he was the only one left standing. A cold dread washed over him, followed by a burning rage. He roared a curse at the monstrous horde. "Just die!" he screamed, unleashing a devastating explosion of power. Suddenly, the tower hummed to life. A hidden gate ground open beneath the wall, revealing a gigantic cannon. A voice crackled through the comms. "Eileen, this is HQ. The Guardian cannon is fully charged." Just as a fresh wave of monsters surged forward. "Fire!" Eileen commanded without hesitation. The cannons unleashed blinding beams of pure energy. Their coordinated blast covered a massive area. Massive explosions erupted across the battlefield. Countless monsters were caught in the inferno, vaporized in an instant. Ye could only watch the utter devastation. A grim expression was etched onto his face. The barrage continued relentlessly, one after another. Soon, the area was nothing but a scorched wasteland. The cannons finally fell silent. Most of the beasts were annihilated. The few survivors had already fled in terror, Eileen explained. The Guardian cannon can wipe out entire packs, but it needs a long time to recharge. She elaborated that normally, when a Class A abyssal breach occurs, they detect energy spikes days, even weeks, in advance. That gives them ample time to prepare their defenses near the entry points. But this time, it was completely silent. Her body trembled as she confessed. There wasn't a single warning sign. Yi listened in silence, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. Before them lay a field of carnage. "None of this is your fault," he said softly. She knew that, but the tears fell anyway. "I know, but it's just so much." Suddenly, another massive explosion rocked the wall. They were completely caught off guard. Something was burrowing through the ground towards them, kicking up a massive trail of dust as it charged. It erupted from the earth, a horrifying, humongous beast. Its writhing tentacles shot out, aiming straight for the cannons. He couldn't believe his eyes. The creature slammed into the wall, and it crumbled like sand. He was sent plummeting, but as his vision cleared, a new fear gripped him. Because Eileen was falling with him. He activated his extra-long ape arms, stretching them out desperately. He managed to grab her just in time. With his other arm, he dug into the rock face, halting their terrifying fall. Eileen opened her eyes, only to see their cannons utterly obliterated in a single blow. Yi was dumbfounded, staring at the monstrous behemoth. It had the head of a shark, filled with rows of razor-sharp teeth. Multiple eyes stared out from its face, above a cluster of legs. Its long, serpentine body was lined with powerful tentacles. "We can't let it destroy the wall," Eileen yelled. Without a second thought, they shot forward, aiming straight for its head. Yi thrust his lance as Eileen slashed with her blade. They struck in perfect sync. Yi recoiled in shock. Its hide was impossibly tough. He shifted his aim, targeting its eyes instead. But even there, his lance couldn't pierce its defense. He was completely out of options. The monster violently shook him off, sending him flying, then it bit down on the wall and devoured a massive chunk of it. Yi could only watch in horror as he fell. The monster had torn a huge gap in their defenses. Eileen let out a frustrated curse. He regrouped with her, her face pale with worry that the wall would collapse. They looked up to see the monster staring at the sky, before opening its gaping maw. It was preparing to swallow them whole. But then a blonde-haired man appeared from nowhere. He raised a massive red hammer and brought it crashing down. Both of them stared in utter disbelief. Eileen's eyes widened in recognition. Captain Ling Xiao. He was the legendary captain of the Extermination Squad's Unit 1. He landed beside them. Ye couldn't believe this unassuming man was their captain, but Eileen was beaming with pride as she made the introduction. She declared that in the entire extermination force, his power was second only to Commander Corey himself. She explained his frail appearance. His ability allows him to control blood in combat, but years of constant battle have left him with chronic anemia. As she spoke, blood drained from the fallen monsters, twisting and forming into massive crimson fists. The captain commanded the floating blood fists with a mere gesture. "Don't let his appearance fool you," Eileen warned. Ye's eyes widened in shock. A single fist slammed into the monster, making it groan in pain. Now, it was truly enraged. Its powerful limbs shot towards Ling Xiao. Ye and Eileen instantly moved to assist, as the monster's attack shattered the ground where they had just stood. While dodging, Ye's heart sank. The last attack had created a fresh crack in the city wall. He feared for the captain's safety, but Eileen simply told him to watch. She knew an attack of that level was nothing to him. Ling Xiao had blocked the colossal limb with a simple staff. He was completely unscathed. He countered, swinging his giant hammer, which began to morph mid-air. It transformed into a cage of blood, trapping the beast's limb. Immobilized, the monster let out a furious roar. Ling Xiao bit his thumb, drawing his own blood. He then spoke to the fallen, his voice echoing. "To all who lie buried here, your fear, your rage, your sorrow, I have heard it all." He drew forth their spilled blood, combining it into an immense crimson sword. "With the remnants of your blood," he declared, "I will end this beast." The monster roared, as if sensing its own impending doom. Ling Xiao swung the massive blood sword. It sliced through the monster with impossible ease. Ye could only watch, captivated by the overwhelming display of power. With a blinding flash of steel, the monster's colossal body was split in two, its grotesque form bursting wide open. A suffocating pressure washed over Ye. So this was the true power of a first squad captain. A torrential downpour of black blood rained down where Ling Xiao stood. He turned to Eileen, declaring his pride and everyone's resolve. He knew not a single soul had wavered in the face of death. Even now, their fighting spirit still blazed like a furious inferno. Eileen's voice cut through his thoughts. "You should probably stop the bleeding on your finger." He hadn't even noticed, swept up in the heat of his warm-up. He searched for a bandage, but Eileen offered him one instead. Ling Xiao's gaze turned cold as he vowed, "This grudge will be settled once I have slain the Abyssal Lord." Yi realized with chilling certainty that there was no time to relax. He had grown so much since his return, but compared to a squad captain, he knew he was still leagues behind. His gaze shot to the sky as a fleet of aircraft swarmed towards them. In an instant, they unleashed their payload. The earth erupted in a series of cataclysmic explosions. A voice echoed from a nearby mech. It was Z. "From here on out," he announced, "leave it to the Jiang family's technology. The entire defense system of Nei City was built by us. By dawn, our repair drones will have the walls fully operational again." Yi was in awe. He murmured, "Compared to this kind of black tech, our old outpost feels like a primitive village. No wonder everyone dreams of moving to Nei City." Ling Xiao's voice broke his trance. "The commander wants you and Eileen to report to the Supreme Council," he added sharply. "That includes she, too," Yi protested. "But the wall won't be fixed that soon. What if the monsters return while we're gone?" Ling Xiao just smirked. "I'm staying." "Let them come," he added. "I could use another warm-up." They had their orders. Soon, at the Nei City Parliament, Eileen, Ye, and she stood before imposing monolithic screens. Yi delivered his report on the battle. Eileen followed with her own testimony. From the screens, the powerful figures of the council glared down at them. Zhang Seiwai, president of the Zhang Group, spoke first. The primary cause of the Nuri City breach was deliberate sabotage of its core power system. This act of treason prevented all 3 defense layers from activating in time. Eileen's report confirms that once power was restored, he continued, the city's defenses held up perfectly. His voice boomed with conviction. I demand the council launch a full-scale investigation into this matter. Bai Genting, the director of intelligence, replied coolly. The intelligence department will, of course, handle the inquiry. However, he added, a dangerous glint in his eyes, I believe there is a far more urgent matter at hand. Say why, he scoffed. So because you can't pin the blame on us, you're just going to sweep it under the rug? Suddenly, a woman's voice cut them both off. Enough. She was Taya User, matriarch of the User family and the high priestess of the Esper Church. She declared, our top priority must be dealing with the unexpected emergence of the A-class Abyss. She looked to another screen, asking, Commander Corey, when will the Abyss Suppression Squad be deployed? The commander's face was grim. The extermination squad has gathered. But there has been an incident. I received this message just moments before this meeting. He played a video showing a monster identical to the one Ling Xiao had just slain, its tentacles crushing a truck. A man's desperate voice cried out for help. Facility 12 is under a monster invasion. Yi had no idea what that was. Eileen explained, her voice trembling slightly. It's the most top-secret Zhong facility. My sister is its director. Even I don't have the clearance to know what they're researching. Fear for her sister's safety gripped her heart. Yi was shocked. Why is something so important located outside the city? Eileen's expression darkened. It was supposed to be inside, but the council rejected the plan. Citing advanced tech safety risks, she spat, they forced us to relocate it beyond the city walls. Ye understood instantly. It was a deliberate setup. Eileen pleaded, have they been evacuated? Is my sister all right? Commander Corey's reply was heavy. No warning signals were received. Nearly everyone at the facility is still trapped inside. My plan is to delay the suppression squad, he announced, and send Ling Xiao to lead a rescue mission to Facility 12 immediately. Taya objected instantly. Commander, the church can sense the energy within the abyss. It is still growing stronger. If we do not eliminate the Abyssal Lord soon, she warned, this situation could spiral into a catastrophe beyond our control, Corey decided. Then Captain Pharaoh of the 2nd Squad will handle the rescue. The suppression squad will proceed as scheduled. That will not work, Genting's sharp voice cut in. He reasoned, the current squad does not meet the minimum requirement of 10 Tier 1 awakeners needed to raid an A-class abyss. Even with the commander personally leading them, every single squad-level Tier 1 is essential to take down the Abyssal Lord in the first strike. Seiwei's rage finally exploded. You were the one who forced Facility 12 outside the city. Are you just going to sit there and let them all die? Rhodes, Olaf, the military chief and the Speaker of the Parliament, watched them all. He declared that their top priority was the Abyssal Lord's elimination. The longer they waited, the more the city itself would bleed. With a voice of finality, he announced the suppression squad would proceed as planned. But inside, his thoughts were laced with contempt. That fool Seiwei, refusing to merge with the Olaf family, only to come begging for support now. Corey saw right through Rhodes's noble facade. This wasn't about justice. It was a chance to finally shatter the Zhong family. Even now, he could feel their schemes coiling in the air. Ye's eyes narrowed. I see, he said, his voice cold. None of you ever planned to help. His words seized the attention of every family head. Then, he made a stunning declaration. Fine, I'll go alone. Sometime later, a beast of steel roared through the sky. A heavy-lift transport helicopter, the kind used by militaries to deploy entire troops into the heart of battle. It was heading straight for a pit in the earth. A gaping maw that pulsed with reddish-black lightning. That unholy energy crawled across the ground below. As the helicopter hovered, Ye and Eileen stood before a fortified truck. Eileen's briefing was grim. Every combat unit in the extermination force, including her, had been mobilized for the Abyss suppression. This meant Ye had to lead the rescue mission solo. There would be no backup. The memory of the meeting flashed in Ye's mind. He remembered the cold, final verdict. The Supreme Defense Council had officially rejected his rescue operation. Every member had to join the Abyss suppression team. But he shot back, reminding them he wasn't officially part of the force yet. He was volunteering to save Research Facility 12. And they had no authority to stop him. So, Commander Corey had already risked the Council's fury just to get them airborne, a way to bypass the monsters swarming the ground. And that alone was a monumental help. But Ye wasn't entirely alone. He had a team of volunteers at his back. Guy, driven by fear for his sister's safety, the 2 challengers who once doubted his strength, and Yao, the woman he'd met during the brutal Abyss training. He had warned them this mission was nothing like defending Minghai City. He couldn't even guess what horrors awaited them, but the 2 men just grinned, shouting, Boss, we're with you all the way. Yao simply stated that he'd saved her life, a debt she intended to repay. A metallic voice echoed from the speakers, announcing their approach to the drop zone. All rescue teams were ordered to prepare for deployment. Ye looked at his crew. Thank you for trusting me. He wouldn't say more than that. With a sharp nod, he gave the order, Rescue team, move out. A unified, yes, sir, was his answer. The ramp slammed down, and the truck roared into the desolate landscape. Ye watched their backs in the side mirror until Z's voice cut through his thoughts. He relayed a message from his father. No matter the outcome, his only regret was not being strong enough to save his own daughter. With this act, Ye had now saved them twice. He had appeared in their darkest hour, and the Zhang family would never forget his grace. Ye simply said he knew the feeling of being trapped, praying for a savior that might never come. That's why, if he has the power to help, he knew he would regret it forever if he didn't. This was him staying true to himself. Then, with a slight smile, he told Z to stop calling him benefactor, or people might think he was an old man. I'm not much older than you, he said. Just call me bro. As they drove on, the night sky was choked with thick, black smoke. Colossal flames devoured the cityscape, turning towering buildings into fiery torches. The inferno painted their truck in flickering, hellish light. Ye's gut tightened. The monsters had hit this place just as hard as Minghai. A chilling fear crept in. What if they were too late? Suddenly, a desperate scream pierced the air, coming from beneath a pile of rubble. A single hand clawed through a crevice. Ye and Jay didn't hesitate, rushing towards the sound. They found a man, his body crushed from the waist down. He was weak, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Hang on! Jay yelled, preparing to free him. But Ye's instincts screamed. Danger! Jay, watch out! He roared. In a flash, water erupted from the trapped man, wrapping around Jay's arm like a liquid serpent. A single, malevolent eye opened within the water's core. Jay realized with horror, the monster had been waiting to ambush them. The creature tightened its grip. The trapped man, now waist-deep in the liquid monster, gasped, Kill me, please! The man was nothing but bait. Jay saw his own hand beginning to corrode. In a blur of motion, Ye was there. His blade sliced through the water, allowing Jay to break free. But the water instantly reformed, snatching Jay once more. Ye's eye glowed with power. The monster's identity flashed in his mind. Fluid Goliath juvenile. A body made entirely of liquid. Slashing attacks were utterly useless. Physical attacks won't work, Ye shouted. You have to destroy the crystal core near its shoulder. But from his position, Jay couldn't see any weak spot. Clenching his fist, he poured all his strength into his arm and unleashed a wave of freezing power. A powerful slash followed, and the frozen creature shattered into 1,000 pieces. As the night grew deeper, Jay crouched beside the fallen man. A wave of sadness hit him. He'd just seen this man at last week's briefing, and now his journey had ended like this. Our hero's face was grim as he shared a hard truth. Back at the outpost, food scavenging teams, they never came back with everyone intact. This is the brutal reality of living in an apocalypse. Yao contacted her captain, her voice grim, reporting no signs of other survivors in the vicinity. They had scoured every communication frequency, but only dead silence answered their calls. It made her wonder if they were truly the only ones left. The thought brought tears to Jay's eyes. He then told Ye that the research facility's main structure was built deep underground. The defense systems down there should be powerful enough to fend off the monstrous hordes. He held on to the desperate hope that his sister and the others were safe somewhere below. But without warning, the ground itself exploded, catching them all off guard. They could only watch in horror as several fluid Goliaths clawed their way out from the earth. A look of utter despair washed over Yi's face. He charged headfirst into the fray, flash freezing the creatures one by one. But the corrosive water was already eating away at his gloves. Yao and the others were also under attack. A towering water monster loomed over them. In response, Yao unleashed a torrent of lightning from her staff. The electricity surged into the attacking beast, but to their shock, it barely left a scratch. Just then, a long, crimson, rope-like entity coiled around them, binding them completely. It was a lifeline from our main character. With a powerful tug, he dragged them out of harm's way, saving them from the monster's devastating attack. Meanwhile, Jay was trapped within a wall of water, trembling with hopelessness. He could only cry out his sister's name in despair. Then, like a miracle, he heard a voice calling to him. It asked if he could hear her. A smile broke through his tears as he recognized his sister's voice. Through the comm screen, Dao asked if that was really her. On the other side, his sister saw him on her monitor, surrounded by the terrifying water monsters. 4 figures watched the scene unfold from the safety of the lab. His sister quickly took command, telling them they had to distract the monster first. This is Jay's sister, the brilliant and determined Zhang Yi. Back on the surface, the 4 were now completely cornered. Yi cried out as he was burned by an attack, steam hissing from his skin. In that instant, Jay took off like a shot. "Follow me," he yelled. His sister's voice crackled through the comms. "Quickly, head to the right." She then guided them. "Take a left at the next turn and climb over." The colossal water monster was hot on their heels. Just in time, Yi spotted the entrance. They scrambled inside, slamming the reinforced door shut just as the monster crashed against it. It tried to force its way through, but the barrier held strong. They all gasped for breath, their hearts pounding. Looking up, they saw a screen on the ceiling flicker to life, revealing Zhang Yi's smiling face. Jay was overwhelmed with relief. He truly thought they hadn't made it in time. "I did it," Zhang Yi said, her voice filled with pride. "I've created a crystal, one that can continue to grow." Ye, ever the practical one, apologized for interrupting. "Can someone please explain what in the world is going on?" Zhang Yi apologized, admitting they had gotten carried away in the moment. She explained that when the abyssal invasion began, they had no time to evacuate. The entire facility was instantly surrounded by monsters. The moment the creatures emerged from the abyss, they swarmed the hideout. They have been trying to breach the underground levels ever since. She believed they were all just minions summoned by a greater entity. On the screen, she showed them a captured water monster. Yao was stunned. "You're researching live monsters down there?" Zhang Yi explained that currently, awakeners can only get stronger by using higher-grade monster crystals. But once an awakener's own power surpasses the crystal's level, it becomes a limiter, unable to unleash their full strength. She revealed that fluid Goliaths evolve by devouring each other. They harnessed that very trait to create a revolutionary crystal that grows along with its wielder's own power. Jay's face lit up with pride for his sister's achievement. "Yes," she said with a determined smile. "Because of this, everyone can have a crystal that lets them unleash their true potential. But," she added, her expression turning serious, "there is a downside. Unlike absorbing a high-tier crystal, this method doesn't grant an instantaneous power boost." "Hold on a minute," Ye interjected. He knew this was a massive breakthrough, but he couldn't ignore their reality. He looked at her image on the screen, his voice laced with urgency. "Is there any other way to reach you?" Zhang Yi's reply was firm and heartbreaking. "Forget about us." She pressed a button, bringing up a blueprint of the underground facility. "This place is finished," she declared. "Instead, I will guide you to the internal database, get the research data, and get out of here." Jay couldn't believe his ears. She was telling him to abandon her, to just stand by and watch her die. Zhang Yi insisted that the growth crystal technology was far more important than any of their lives. But Yi refused to accept it. "If you don't have a better plan," he declared, his eyes blazing, "then I'll just have to break in there myself." His fierce determination left her speechless. Finally, she relented, admitting there might be one other option. She told them that every underground level has a rail transport system for supplies. The tunnels are sealed, so for now, they remain intact. "You can use it to evacuate," she explained, "but the central control room was destroyed. The rails have no power." Their mission was clear. They would have to restore the power station on the surface first. Then, they would need to force open the main gate that leads toward Minghai City. But there was a fatal catch. Opening that gate creates an earth-shattering noise, and it will attract every single monster for miles around. And anyone who dared open it would never return. In short, it was a suicide mission. But Ye replied with absolute confidence, declaring they would all stick together as he rushed toward the transport rail. He gave the order, Ji would restore the power, while he handled the gate. Reaching the power station, the men stared at the strange device within. It was a massive tower, pulsing with countless wires. Ji's voice was sharp and focused. "Follow my lead. The moment you see a light, you hit the button next to it. Understood?" He plunged the wires from his fingers into the console, then touched his earpiece. In that instant, he synced with the system, announcing the power would be restored in exactly 600 seconds. "Status report," he demanded. Yi and Yao were already blazing a path to the main entrance. They were closing in on the gate. Yi's voice crackled through the comms, confirming their arrival and promising to be ready long before the power surged back online. Ji warned him that once the power was back, a 30-second timer would begin. That was his only window to open the gate. If he missed that window, the transport car would never make it through. He had to be fast. Meanwhile, the researchers scrambled to pack their equipment. An old researcher urged another to copy the footage from the final critical experiment. Another report came in for Director Zhang Yi. All wounded personnel had been loaded onto the transport car. Through her earpiece, she confirmed her team was also ready to move. Then she gave the final order. "Everyone on board, now! Anything you haven't packed gets left behind." A frantic rush to the car began. As they boarded the train, she did a final head count. "Is everyone here? We're down to the last 10 seconds. Ye's voice boomed over the comms. "The gate is ready." Director Zhang Yi screamed. "The transport car is in position. Go!" Ji unleashed the power. Light exploded across the underground station, illuminating the transport car and the tense faces inside. Director Yi cried out in relief. Power is restored to the station. But one of the wounded soldiers near the window saw something horrifying. He recoiled in shock. The monsters were here. A tide of fluid Goliaths was surging towards them. Hold on tight, Director Yi shouted, slamming the power button. The train lurched forward, leaving the swarming Goliaths behind. The grotesque creatures gave chase. Just as they were about to be overwhelmed, the first gate slid open, and the train shot through. The fluid Goliaths smashed through the gate behind them, the metal corroding and melting from their touch. The researchers watched in horror, screaming to go faster. As the monsters gained on them, Director Yi yelled back, "The engine is already maxed out. This is all we've got." A colossal fluid Goliath began to form, but suddenly, a barrage of gunfire tore into its gelatinous body, causing the researcher to gasp in shock. A heavy machine gun mounted on their car had roared to life, unleashing hell on the monster. Explosions ripped through the air as Zhu stood firmly behind the weapon. To their astonishment, they realized Ji was the one controlling the station's entire defense turret system. A wave of relief washed over them. They thought they were finally safe, until a shrill beep echoed through the car. Director Yi's face went pale. The signal for the next gate wasn't being detected. "What's happening at the gate?" she muttered. The gate was completely stuck. It had malfunctioned at the worst possible moment. If that gate didn't open in time, their entire escape plan was doomed. Yi and Yao stared in disbelief, their hope turning to dust. The gate had failed them. The transport car was already hurtling towards the sealed exit. Z screamed, "The car is coming!" He and the two men leaped onto the roof of the moving vehicle, and he slid inside, his eyes landing on his big sister. Tears of gratitude streamed down his face as he hugged her tightly. "You made it," he cried, but she pushed him away. "Cut it out! The gate still isn't open." Outside, Yao scrambled to the side of the gate, her face grim. "It's the hydraulics," she reported. "They're completely broken." Z's voice was tense. "There's no time. If this fails, we ditch the car and run for it." "No," Director Yi shot back. "This place is swarming with monsters. If we abandon this car, we'll be surrounded and slaughtered in seconds." Her words hung in the air. The transport car was their only path to survival. Just then, Ye stepped forward, his arm transforming into the monstrous giant snake ape form. He jammed his powerful limb into the crack of the gate, gritting his teeth as he tried to force the massive steel doors apart. "Ye says he's going to push the gate open!" Yao yelled. The old researcher gasped in disbelief. "That gate takes 4 10,000-ton hydraulic presses to even budge. There's no way a human can move that," he cried. Ye poured all his strength into the effort, but the gate didn't move an inch. He realized even his giant snake ape arm wasn't enough, so he made a decision. He would become the machine. His entire body began to shift and contort, activating his sticky tongue ability. He shot his tongue forward, using it to pull with unimaginable tension. Then, he activated the venomous spider stinger. He plunged the stinger deep into the ground, anchoring his legs in place. His elastic muscles activated, glowing with power. Then, he unleashed everything he had. With a ferocious roar, he put his entire being into the effort. The system screamed warnings of severe muscle tearing. It immediately began emergency repairs, but Yao could only stare, speechless at the sight. Blood trickled from Ye's mouth, but he ignored the pain, compressing every ounce of his phenomenal strength with his elastic muscles. This was everything. It was all or nothing. A surge of pure frustration and power exploded from him, and the gate began to groan. "It's opening," Yao screamed. "The gate is opening." The researcher's jaw hit the floor. Director Yi stared in disbelief. The insane plan had actually worked. Ye's voice cut through the tension. "Just 3 more minutes," he pleaded. No, even 2 minutes is enough, but destiny had other plans. A grotesque fluid Goliath oozed from the ceiling before crashing down in a horrifying wave. Its sole target was Ye. He cursed his luck. Of all the times. Every ounce of his focus was committed. He couldn't spare a single hand. A voice called out, "Can you hold on?" Ye's eyes widened. Someone was gearing up. It was Director Yi, clad in a combat suit. Without a second thought, she leaped from the train. "Where are you going?" Ma yelled in shock. "Stay out of this," she commanded. "Just get everyone back to safety." And with that, she charged into the chaos. Her mission was clear. Open the final underground floor. She had to lure the master away, to draw its horde. Meanwhile, Yao clashed with the fluid Goliath. Lightning crackled from her hands, electrocuting the beasts. But more swarmed in from all sides, an overwhelming tide of monsters. Ye held his ground as the fluid Goliath began to engulf him. Director Yi's voice came over the comms. "I'm releasing the master. It will draw the horde underground." Her final order was a desperate plea. "Hang on, and open that gate before the train gets here." The creature's grotesque face stared into Ye's. Then, the fluid mass covered his head, intending to drown him. All the while, the transport train sped onward. A man shouted, pointing ahead. The gate was in sight, but a wave of despair washed over him. They weren't going to make it. She checked the controls. "We're already at half speed. We can't slow down any more than this." Panic erupted inside the transport car. The horrifying creature was seeping through the cracks. It had already broken through the train's roof. Z had no choice. He had to accelerate. He slammed the button, blasting the fluid Goliath away. A quick glance out the window. It was gone. A moment of relief. Had they shaken it off? But their hope was shattered. The monster was approaching again, relentless. The lookout on the roof froze in terror. The creature coiled around him and flung him into the darkness. Inside, the monster had finally taken form. The researchers were paralyzed by despair. But from the back, an old researcher watched the scene unfold. His face hardened with resolve. He pressed a hidden switch, revealing a set of combat gear. Z stared, shocked to see him suited up. "The future belongs to the young," he declared. "So we old-timers must burn what little strength we have left." And with that, he sprinted outside the speeding train. Tears welled in Z's eyes as he watched the old man go. "Uncle Day!" The monster immediately turned its attention to the new threat. It moved to block his path, but Uncle Day hit a warning button. A blinding explosion rocked the tunnel. Z could only cry out in anguish. Elsewhere, Yao was desperately fighting back the horde. Ye was still being drowned by the suffocating mass. Watching the chaos, Guy let out a furious curse. Suddenly, a thunderous cracking sound echoed through the tunnel. It was so deafening, they had to cover their ears. "What's happening now?" someone yelled. Her eyes widened at an unbelievable sight. All the monsters. They were retreating, swarming back towards the main building. But their problems weren't over. "The brakes are jammed," the driver yelled. "We can't slow down." "We have to jump," an ally screamed. "Or we'll crash. Jumping at this speed is a death sentence," Z retorted. "Even if we somehow survive, the others won't." All their hopes rested on one person, Ye. With a monstrous roar, he poured every last bit of his strength into the gate. Cries of encouragement erupted from the train. He had sworn he would handle the gate. With a final, explosive effort, the massive doors flew open. He leaped high, and the train roared with cheers. Yao scrambled into the transport car. Z panicked. Yi isn't getting on. But Ye's voice was firm. "Get the others back to the city first." "I will save my sister," he vowed, "no matter the cost." And then, the transport car vanished into the distance. Meanwhile, in the deepest level of the underground lab, Director Yi recorded the scene, her mind racing. All the Goliaths on the surface were being drawn here. To this one, humanoid figure. It had a face with small, glowing red eyes, and the other Goliaths charged madly toward it. The director stared, confused. They're attacking their own archbeast? Water splashed violently in every direction. The smaller Goliaths were being absorbed, merging into the archbeast's body. A shocking realization dawned on Director Yi. These monsters weren't just letting themselves be eaten. The archbeast was using some kind of power to lure them in. A horrific ritual where the Goliath devoured its own kind. They devoured their kin to evolve, to become stronger. Strong enough to challenge their master. One attacked the archbeast, but with a single water slash, its head was severed. "So, this is their way of breaking free," she murmured, but the severed head was already reattaching itself. The archbeast wrapped its limbs around the defiant Goliath and began to merge with it, erupting in a brilliant flash of light. Director Yi shielded her eyes from the blinding radiance. A huge splash echoed through the chamber. Her curiosity taking over, she opened her eyes and saw a perfectly formed, human-shaped body made of water. It was astonishing. It had curly hair, bright blue eyes, and a mouth. Aside from its pearlescent body, it looked almost human. Her heart raced with excitement. This was a brand new evolutionary stage. "A new evolution," she recorded breathlessly. "Documented by me, from Research Facility Number 12. Perhaps one day someone would recover this footage, but for now, with a single press, she made her choice. Small turrets erupted from the ground, locking on. She had to act fast, releasing a specialized mist. Instantly, cracks spiderwebbed across the fluid Goliath's body. The fluid Goliath reeled in confusion. It made a brutal decision, severing its own trapped leg and regenerating a new one in seconds. Then it crushed the turrets underfoot. Director Yi was stunned by its ruthlessness. She activated more turrets, encasing its shoulder in ice, and then the creature spoke. It had already deciphered human energy manipulation. With contempt, it shattered its own frozen arm. Director Yi watched in horror. Her freezing rays were now useless. She slammed the button again, unleashing a full barrage. Beams of energy slammed into the monster's body from all sides. But shockingly, it absorbed the attack whole. Director Yi's blood ran cold. It wasn't just evolving, it was adapting in real time. This new form of Goliath could counter any attack and develop instant immunity. Its terrifying gaze locked onto her, and an arm shot out, stretching towards its prey. Just as its fingers were about to close around her, it paused. A flicker of recognition. This was the woman who had imprisoned it. A chilling thought crossed its mind. What would happen if it devoured a human? A wicked grin spread across its face as it hissed, "I will savor every last piece." A piercing scream tore from Director Yi's throat. Helpless, she could only shut her eyes, bracing for the end. Suddenly, in a blinding flash, the Goliath's grip vanished. The monster reeled back in shock as Ye appeared, saving her at the last possible second. Ye stared down the monstrous being. But when Director Yi saw him, her relief turned to fury. "Are you an idiot?" she yelled. Worry was etched on her face. The creature had only wanted her dead. But now, it would surely kill them both. Ye simply replied that he despises those plans, where one person has to sacrifice themselves for the greater good. He had trained this hard precisely so he would never have to witness that again. Director Yi scoffed. "So you're a cringy idiot after all." "That's enough," the fluid Goliath roared. Ye casually glanced its way. Our hero asked if it was the leader of the monsters. He wondered why it was so small and where the others had gone. Her answer was chilling. It devoured them all. The Goliath's eyes burned with hatred, realizing she was the one in command. It raged that she was the one who locked it away, torturing it day and night. "Even when I begged for mercy, you all just laughed," it shrieked. "Now, it's time for my revenge." Ye's gaze hardened. Ye shot a sideways glance at Director Yi, teasing that her research methods seemed a little intense. She wasn't the least bit embarrassed. In her defense, it possessed a magic core of infinite evolution. Ye just smirked. Our hero turned to the monster, saying they turned his world into a wasteland, so it was only fair they contribute to human science. "Humans deserve only extinction," it shrieked. Its arm shot out like a piston, aimed straight for Ye, who braced for the devastating impact. He was slammed viciously against the wall. The monster then grabbed him, hoisting him high before smashing him into the ceiling, forcing a spray of blood from his lips. Ye was completely caught off guard. Before he could react, the monster was on him, its leg coiled for a powerful kick. The kick connected squarely with his back. The brutal impact sent him crashing to the floor, kicking up a massive cloud of dust. Director Yi cried out his name in fear. The monster stood poised, waiting for the dust to settle, its eyes fixed on the scene. The dust cleared, revealing Ye on one knee. He never imagined something so small could pack such unbelievable destructive power. A system notification appeared. Goliath absorbs the full strength of whatever it devours. Unfazed, Ye activated his skill to analyze its weak point. As long as he had this ability, there was nothing to fear. With newfound resolve, our hero shot forward like an arrow, but the monster was faster, catching him mid-air in a crushing grip. Suddenly, the Cockroach God appeared, warning him that Goliath continuously evolves to adapt to enemy attacks. "You couldn't have told me that a little sooner?" Ye grunted in frustration. The fluid Goliath began to pull, trying to rip him in two. A sadistic grin stretched across its face as Ye started to bleed. He grit his teeth against the searing pain, but even in agony, determination blazed in his eyes. His arm transformed into a vicious blade, and with a mighty swing, he slashed through the monster's flesh. The Goliath recoiled in shock. Ye had activated a new trait, Corrosive Blade. It was an evolution combining his mantis scythe and corrosive mucus skills. Then, his leg began to glow, transformed into the molten blade, an evolution merging the mantis scythe and the molten core. He followed with a devastating kick that sent the monster reeling. It retaliated with a furious strike, but Ye was ready to meet it head-on. Their fists met in a cataclysmic explosion of force. The shockwave made Director Yi cry out. At that moment, Ye activated the Stinger Carapace. This new power meant his venom spider tail now injected paralytic poison on contact. The potent venom began crawling up the monster's arm. With the poison taking effect, Ye forced it back. Director Yi stared in disbelief. He claimed to be a shapeshifter, but right now, he looked more like a monster than his opponent. He summoned his molten blade once more. Rearing back, he prepared to deliver the final blow, unleashing a torrent of searing flames. But to his utter shock, the attack did absolutely nothing. The monster cackled maniacally and told him that he was out of time. Ye realized with dawning horror that its evolution speed was insane. After just a few hits, it had already developed complete resistance to his molten blade. Suddenly, 3 arrows thudded into the monster's back. It whipped its head around to see Director Yi, bow in hand, telling Ye that she's got his back. Ye froze in shock. The monster's hand shot out, aiming to snatch her from the air. She vaulted high, narrowly dodging its grasp. Another arrow flew true, but the creature simply devoured the attack. A wave of fury distorted its face, but it was caught completely off guard as Ye's blade sliced deep into its hand, The monster roared in agony. Director Yi saw it then, attacking with different powers at once. That was the key. The beast sneered, mocking them for clinging to stolen divine power, calling it their ultimate weakness. The director cursed under her breath. She knew what was coming next. The fluid Goliath's most terrifying ability. A synchronized harmonic wave that pulsed outwards. Any magic crystal caught in its path would be covered in a dampening field, completely sealing off its energy. "Now's our chance," she screamed. "We only get one shot." Without hesitation, Ye loosed her arrow, and it pierced straight through the monster. She watched its reaction, holding her breath. The creature countered, unleashing a devastating sonic wave. They braced for the impact. At first, nothing happened. But then, the light on her bow flickered and died. A wicked laugh echoed through the chamber. "Without your precious crystal," it taunted, "you're just an insect to be crushed." Ye collapsed to her knees, despair washing over her. She was too slow. She felt a rising dread. Its power was a perfect counter to the awakened. There was nothing they could do to stop it. The monster savored the look of pure despair etched on her face. It loomed over her, whispering that it would slowly absorb her life force, that it wanted to hear her scream. But suddenly, a fist crashed into its cheek. The sheer force of the blow sent the monster flying across the room. It slammed into the far wall, stunned in disbelief. Yi glared, his eyes burning with cold fury. The monster wondered how he was completely unharmed. Even Director Yi stared in utter shock. The thought struck her like lightning. Could he use abilities without a core? The monster rose to its feet, spitting curses. It couldn't comprehend how Yi's power still flowed. Its arms swelled with grotesque muscle as it bellowed, "You're all alone. There's nothing you can do." It would show them the true meaning of despair, and prove that all their efforts were utterly useless. A slow grin spread across Yi's face. "Thanks for the reminder," he said calmly. "Fatty!" he called out. A blinding light erupted. A massive foot slammed down, revealing a colossal, menacing creature. Director Yi's eyes went wide. Did he just summon a boss-level monster? The massive beast then knelt before Yi on one knee. It was huge, covered in black spikes and armor. The fluid Goliath recognized him instantly. "Bloom?" it shrieked. "What are you doing here?" So, that's his name, Yi thought. The horned warlord from the hidden realm. He wondered if these two had some kind of history. Fatty answered with a burning glare. He raised a massive fist as hellfire began to swirl around it. The punch flew like a meteor. The Goliath barely blocked it, roaring in fury. "You've betrayed us. You've become a dog for these pathetic humans." The two titans stood face to face. Then Fatty summoned his weapon. The Goliath countered, summoning its own blade. Steel screamed against steel. She had never seen a creature like this, and it was overpowering an evolved Goliath. The question burned in her mind. Just who was Yi? In her mind, she wondered if he was even human. How could a monster of that caliber be so obedient to one man? The battle raged on. Shockwaves from their titanic blows sent debris flying in every direction. The battlefield was a storm of destruction. A stray piece of shrapnel flew towards them, but Yi casually swatted it away. "Are you all right, Director?" Director Yi was giving him a strange, unnerving look. "Why are you staring at me like that?" he asked, feeling a shiver down his spine. "After this is over, I'm dissecting you," she said, before correcting herself. "I mean, I'm going to conduct a full medical checkup." Yi felt a cold sweat. She was a true researcher, down to the bone. His secrets were completely exposed, and he was utterly speechless. He scrambled for an excuse, but she cut him off. "Don't bother trying to lie," she said. "Your secret is safe with me." "Now hurry up and take down that Goliath," she commanded. "I'll find somewhere safe to hide." The two behemoths were locked in a stalemate, a contest of pure strength. But the fluid Goliath had heard her words. "Hurry up and take me down?" The sheer arrogance. It felt like they were completely underestimating it. "Even if you both attack together," it sneered, "as long as I can shift my resistances, none of your attacks will ever land." Fatty grunted. "He won't break. This is strange." But Yi just grinned. "That's because I have more than just one trait." He crouched, low, and elemental tentacles tipped with blades erupted from his back. His very arm morphed into a razor-sharp sword. He now held the deadly poison trait from the thunder spider's venom, the fire and lightning from the horned beast's spike, and the corrosive acid of the swamp toad's mucus. His body was an arsenal of countless stolen traits. The fluid Goliath recoiled in absolute terror. How could a mere human wield such impossible power? As Fatty lunged for its head, flaming spikes erupted from the ground below. With the beast restrained, Ye unleashed his assault. A storm of blades descended upon it. A deafening explosion rocked the battlefield. The fluid Goliath roared in agony as a blinding light consumed everything. Director Yi screamed for Ye to be careful. Thick smoke blanketed the area, forcing them to wait for it to clear. When the smoke subsided, Director Yi's eyes widened in horror. Blood dripped from a massive wound. Yi had been stabbed through the torso. The monster gloated, claiming that as long as Ye fell, victory was certain. But in the next instant, its head went flying. Ye's bladed arms had sliced clean through its neck. He revealed his trump card. He too possessed the cockroach trait, making him immortal and indestructible. The monster's head crashed to the ground. It screamed curses at him, refusing to accept such a humiliating end. Yi stood over the creature, a figure of absolute power. Director Yi watched from afar, her mind racing. There was something profoundly strange about this man. Though, perhaps she was the strange one here. A moment later, Fatty rushed forward, joyfully greeting his big bro. He went in for a hug, but Ye simply pushed him aside. Instead, Ye reached down and grabbed the monster's severed head. The system chimed in. The fluid Goliath had developed countless traits during its evolution, making it impossible to predict which powers he might absorb. Yi tore off a piece of the crystal core. If he could just get the ability to disable magic, he would be truly unstoppable. He swallowed the fragment. And to his shock, parts of his body began to freeze solid. A critical warning flashed across the system screen. The alert blared relentlessly as the frost spread across his skin. The ice crept up to his eyes. And in a final, chilling moment, it consumed his entire body. The day after the rescue mission, within a private room of the Zhang estate, Ye lay on a medical table, surrounded by Director Yi, Z, and Eileen. He was completely unconscious, his body encased in a layer of frost. Eileen asked desperately what had happened to him. Director Yi reported that his vital signs were stable, so he should wake up soon. But she had something far more urgent to discuss. She made a shocking declaration. Yi was not human. He looked, talked, and thought like them, but his very DNA was alien to their world. She theorized that his human appearance was nothing more than a disguise, a way to blend into their society. Eileen's expression hardened. Stirred by the noise, Ye's consciousness began to return. He groggily wondered where he was and what was happening. The Cockroach God appeared in his mind, explaining that when he absorbed the Goliath's core, the conflicting traits inside had caused his body to reject the power. It was a rare phenomenon, but the side effects should fade soon. Eileen watched his every move, her gaze filled with worry. Director Yi informed him they had detected dozens of monster traits in his system, including those of the evolved Goliath. She continued grimly, stating that if he gained the power to nullify magic cores, he would become a grave threat to all of humanity. Before he fully recovered, she said, "This might be their only chance." Eileen demanded to know what she was implying. "Are you planning to lock him away?" she asked, biting her lip in frustration. "No," Director Yi replied coldly. "He's more dangerous than the Goliath ever was. The only logical solution is to eliminate the threat, permanently." Eileen and Z stared in disbelief. Fatty immediately stepped forward, declaring he would never allow it. He stood firm, telling his own sister that she would not lay a single hand on his big bro. Director Yi reminded him that Ye had saved their family multiple times. That was the only reason she had brought just the two of them here. If this information leaked, he'd be hunted by the entire world. "I won't let that happen," Eileen shot back. She argued that Ye had done nothing but fight monsters since his arrival. She believed with all her heart that he was on their side. Z agreed. He added that even if his big bro was a monster, he could be a good monster. The comment earned him a sharp, unified scream from both women to shut up. Listening to their debate, Ye finally understood. They were deciding his fate, whether he should live or die. Director Yi challenged them, asking how they could be sure his helpfulness wasn't all just an act. She reminded them of the fluid Goliath. They thought it was harmless at first, too. But after it evolved, it summoned its kin and destroyed their base. The very children who had raised it were slaughtered. Even though it was nurtured by humans, it wiped out the second largest stronghold near Narumi City. She concluded that if they let Ye live and he turned against them, tens of thousands of lives would be lost because of their hesitation today. "He is a monster," she insisted, her voice heavy with conviction. Eileen's mind flashed back to all the times they had faced danger together. Every single time, Ye had placed his trust in her. He even volunteered for a dangerous rescue mission. Those were not the actions of an enemy, Eileen was certain of it. "Then do it," she challenged her sister, staring her down. Director Yi's gaze faltered, dropping to the console below. With trembling resolve, she pressed the button. Above Ye, a machine armed with a massive needle whirred to life and began to charge. A chilling memory resurfaced. Ye, walking willingly toward certain death to open that gate. He had even smiled. He had saved her life. But the image of the liquid, Goliath, its innocent form hiding a monstrous core, twisted her thoughts. Ye wasn't human. Even after saving her, that one fact remained. Could she truly place her trust in him? As if sensing her turmoil, the machine flared to life. Her hand trembled, the remote feeling heavy with the weight of a life. Eileen's voice cut through the tension. "He helped us defeat Tony in the tournament. He held the wall alone when those monsters surrounded us. And when everyone else said no, he was the one who went into that lab to rescue you. Eileen looked at her, understanding in her eyes. I know you're afraid he'll become our enemy one day. But without him, she whispered, you wouldn't even be alive to have these doubts. Eileen pressed on. The director I know never wavers once her mind is made up. If you truly wanted him dead, you would have done it without a word. Just admit it. Deep down, you don't want to kill him either. Please, she begged, don't do it. Director Yi stared at the remote, her decision hanging in the balance. Then, she tossed it aside. The machine whined to a halt. Zhao sighed in relief. Eileen finally let out the breath she'd been holding. A calm voice broke the silence. Thank you. Ye stood before them. Thank you for choosing to trust me. Eileen stammered. When? When did you wake up? He replied, the moment you started arguing. Shards of ice fell from his body, revealing he was completely bare. His gaze found Director Yi, but she couldn't bring herself to meet his eyes. I can't explain everything right now, he said, his voice a solemn vow. But please, believe in me. I promise I will never betray your trust. Remember, Eileen said, her voice low. No one can know what's hidden in Ye's body. From this day forward, all four of us are accomplices. Just then, her phone shrieked. A frantic voice on the other end. Something terrible had happened. They were summoned to Narumi City Hospital at once. The four of them burst into the lobby and froze at the scene of pure chaos. Gravely injured people were strewn across the floor. A wounded man clutched his comrade. Just hold on! I'll find someone to change your dressing, I promise! The man cried out in frustration. Is there no one here to take care of us? Eileen's blood ran cold. The heroes of the slaughter squad, wounded and abandoned in the lobby. Her voice was a low growl. Where are the medics? A man emerged from a room, yelling for a medic. He had only a minor scratch, yet whined. It's still bleeding. It hurts like hell. A nurse immediately rushed to his side, promising to treat him right away. The nurse politely told him to lie down, but the man answered with sheer arrogance. Inside the room, 4 other men were idly playing cards. The horrifying truth dawned on Ye. All the medics were tending to the military, while the slaughter squad members were left to bleed out. A voice called out, Vice Captain Eileen and Director Zhang. Ye's head snapped towards the sound. A military officer was grabbing a squad member by the collar. A warrior who had already lost both of his arms and a leg. Who said you could use these supplies? The soldier snarled. All medical equipment is under military jurisdiction, and its distribution is managed by the city defense forces. The blatant injustice sent a wave of uncontrollable fury through Ye, veins bulging on his neck. Director Yi's voice boomed. Those supplies were provided by the Zhang family to support the extermination squad. The soldier just sneered. I don't care where they came from. Now that they're here, the city defense forces have the right to requisition them. He began seizing everything. The injured warrior let out a curse. He bit down on his own bandage, ripping it off in defiance. Then, he pointed a knife at the soldiers, his eyes blazing, ready to fight to his last breath. You dare! The military man roared. Before he could move, a shadow blurred past him. Ye appeared in a flash and threw a single, devastating punch. The soldier slammed into the wall with bone-shattering force, spitting up blood. The other soldier, holding a box of supplies, froze in pure shock. Ye calmly stepped forward, took the box from his hands, and gave it back to the wounded man. You're trying to rebel, the bruised soldier choked out. Ye shot back with a cold smirk. I'm not even in the extermination squad. I'm just a passerby who didn't like your face. A massive, snake-like arm shot out towards him. But in a flash, another hand caught Ye's arm. Ye was stunned. It was a colossal soldier from the military, Major General Tabet of the City Defense Forces. With horrifying strength, he snapped Ye's arm. The system alert screamed in Ye's mind. Comminuted fracture detected. Without a moment's pause, Major General Tabet grabbed Ye by the throat and slammed him to the ground. Eileen rushed forward, but Director Yi blocked her path. Don't move, she warned, her eyes wide with a terrible realization. This is a trap. If any of them retaliated, the entire situation would detonate. Major General Tabet's voice echoed with authority. Assaulting an on-duty soldier in a military-controlled zone is insurrection. By my authority, Ye is under arrest. Ye clenched his teeth, enduring the agonizing pain. Meanwhile, within the walls of the Narumi City Highest Defense Council, a new game was afoot. A grim report echoed through the command center. 2/3 of the city's developed districts were in ruins. Casualties among the extermination squads had surpassed a devastating 50%. A fist crashed down on the table, silencing the report. It was Rhodes. He snarled that they already knew the numbers and wouldn't waste another second on it. The Abyss crisis was finally over. Therefore, he demanded the selection tournament resume immediately. An icy silence fell across the monitors. Rhodes saw his chance. With the squads weakened, he could embed his own city defense personnel within their ranks, seizing control from the inside out. Commander Corey's expression turned to stone. Rhodes gave the order, round 2 would begin tomorrow. Haley stared in disbelief. She shot to her feet, protesting that contestants were still gravely injured. She pointed out that not one of the military representatives had even seen the front lines. How could he make such a decision? Rhodes answered with a glare that could freeze hell over. Corey placed a hand on her arm. She tried to argue again, but he cut her off with a sharp command to stand down. With no one else daring to object, Rhodes declared the city defense forces would now oversee the tournament. Major General Tabet would act as the examiner for the second round. At that very moment, Tabet was broadcasting a message to all of Narumi City, speaking of his humiliated pupil Tony, and he knew exactly who was to blame. Yi was dragged into the cold depths of a military prison and strung up by his feet. 2 other captured contestants hung helplessly beside him. He remained silent, his eyes fixed on Tabet with a chilling calm. The Major General sneered, telling his men he never wanted to see these faces in the tournament again. But Ye noticed something, a chilling pattern. Every single person brought here had no connection to the 4 great families. The other contestants trembled as soldiers armed with Morgensterns approached, their faces twisted into sadistic grins. To draw their fire, Ye finally spoke. Every head snapped in his direction. He mocked them openly, daring them to untie him. He claimed he could destroy every last one of them on his own. Thanks to his undying trait, Yi could recover from any wound. But the others, they could easily be beaten to death. His arrogance ignited their fury. They decided he would be first. Cutting him down, a fist buried itself in Ye's gut, sending a spray of blood from his lips. Another soldier smashed a Morgenstern across his head. The merciless beating began, a brutal symphony of blood and breaking bone. After a long moment, a soldier yanked Yi up by his hair, laughing. He was amused the boy still had a fearless look in his eyes. The voice of the Cockroach God echoed in Ye's mind, telling him to let them continue. It reminded him that residual crystallization still flowed in his veins. He could use this pain to stabilize his power. So Ye taunted them again, even harder. They took the bait. Fists rained down on him from all sides. The other contestants could only watch in absolute horror. They couldn't understand it. Why was this man risking his life for total strangers? All they could do was pray he would survive, as Ye continued to provoke his torturers. Blood gushed from his mouth, splattering across a guard's face. For a second, the guard faltered, a flicker of fear in his eyes. What if they actually killed him? Yi lowered his head, putting on a show. An exaggerated look of fear, as if he'd just realized he pushed them too far. He then mocked their hesitation, goading them one last time. They fell for it completely. But suddenly, the entire wall was sliced apart. The shriek of tearing metal froze everyone in the room. As the wall crumbled, 3 figures emerged from the dust. It was Commander Corey, flanked by Haley and Eileen. The soldiers stared, utterly stunned to see the legendary commander himself. Eileen immediately demanded the prisoners be released. Just then, a slow, mocking clap echoed from the shadows. It was Major General Tabet. He praised Commander Corey, the so-called strongest awakener, for shattering the prison's 36-layer alloy gate with a single, effortless strike. Tabet mused that everyone always accused his city defense forces of being arrogant and overbearing. But from where he stood, the famous extermination squad didn't seem much different. He declared the prisoners had assaulted soldiers and shown clear signs of sedition. Their arrest was perfectly legal and justified. He then asked if the commander had come demanding an explanation. Commander Corey simply stared back, his gaze as cold as the void. Tabet casually slung an arm over Corey's shoulder, declaring the interrogation officially over. It was all just a simple misunderstanding, he said. As a show of goodwill, the commander was free to take his people and leave. Eileen and Haley remained on high alert. Tabet turned away, but then stopped. He announced that he would personally be the examiner for the next round. He smirked, saying he had memorized every one of their faces. He would be waiting for them tomorrow, especially for Ye. Later that night, at the city's Internal Research Institute, following the confrontation, all the wounded squad members were moved to temporary wards there. Eileen was busy organizing the medical supplies. She told a subordinate to stack the extra medicine that couldn't fit, but in that moment, she felt a sudden sense of unease. She turned and saw Ye's bed was empty. Another patient told her he saw Ye heading for the rooftop just a moment ago. A heavy fist crashed into a punching bag. It was Ye, channeling all his fury into his training. Eileen watched from the shadows, her expression unreadable. With every brutal punch, Ye's fury erupted, not at the training dummy, but at the world itself. He raged about how the extermination squad, humanity's last hope, was treated like the enemy. We risk our lives to protect this city, he roared, only to be cast aside like trash. He revealed the Goliath research held the key to helping awakeners shatter their limits and grow stronger. Yet the city's corrupt leaders would rather let monsters overrun the institute than see that power in their hands. His anger then shifted to the selection tournament. It was meant to be a beacon of hope, to find warriors strong enough to rebuild their ranks and reclaim what was lost. But instead, it had become a playground for the great families. As his rage peaked, a gentle hand suddenly stopped his fist. Ye's furious gaze turned towards her. The fire in his eyes softened, replaced by a flash of concern. Eileen then closed the distance and planted a soft kiss on his cheek. In an instant, his face went crimson. He staggered back, his mind completely blank. He couldn't believe what just happened. Feeling calmer now? She asked with a small smile. He could only nod, his one weakness suddenly exposed. She then invited him for a drink. Okay, was all he could manage. Ye quickly pulled on his shirt and followed her to a tavern known as Whiskey Bar. The place was simple, quiet. But Ye's cheeks were still on fire, his mind replaying that single breathtaking moment. Could it be she actually liked him? When he imagined her inviting him to her place later, his face burned an even deeper shade of red. In his fantasy, he had already decided to say yes. Suddenly, a smack to his head shattered the daydream. A blushing Eileen snapped at him. Were you even listening to me? He quickly insisted he had heard every word. Then do exactly as I say, she warned, her tone serious. Tomorrow, you need to withdraw from the tournament. Still lost in a daze, he nodded and agreed. But when her words finally sank in, he froze. Withdraw? But why? Eileen sighed, realizing he'd heard nothing. She explained the military's deep-seated ambition to be the only armed force in Narumi. This time they've installed their own examiner, she revealed. And their plan is brutally simple. They're going to torture you, and anyone else trying to join us, until you're too broken to ever compete again. Their real goal is to swallow our squad whole. Ye's eyes hardened. That's exactly why I can't back down. In frustration, Eileen slammed her drink on the table. Annoyance flashed in her eyes. Don't you get it, Ye? The extermination squad has no chance. If we don't resist, the military will just slowly devour us on their terms. But the moment we fight back, they'll label us traitors and wipe us out completely. Ye fell into a heavy silence. As the night deepened, only the two of them remained. Eileen rested her head on the table, half asleep, her voice a soft mumble. You have real strength now, she whispered. You should leave this place. Live a better life for yourself. Ye just watched her, the thought of leaving Narumi echoing in his mind. He took a sip of his drink, startled by its bitterness. A deep voice cut through the quiet. First time trying it? Ye looked up, and his blood ran cold. It was Chief Commander Corey. Eileen mumbled that back at the post, only the leaders ever got to drink something like that. The bartender took the commander's order, who simply requested his usual bottle. Ye met the commander's gaze. Sir, do you think our squad still has hope? Instead of a direct answer, Commander Corey asked, how does life in Narumi feel to you? Ye replied that it felt nostalgic, like a memory of the world before it all ended. That, the commander said, his voice firm, is why the extermination squad exists, to bring that feeling back to everyone. And until that ideal becomes reality, there will always be people who believe in it and are willing to stand and fight for it. He then asked the ultimate question. Are you one of those people, Ye? Without hesitation, Ye answered, yes. A smile touched the commander's lips as his drink arrived. Put it on their tab, he told the bartender, then walked away. Ye muttered that the old man had only shown up to freeload. Commander Corey just laughed. I'm looking forward to your performance tomorrow, he called out. The next day, the air inside the stadium crackled with energy. A host bellowed to the brave citizens of Narumi, announcing that under the leadership of the great speaker Raz Olaf, they had once again triumphed over the monsters at their gates. And in that moment of celebration, the long-awaited selection tournament was officially declared open. The crowd erupted into a deafening roar. The host introduced the examiner for round 2. And as Eileen had predicted, it was none other than the infamous Tabet. Before the introduction was even finished, Tabet sent the host flying off the stage with a single, brutal kick. The crowd gasped in shock. Everyone recognized that monster. I'm a soldier, Tabet snarled, his voice dripping with contempt. I have no time for pointless chatter. The rules are simple. Last 3 minutes on this field with me, and you pass. His cold eyes scanned the challengers. So, who has the guts to go first? Step up. We cut to our main character, seated beside Yao, whose face was pale with shock. You know that guy? Ye asked. Yao's voice trembled. He was our class instructor. In his first year, he killed 100 Abyss Lords, a record no one has ever broken. Down on the field, the host announced the official start of the second round. The first challenger charged in, hammer raised, but he was hopelessly outmatched. Tabet met him with a single, devastating knee. The man's body was sent flying into the wall. Tabet calmly added that he had forgotten to mention something. In this round, there were no limits. He told anyone afraid of death to withdraw now. A chill ran through the crowd. Murmurs of fear spread as they grasped the test's brutality. They thought this was a simple showcase of skill. They'd never witnessed an examiner fight with true killing intent. The next contestant's name was called. Everyone was stunned as the man immediately turned and fled. He had barely survived the previous day's ordeal. The arena was huge, so his plan was to run and survive for 3 minutes. But in an instant, Tabit erased the distance between them. Appearing behind him like a phantom, he slammed the man into the ground. Ye was shocked. For a man of his size, Tabit's speed was monstrous. He had crossed 10 strides in the blink of an eye. With no terrain to use, Ye knew running or dodging was a death sentence. The next contestant stepped into the ring. The man's arms were mechanical, and he threw a heavy punch toward Tabit. The host shouted with excitement that someone had finally landed a hit, but Tabit didn't even budge. A smirk played on his lips, as expected of a Zhang family candidate. Seconds later, the attacker let out a piercing scream. His entire arm had shattered. He stared in confusion, with no idea what had just transpired. Yao explained Tabat's terrifying ability. Any damage dealt to his body is perfectly reflected back at the attacker. Ye finally understood the cause of his previous injury. But if they couldn't hurt him or outrun him, what were they supposed to do? The next challenger entered the field. He gave a sharp salute to the Major General. Tabit glanced at him. Then, he announced that the man had passed. The entire arena went dead silent. Ye and Yao's faces darkened. Someone in the crowd roared that it was blatant favoritism. The man next to him quickly covered his mouth, whispering, "Do you want to die?" The military's top brass was watching from their seats. As several officers glared in his direction, the man began to pretend to clap. Soon, the arena was filled with forced, thunderous applause. Ye gritted his teeth in fury as the fallen participants were carried away. On one side, every candidate hoping to join the extermination squad was systematically broken. One after another, they were dragged away with critical injuries. On the other side, the military's own candidates stood relaxed and unharmed. A thick sense of dread filled the remaining extermination squad candidates. Just then, a figure stepped forward, announcing this was their final chance. It was Rhodes. He asked which of them still wished to join the city defense forces. They were completely cornered. For one man, there was no other choice. He fell to his knees and kissed Rhodes' boot in submission, earning a pleased smirk. The soldiers laughed, mocking him for wagging his tail like a dog. Another contestant yelled for them to stop. That was his final mistake. Rhodes shot him a glare that could freeze fire. In the next instant, blood splattered across the ground. Tabit walked away, leaving the man a broken, bleeding mess. Soon after, contestant number 21 was called to the field. It was Yao. The soldiers stared as she walked forward. One whispered to his companion, "Is that really her?" They branded her a traitor. Before she entered, Ye quietly warned her to be careful. He told her if it gets to be too much, she shouldn't force herself. But surrender was not an option for her. Tabit looked amused to see her. He never imagined she'd have the nerve to face him. Yao's grip tightened around her weapon. The host announced the start of the match, and the timer began its countdown. She immediately activated her skill. Skyveil, Wrath of Thunder. Even she was stunned by how quickly she cast it. Ye realized in that moment she had been charging her power since she first stepped into the arena. The host was thrilled by this explosive opening move. Everyone wondered how she would counter Tabit's damage reflection, but to their utter shock, she was completely unharmed. Tabit, however, understood instantly. His ability would only activate if an attack made direct contact with his body. Tabit finally began to move. The host wondered if Yao could possibly unleash another strike of that magnitude. But an attack like that alone would never be enough to stop Tabit. It seemed like she had no moves left. Then, Tabit suddenly froze in his tracks. Electricity surged up from the blood beneath his feet. His body locked up as paralysis spread through him. Yao knew he would assume she was charging another thunder strike, and that was exactly what she had wanted him to think. The ground was soaked in the blood of the contestants Tabit had crushed just moments before. She had infused the pools of blood with latent lightning as a hidden trap. This was her true follow-up attack. No one expected such a brilliant, layered strategy. Even Tabit could feel the immense power of the paralysis, but Yao didn't need to defeat him. She only had to survive for 2 more minutes. Yao and Tabit stared each other down from a distance. Faint blue energy coiled around Yao, while Tabit stood rooted to the cracked earth, red power pulsing beneath him. A field of blood separated them. The announcer declared it. Yao's strategy was a success. Examiner Tabit was completely trapped, thrashing against his bonds. Yao's voice cut through the air. This victory was forged from the suffering of every soul he had ever tortured. Their spilled blood, fused with her lightning, had created this very cage. She warned that not even a captain's strength could break free so easily. Her confidence was absolute. Even if he somehow shattered his restraints, she was more than ready for round 2. Tibet spoke, his voice dangerously calm. There was something he had always wanted to ask her, face to face. She was a rising star in the elite squad, her future brighter than anyone's. So why did she choose betrayal? He demanded an answer, but words were a waste of time, a delay that only served her. So instead, she would make him remember. Her mind flashed back to a day seared into her memory, back at the recruit training grounds. She'd told the other trainees to stop wasting time and face her all at once. Their pride wounded by her words, the men had charged as one. But one of them stopped dead in his tracks. A foot had flashed before his face, belonging to a woman with fiery red hair. It was Shen Kei, Yao's closest friend. Yao's eyes widened as Kei dove into the fight, leaping forward without hesitation. She flew towards another trainee, her fist connecting with a brutal crunch. The last man standing panicked as his comrade collapsed before him. Yao glared at him, teased, and sent him flying with a single blow. Blood stained the ground. All three were down. Exhaustion finally washed over her. A hand reached out to her. It was Kei. Just one assessment left, she said. We have to advance. Together, Kei smiled warmly. Yao took her hand, a silent promise. Rain poured on the day of the final test as they stood in the center of the arena. Yao's heart sank. For the final trial to enter the elite squad, they had been pitted against each other. Tabet watched them with cold, calculating eyes, then announced the start. In an instant, they charged. Lightning clashed against lightning in a brilliant storm. Their power was perfectly balanced. But then, Kei suddenly grabbed Yao's shoulder. She shoved her down with blinding speed. Yao realized it too late. Kei was faster. In that moment, she knew she was about to lose. Yao braced for the final impact, but nothing happened. The pain never came. She cautiously opened her eyes, and she froze. The red-haired woman was kneeling on the ground before her. She had admitted defeat. She had thrown the match on purpose, just for Yao. From afar, Tabet's expression turned grim. He strode forward, tossing a single gun onto the ground between them. Both women stared, confused. I forgot, he began, to mention one final rule. The true condition to pass this match was to kill your opponent. The loser would never get another chance. Yao couldn't process his words. Behind them, another candidate cried out, refusing to follow the order. Two of them dropped their weapons, surrendering and begging to be let go. In response, they were executed on the spot. Another pleaded for his life, only to be silenced by a bullet to the head. Dread and absolute terror flooded Yao's senses. She stared at the corpses, her entire body trembling. Kei screamed at Tabet, demanding to know why he was doing this. They were still warriors who had fought to get here. Tabet's reply was as cold as death itself. You either obey orders, or you die. Yao knew she could never ever harm Kei. The soldiers closed in, and a final countdown began. Then, a hand reached down and picked up the gun. Yao's blood ran cold. It was Kei. She looked at Yao, her smile still so gentle. Betrayal stabbed at Yao's heart, but she accepted it. She thought this was for the best. Kei deserved to live, and Yao knew in her soul that she could never bring herself to pull that trigger. But then, Kei raised the gun and pointed it at her own head. Live on, Yao, she whispered. Yao watched in horror as she pulled the trigger. Blood splattered across her face, their promise shattered forever. Tabet simply let out a disappointed sigh. He said it was a shame that Yao was the one left standing. The memory faded, and back in the present, a storm of grief and fury erupted from within her. You, she screamed. You destroyed the most precious person in my life. His cruel rule made him more depraved than any monster, and now, she would deliver her revenge with her own two hands. Blue energy began to swirl around Yao. Lightning crackled across her body as her grip on her weapon tightened. Her eyes burned with an inferno of hatred. Locked onto Tabet, she raised her weapon high. Blue lightning surged up her arm, power exploding outward. The sheer force of the energy began to crack her very skin. Lightning ripped through her flesh as raw power erupted around her. She stood at the center of the storm, her arm a beacon of radiating blue light. Energy roared like a tempest as she unleashed it all. Soul Beast Resonance. Her face twisted in pure fury. Blue lightning wrapped around her like armor, her eyes glowing white as she bared her teeth, completely consumed by power. A massive wave of azure energy tore across the entire stadium. A torrent of lightning, cloaked in a crimson aura, ripped through the air. Yet Tabet stood unfazed, his expression an unreadable mask. Scarlet energy coiled around him, meeting the attack with zero fear. Suddenly, a sphere of blinding blue light crashed into the arena. The explosion of pure lightning ripped across the field, scattering blood in its wake. From the heart of the storm, a dragon of azure lightning materialized. It roared, surging forward as the announcer cried out in shock. Soul Beast Resonance! This is the ultimate technique, where a mighty awakener unleashes a monster's full power through their weapon. Their very body takes on the beast's traits, a true sign of absolute mastery. From the sidelines, Yi watched, his eyes wide with awe. Meanwhile, in the VIP section, Eileen approached Commander Corey. She was stunned. Yao's staff was forged from the remains of Kulan, the Thunder Serpent, the Lord-class beast of a B-rank abyss. Commander Corey revealed that Yao had achieved full resonance. Her crystal and weapon were in perfect harmony. He admitted that even he couldn't take that attack head-on unscathed. If it connects, Tabet will not escape unharmed. The divine beast gathered energy in its jaws and fired it directly at Tabet. For the first time, Tabet's eyes widened in shock. His pupils shook as that overwhelming power surged towards him. Then, a blinding flash of light consumed everything. A faint silhouette was all that remained, as a razor-sharp beam of blue energy tore through the smoke. The sphere of power expanded. The arena floor shattered. Debris was launched into the air beneath that crushing azure glow. The announcer leaned forward, screaming into the mic. He realized Tabet was completely trapped, with no room to escape. Soldiers stared up in panic, their faces pale under the flashing lightning. One screamed in terror, but Yi and Jay cheered for Yao's victory. Yao prayed Shenkai could see this. She had finally gotten her revenge. The battlefield was left a smoldering, shattered wreck. Yao stood in the center, the crowd watching in stunned silence. But then, a loud, mocking laugh echoed through the stadium. It was Tabet. Everyone froze. How was this possible? Suddenly, the crowd screamed in terror, warning Yao to look behind her. Tabet was already upon her. It seems your training has been lacking. He had shattered the lightning that bound him moments ago. Then, he had leapt away, leaving behind a mere illusion to take the devastating blow. He mocked her, saying it was easy to bait out her trump card. Realizing the trap, Yao instantly leapt back. The announcer roared. Tabet had turned the tables in a single moment, but Yao's reflexes were lightning fast, her speed skyrocketing. Only 5 seconds left on the clock. Could she possibly survive until the end? For 5 seconds, Yao thought she could escape him. But she was wrong. A brutal kick caught her midair, and she coughed up blood. Tabet was simply faster. Now, he loomed over her, fist clenched as crimson energy poured from his body. Yao lay broken on the ground, gasping in pain, barely conscious. Without mercy, he seized her by the neck. Scarlet energy crackled around his arm. Her face twisted in pure agony as her breath was cut short. He lifted her high into the air by her throat, his crimson aura flaring violently. He had not only countered her attack, he'd turned her own power against her. As her consciousness finally faded, he let go, dropping her to the ground like a broken doll. She was only 1 second away from victory. And in that moment, everyone understood the horrifying truth. It wasn't just about close-range combat. Tabet could even reflect long-range elemental attacks. His ability was a terrifying, all-encompassing counter. The question hung in the air. Could anyone possibly defeat this monster? Tabet raised his foot, his voice booming for all to hear the fate of a traitor. The crowd froze. Faces went pale as the match turned deadly. His voice dripped with venom. Worthless failures. Deserve only death. To this. But his foot was stopped, dead in its tracks, by Yi. Tabet was stunned. Yi trembled, not from fear but from pure rage, his teeth clenched. Guy and Tony could only stare, their jaws agape. He hadn't even sensed the boy step onto the field. That kick should have shattered his arm completely. Yi's voice was ice. Your match is over. He shoved Tabet back, declaring, Your next opponent is me. As Yao was rushed away on a stretcher, the host announced the next contestant, number 22, Zhou Yi, the same rookie who stunned everyone in the first round by rocketing straight to the top. His performance defending Minghai City was just as legendary. Tony still seethed, convinced Yi had cheated, the humiliation burning deep inside him. He had begged his uncle for revenge. Today, he would see Yi crushed before the eyes of the entire world. The announcer's voice boomed once more. Yi and the others had been unjustly detained by Tabet just yesterday, released only this morning. And what's more, Yao had fought alongside Yi at Institute 12. This was no longer a simple match. This was personal. Neither warrior would yield an inch. Would another challenger be broken by Tabet's might? Or would Ye perform another miracle and shatter the examiner's reign? Tony was on the edge of his seat. The host's voice boomed, signaling the start of the duel. Yi coiled like a spring, ready to unleash his power. And he was the first to strike. The host wondered if he could possibly breach Tabet's legendary counter-defense. But Tabet caught the blow with a single hand. A shockwave of disbelief rippled through the crowd. No abilities, no special skills. This was a challenge of pure, raw combat. Tabet's grip tightened like a vice. The force of Ye's own attack was turned back against him. The entire stadium held its breath, waiting to see how Ye would escape this. A brutal punch slammed into Ye's gut. Tabet sneered, his voice dripping with contempt, asking if Ye truly thought no one had tried this foolish trick before. He revealed that every last one of them had failed. In response, Yi threw another punch. It connected squarely with Tabet's face. Unfazed, Tabet calmly asked if Ye even understood why they all failed. His counter flared to life, and blood erupted from Ye's own face. Tabet bellowed that they all failed because fools like him never learned simple math. He explained the brutal equation. While Ye was being crushed by the counter, he was also taking the full force of his own attack. Still, Yi swung again. Tabet's lecture continued, saying Yi was being beaten by him and by himself. There was no path to victory. Fist met fist in a brutal exchange, but Ye endured, refusing to fall. The host shouted that Ye's body was taking catastrophic damage. The crowd could only wonder how much longer could he possibly last. Yet he fought on. 30 seconds passed. A blow landed on Tabet's chest, then another, straight to the face. 60 seconds had passed. Yi landed another strike. 90 seconds passed, and Ye was still standing. But the next blow sent him flying, and before he could even land, Tabet closed the distance. He raised his leg for a devastating kick. Yi crashed into the arena floor with a sound like thunder, shattering the very ground beneath him. Eileen cried out, questioning why Ye was pushing himself so far. But Commander Corey urged her to remain calm. He was certain this battle was far from over. Tabet peered into the crater he'd created, where Ye lay motionless at the bottom. He admitted a grudging respect for the boy's endurance. But as he turned away, he declared that endurance alone could never grant him victory. The host wondered if this was the end for the challenger. But then, a figure emerged from the dust. Tabet froze in his tracks. Impossible, he was getting up. Gasping for air, Ye forced himself to stand tall. Tabet couldn't believe his eyes. Ye had used recover. But how could he heal that fast? Tabet wondered. Just then, Ye noticed something. Tabet's body was now covered in bruises. He smirked. The counter was annoying, yes, but Tabet still bled like any other man, and given enough time, Ye would keep hitting him until he was the one on the ground. In that instant, everyone understood. Ye's impossible strategy was finally revealed. He was using a recovery skill beyond all reason, dragging the fight out into a war of attrition. Tabet's full power strikes couldn't finish him. And now, the scales of battle were beginning to tip. Tabet scoffed, telling Ye to save his boasts for after he'd been crushed. Then, a terrifying aura erupted from his body. Ye's eyes narrowed, watching his every move. Tabet had activated beast resonance. Veins bulged across Tabet's body as crackling energy surged through him. His arm twisted and warped, transforming into the monstrous head of a savage beast. More spectral beast heads materialized around him, all unleashing the howl of the wasteland wolf. His eyes grew sharp and cold, the predatory gaze of a wolf. Ye hadn't expected this. The host roared that Ye had finally pushed the examiner into a corner. Everyone knew Major Tabet held the power of a captain. But this was the first time anyone had witnessed him unleash his beast resonance in public. The raw power was overwhelming. Its aura washed over the crowd, injuring the spectators themselves. Some were poisoned by the sheer pressure, while others collapsed in agony. Commander Corey noted that compared to this, Yao's beast resonance was nothing but a hollow imitation. Eileen was enraged that an examiner would use beast resonance on a mere contestant. The situation had become utter madness. Commander Corey agreed. His own fury was reaching its limit. He admitted he had tolerated Tabet's blatant double standards until now. He'd even excused his cruelty towards Yao as a personal grudge. But this was a disgrace. He demanded answers from Rhodes, who had clearly lost all sense of honor. Back in the arena, Tabet sneered at Ye. He had seen countless awakened brats just like him, people who thought they were invincible. But he had a lesson to teach him. He declared that only those who master the beast sealed in their weapon have earned the right to face the horrors of this ruined world. Ye felt the very air solidify under Tabet's immense pressure. Even breathing became a struggle. And yet, this pressure felt strangely familiar. It was just like the feeling he'd had back on the city wall. The thought brought a grin to his face. Now, he would see for himself the true power of these so-called veterans. The beast roared. A violent tidal wave of energy surged forward, towering over the entire battlefield. It lunged, its spectral jaws opened wide to devour him. The impact triggered a cataclysmic explosion. Ye flung himself from the chaos, but the beast was impossibly fast. He had to activate dynamic vision, but even his enhanced sight struggled to follow its blur of motion. Two more monsters charged forward. Ye was forced to retreat at full speed. Tabet sneered, his power borrowed from the wasteland hellwolf. Once it marks its prey, it hunts until its victim draws their final breath. Ye fled for his life. Then suddenly, he stopped. He spun on his heel, unleashing a thunderous punch. His fist met its target, shattering the beast's skull. A flicker of hope ignited within him, only to be extinguished in the very next instant. Razor-sharp fragments tore into his flesh from every angle. The shattered remains flew towards the other beast, empowering it beyond belief. Once again, Ye was the prey. In this enclosed arena, there was nowhere left to run. Then, his eyes locked onto Tabet, who was now attacking from a distance. That was it. Tabit's main body was his true weakness. Ye charged straight for him. Tabit remained perfectly still, watching with cold amusement. Ye launched a powerful kick, striking him square in the chest. The outcome was catastrophic. A sickening crack echoed as Ye's leg shattered. He never saw the counter coming, and its force dwarfed his own. Tabit's beast arm morphed into a terrifying blade. He surged forward, plunging it deep into Ye's chest. Ye gasped, choking on the blood that filled his mouth. With a single, brutal motion, Tabit pierced straight through Ye's body. He lifted him from the ground amidst an explosion of red energy, then mercilessly slammed him into the arena floor. The impact cracked the very earth beneath them. Tabit scoffed, declaring Ye another fool who thought simple tricks could defeat him. But after achieving resonance, his power had multiplied tenfold. Every attack was now returned with twice the devastating force. The beast descended, tearing into Ye's broken body. Tabit noted with annoyance that his opponent's ridiculous healing ability was proving to be a problem. Still, it would be a deep dishonor for an examiner to use lethal force on a mere contestant. His blade began to glow with immense power. This next strike would end it all. Ye could only struggle feebly. Tony watched with glee, certain this was the end. She couldn't watch, covering her tear-filled eyes. Eileen let out a desperate scream. No! Tabit unleashed his ultimate technique, Wolf Howl's Severance. Ye's eyes went wide with shock. The entire arena erupted in chaos, leaving the host utterly speechless. The resulting explosion was colossal, a wave of destruction that shook the foundations of the stadium. The audience screamed in terror. Eileen's face went white. Where Ye had been was now a deep trench carved into the earth. Tabit stood over it, his expression cold and unforgiving. That single strike was apocalyptic. It hadn't just split the ground, it had shattered the arena walls. Ye's fate remained unknown. He lay in a pool of his own blood, a horrifying gash across his chest. The whites of his eyes were all that could be seen. Eileen roared that this was no longer a test, it was attempted murder. Guy agreed, demanding an immediate substitution. The entire crowd began to chant, "Substitute! Substitute!" Tabit's face hardened with irritation. But then, Ye's fist slammed into the ground. He was pushing himself up. Tabit whipped around, sensing movement. Eileen breathed a shaky sigh of relief. Even the host had tears in his eyes as Ye rose to his feet. He announced that Ye had withstood Tabit's most grueling test. Somehow, he could still fight. Ye's expression was now colder than death itself. Tabit's face contorted in sheer disbelief. Through clenched teeth, he screamed that it was impossible. The stadium erupted into thunderous cheers for Ye. Ye calmly met his gaze. "Why so shocked?" he asked. "Were you truly so certain that I didn't have the power to defeat you?" He then revealed the Goliath crystal embedded in his very arm. A moment later, in the VIP section, another fighter unleashed their resonance. Rhodes looked up from the arena. A man had entered, remarking how shameless it was to let a proctor beat a contestant so brutally in public. The speaker was Corey. Rhodes took offense, but Corey simply stated that for a soldier, only victory matters. If shame was the price of victory, then pride was a luxury he couldn't afford. But then both men froze, their eyes fixed on the arena. From Ye's back, massive black wings had sprouted. Z's face lit up with excitement. He wondered when Ye had gained such an incredible power. A familiar voice explained that Ye had acquired the Goliath crystal when he rescued her from the lab's basement. Z smiled, overwhelmed with relief to see his sister safe and sound. Meanwhile, Ye knew revealing his true monster form would raise far too many questions. So to conceal it, he was mimicking a soul beast resonance as a clever disguise. It was a brilliant strategy. But time was up, and Ye still hadn't defeated Tabit. Unwilling to stop, Ye challenged Tabit to a proper duel. Tabit simply roared with laughter. He mocked the boy, saying he'd never seen someone use a pathetic E-rank creature like the white-tailed ptarmigan as their soul beast. He sneered that it was likely the best Ye could ever summon. Then he warned him, from this point on, there would be no more rules. This was now a duel to the death. Tabit summoned a raging tornado, his beast at its heart. Ye unfurled his wings and soared into the sky. He circled high above the vortex, then dove straight for Tabit. Tabit unleashed a vicious slash, but Ye shot upwards, evading the attack. Defying gravity, he hung suspended in the air. The host was stunned, admitting he never dreamed Ye's soul beast resonance could grant him flight. In the entire history of Minghai City, fewer than 10 awakeners had ever mastered the skies. Seeing Ye airborne, a soldier panicked, believing him untouchable. But Tony snapped, furious at his crumbling resolve. He spat that the abyss was filled with flying monsters. Flight alone wouldn't be enough to defeat his uncle. With that, Tabit ordered his beasts to close in. They swarmed him from all sides, but Ye just grinned. He seized both beasts, turning them into living projectiles aimed straight at Tony's squad. "What the hell?" Tony roared, just before the impact. The explosion sent him crashing to the ground, grievously wounded. He was missing several teeth, his left eye swollen shut. Eileen praised the perfect shot, but Ye just shrugged, claiming his hand slipped. Tony shrieked at his uncle, his voice raw with hatred, demanding he finish Ye and make absolutely sure he died. Tabet commandeered a beast, launching himself into the air. He slipped behind Ye, convinced he had found a fatal opening in his defense. He lunged forward, certain of his victory, but Ye's voice was cold, too slow. His wings became a shield, blocking the deadly strike. Tabet's voice seethed with frustration, demanding to know why Ye insisted on sabotaging the military's grand design. For years, they had plotted for this moment, to merge the city's two armed powers, the Defense Force and the Extermination Squad, during this very tournament. For the success of that plan, he was willing to sacrifice his pride, his very name, before all of Narumi. Without it, the two factions would eventually tear the city apart. Ye just looked back, his expression unreadable. With a chilling calm, he asked what any of that had to do with him. He simply couldn't stand the corruption and demanded a fair examiner. That was his one and only reason. Tabet's patience finally snapped. He called Ye a stubborn fool, unleashing ghastly beast claws connected by writhing tentacles. They coiled like vipers around Ye's ankles. And with a vicious yank, Tabet tore him from the sky. Ye had no time to react. Tabet slammed him into the arena floor with brutal force. More tentacles erupted, pinning him down completely. The beast's skull shattered into 1,000 pieces. Like living metal, the sharp fragments swarmed toward Tabet's sword. They forged themselves into a long, razor-sharp bone blade. In that instant, Tabet unleashed a technique far deadlier than before. But Ye raised a single finger. He declared he could defeat Tabet with just this one finger. Tabet scoffed at the sheer arrogance. He couldn't believe Ye was spouting such nonsense at death's door. He unleashed his ultimate skill, Wolf Howl Prison, breaking mountain split. Feathers transformed into razor-sharp blades. Ye pointed directly at Tabet and activated his own skill, Feather Bladestorm. Eileen screamed for him to stop. If Tabet reflected a blow that powerful, Ye would be annihilated. But the two warriors were lost in the thrill of battle. Their ultimate techniques clashed head-on. Tabet's beasts were shredded by the storm of blades. A pillar of crimson energy erupted into the heavens, tearing the very air apart in an explosion of debris. The sheer force of the blast sent even the host flying from his feet. Eileen clung to the railing, shielding her eyes from the violent gale. The maelstrom raged on, before slowly fading from view. As the dust settled, Ye was still standing. But Tabet was impaled in several places, his body riddled with wounds. The entire stadium held its breath. Tabet was weakened, yet a triumphant smile crossed his face. He was certain he had won. His counter would return the attack at double the power. But Ye's voice was steady. He had noticed something during their earlier clashes. If Tabet couldn't release the stored damage in time, it would rebound upon himself. Tabet's eyes widened in horror before he collapsed. The host stood frozen. He finally found his voice, announcing Tabet's fall. No one could comprehend it. The legendary 100 Ghost Slayer had actually been defeated. He declared that the audience had just witnessed history. A mere contestant had defeated an examiner in the selection trials. He urged everyone to raise their voices and announce the name of the new champion. Ye raised a triumphant fist, blood streaking his face. He stood tall as the stadium erupted, chanting his name in a deafening roar. Ye's victory was a release for the entire crowd, unleashing months of pent-up rage. Amid the cheers, Tabet was officially stripped of his examiner status. In the quiet of the exit tunnel, Ye finally felt the weight of his injuries, especially the deep gash across his chest. The system warned of an overcharge, cutting his recovery rate in half. He hadn't dared to fully monster shift in front of so many eyes. Instead, he copied Yao and Tabet, forcing resonance through the crystal. The backlash had been brutal. There was no way he could pull that off again anytime soon. He froze as a figure suddenly appeared before him. It was Eileen. She rushed forward, wrapping him in a fierce hug. She admitted she never truly believed he could beat Tabet. With a trembling voice, she congratulated him. He went beet red, completely speechless as she pressed against him. A trickle of blood ran from his nose. She saw it and slapped him hard across the face. He could only stare, utterly confused. Eileen exploded, snapping that she was on edge the entire time he was trading blows with Tabet. He was stunned into silence. She grabbed him by the collar, shouting that if that final move hadn't landed, he would have been the one who was finished. "When did you learn to use beast resonance?" she demanded. "And why didn't you ever tell me?" She accused him of hiding his true power from her as well, then slapped him again, grabbing his neck with fury. He frantically promised he'd explain everything once they got back. But suddenly, another hand grabbed his arm. It was Zhang Yi. "How did you like that crystal I gave you?" she asked, leaning in close. Then she whispered, "I have even better ones at my home." She teased him with a sly smile, suggesting he should seriously reconsider marrying into their family. Her words made him stiffen. Eileen instantly snatched his arm back. "You old witch!" she shouted at Zhang Yi. "What do you think you're doing?" She yanked Ye toward her, but Zhang Yi seized his other arm, pulling him back. Just ignore that violent woman, she cooed. As they tugged him in opposite directions, Ye could only think one thing. He had stumbled onto a legendary battlefield of love. Just then, a group of people approached. When he turned to look, he recognized them. They were the injured contestants. One of them ordered everyone to line up. Yi was shocked to see even the contestants eliminated by Tabat, and they all gave him a formal salute. What's going on, he asked, completely confused. In unison, they thanked him. They explained that Captain Hing Xiao of the Extermination Squad would now proctor the upcoming rounds. Everyone tested by Tabat would have their results re-evaluated. This meant that those who were eliminated could advance if they passed a second assessment. They all thanked Yi for crushing Tabat and giving them a fair chance. A wave of relief washed over him. Just then, Yao was pushed forward in her wheelchair. Despite her wounds, she tried to stand, complaining that Ye had flattened Tabat before she got the chance. I'll be the one to repay that debt myself, she declared, before coughing up a spray of blood. Yi rushed to support her, feeling her body tremble. She clenched her teeth and forced out a thank you. Her sheer willpower moved him deeply. But their moment was shattered as a squad of armed men marched in. They raised their guns, led by Tony himself, who declared that time was up. Since Ye had refused to leave the stage, Tony accused him of deliberately provoking and injuring the examiner. He claimed Ye had incited civilians to resent the military and even attacked spectators, injuring countless people. We suspect you intentionally disrupted the selection trials, he announced, using it as a cover to harm others. Therefore, he ordered, you will come with us. Yi was stunned into silence. But the injured contestant stepped forward, forming a shield around him. You're spouting utter nonsense, they shot back. They warned him that if he wanted to lay a hand on Ye, he'd have to get through them first. Tony froze. Are you planning to resist the law? He demanded, his voice shaking. But these men had reached their limit with the military's thugs. They were no longer afraid of being beaten down. Suddenly, a familiar voice cut through the air like ice, declaring, the match isn't over yet. It was Commander Corey, with Rhodes at his side. Rhodes shot Tony a death glare. You're next on duty, he snarled. Yet you're here causing chaos instead? He roared at him to return to his post immediately. Tony trembled so hard he could barely stammer a reply. The coward then scurried away with Rhodes. Commander Corey then faced Ye. From the moment you defeated Tabat, he said, you became the brightest rising star in all of Minghai City. Whether you like it or not, both fortune and trouble will now come knocking. You'd best stay sharp. Ye frowned at the cryptic warning. Later that night, at Minghai's most luxurious hotel, the Cloud Pavilion, Ye was stunned to hear that every single room was fully booked. With no other choice, they turned to leave. But just then, a man stepped from the shadows and called out to him. The man introduced himself, explaining that he had reserved the entire Cloud Pavilion and invited Yi to join him for a meal. He was from the B family. Hao Bai, of the intelligence department. The name sent a shockwave through Ye, while the others became instantly cautious. They were led to a private area around a massive table. Eileen knew the B family was a powerful ally of the military. She couldn't help but wonder what he truly wanted. Hao simply clapped his hands, and servers brought out several large trays. The first tray opened. Revealing the severed hand of the B-rank Abyss Lord, Bear God Adahan, Yi was both shocked and utterly confused. The second tray unveiled the spine of the savage beast, Scutulus, a rare monster from an A-rank Abyss. After that came the wings of the Bazak Dragonkin. Hao explained with a calm smile. You won't find a more complete collection anywhere in Minghai. These were all incredibly rare monster remains. Even Eileen knew they were treasures almost impossible to purchase with money. The Cockroach God within him surged with excitement. It sensed the rare traits, screaming at Ye to find a way to devour them immediately. Hao's smile widened as he saw the reaction. I want to be friends, he said. I heard you enjoy collecting monster parts, so I prepared these as a gift. How did you know that? Yi wondered. Zhang Yi cut straight to the point. Is this a threat? Hao simply told her to relax. There is nothing in Minghai that I don't know, he stated plainly. I wasn't tailing him specifically. This is simply my job. He spoke with earnest sincerity, offering a hand of friendship. Would Ye ally himself with the powerful B family? But then, a cold voice sliced through the tension, declaring this world was nothing but rotting bait for the fleet. The air in the room instantly froze. She preached that only by surrendering to a holy power could this world's filth be cleansed, their spirits purified, and a true future begin. It was none other than Saintess Karen. She looked upon them all, declaring the place a den of utter corruption. At the Saintess's side, a pale, muscular creature crouched low to the ground, its body unnaturally bound in black wrappings. It crawled slowly toward the tray. Saintess Karen merely glanced at the bear paw and recoiled in disgust, refusing to touch it. She simply gestured for an aide to handle it. Watching her theatrics, Hao Yu felt a familiar irritation flare within him. Ye stood bewildered as the saintess suddenly closed the distance. Her hand reached for him, pulling his face directly into her chest. She whispered his new title, the Holy Son, asking if he could feel her heart. Eileen froze in utter disbelief. A trickle of blood ran from Ye's nose. He stammered, completely confused by her words. But Eileen had seen enough. She grabbed his hoodie and yanked him back, demanding what he thought he was doing. Saintess Karen remained serene, explaining the church's ancient prophecy. It foretold the arrival of a holy son, destined to wield sacred power and lead humanity out of its suffering. She revealed that the Holy Son and the Holy Maiden were destined to share a single, unified mind. She was certain Ye was the savior they had awaited for generations. With open arms, she invited him to return to the holy embrace of the church. At his command, millions of devout believers would bow. Eileen's mind raced. They'd even fabricate a prophecy just to control him. Just then, another powerful figure entered the chamber. He remarked casually, "So this is where the young talents gather." Instantly, the atmosphere shifted. Saintess Karen and Hao Yu grew tense, greeting the newcomer, Rhodes, with formal respect. Rhodes wasted no time on pleasantries. He valued talent like Ye. He then made his offer, an invitation to join the city's elite defense forces. Ye was stunned by the direct proposal. With a simple gesture from Rhodes, a soldier brought something forward. On a screen was a live broadcast. Tabit was on his knees, head bowed in defeat, a massive executioner's axe poised at his neck. Rhodes declared coldly that Tabit was beyond redemption. He had forced the city's own heroes to sleep in the dirt and publicly rigged the trials for all to see. As a trainer, he drove his recruits to kill each other. Rhodes delivered his judgment. Trash like Tabit deserved only death, and he handed Ye a switch. With a single press of that button, Tabit's life would end. His fate now rested entirely in Ye's hands. A deep unease washed over Eileen. To win over one boy, the military would discard a major general. Ye's expression hardened into steel as he tossed the switch right back at Rhodes. "I don't make a habit of killing people," Ye stated plainly. A laugh escaped from Rhodes. This display of integrity only made him respect Ye more. He sincerely renewed his offer, promising to elevate Ye as the leader of this generation, hailing him as the future hero of Minghai City. That one word, hero, visibly struck a chord with Ye. Eileen watched, her heart pounding. Would he be swayed by such a title? And so Ye stood at the epicenter, with all three of the great powers vying to claim him for their own. Eileen had to restrain herself, knowing she couldn't force her own will upon him. As long as he didn't choose the military, she felt she could accept his decision. Ye finally raised his hand. A confident smile spread across Rhodes' face. In his mind, the boy was about to make the only logical choice. A smart man always knows where power lies. But Rhodes was gravely mistaken. Ye performed a formal fist and palm salute, thanking him for the high regard. Then he confessed he was not the prodigy they imagined. He revealed that before even reaching this city, he was nearly killed by a single monster in the wilds. Even now, the memory of that creature's gaping maw was enough to make him tremble. Because of that fear, he knew he was unworthy of their favor. At his words, the faces of all three factions turned to stone. Ye glanced towards Eileen and saw pride in her eyes. Guy and his sister were smiling too. And in that moment, Ye felt a deep sense of peace. He turned to his friends and suggested they leave and get some street food. Meanwhile, Hao Yu and the Saintess escorted the silent Rhodes to his car. But before leaving, Rhodes issued a chilling decree. Since Ye would not join any of them, the three houses would proceed with their original plan. He would be eliminated in the third round. Hao Yu could only sigh, muttering, "Such a terrible waste." Saintess Karen simply clasped her hands, praying for his soul's peaceful passage. And just like that, the day of round 3 dawned, and the candidates gathered inside the great training hall. Commander Corey and Eileen stood before the abyss gate. It was a thick, writhing mass of green tendrils, coiled like a serpent's nest with a single, ominous purple flower at its peak. The entire thing looked disturbingly organic, eerie, and alive. Suddenly, the purple bud began to twitch, as if it were about to violently retch. The audience gasped in realization. They knew who the final round's examiner had to be. It was the infamous Captain Haley of Squad 10. She offered her congratulations for making it this far before announcing the current rankings after the first 2 rounds. The results blazed to life on a massive screen. At the top was Ye, with 100 points in round 1 and a perfect 100 in round 2 for a flawless total of 200. Tony followed with 49 and 95 for 144. Hao Yu held 128 from his 38 and 90 point scores. And Karen was just behind with 35 and 92 for a grand total of 127. She racked up 50 points in round 1 and 71 in round 2 for a total of 121. Meanwhile, Yao scored 21 points, but came back with a stunning 98 in round 2, bringing her total to 119. Ye held the lead with 56 points, but the third round could still change everything. Haley then stepped forward to explain the rules for the final, decisive trial. The screen lit up, revealing the C-rank abyss, Chiang Mountain. Their mission was to survive for 10 days within its perilous peaks and hunt the monsters that dwelled there. The mountain's beasts were ranked in 4 tiers: Private, Knight, Guardian, and the Terrifying Lord. Each kill was worth 1, 10, 50, or a massive 100 points. For 10 days, every point they earned would be added to their current scores. Only the top 10 would earn the honor of joining the elite extermination squad. Even a Lord-tier monster could be brought down with flawless teamwork. To that end, they were allowed to form squads of up to 3 people. Attacking a teammate was strictly forbidden, and all points would be split evenly among the squad. A team offered a better chance at survival, but it also locked in their rankings against each other. She warned them to choose their allies wisely. She added that squads 1 and 10 would try to ensure their safety. But if they couldn't arrive in time, she would gladly feed the remains to her cute little babies. A chill ran through the entire room. They were given 30 minutes to prepare. After that, the trial from hell would begin. Instantly, a flood of people rushed toward Ye, desperate to team up with the strongest. He was completely surrounded, but he turned down every single one of them, leaving the crowd stunned. He couldn't possibly ally with them all. And he knew that once this trial started, the safest place for them was as far away from him as possible. One group arrogantly stepped forward, boasting that their numbers could protect him, but the first person to approach Ye immediately shut them down. She gave Ye a supportive thumbs up, and Yao offered a reassuring smile. But then Jay went rigid, seeing the saints approaching, flanked by several towering figures. Ye sensed their oppressive aura and turned. With unnerving calm, he simply stepped aside and let them pass. He quietly asked Yao if she felt it too. She grimly confirmed it wasn't just a feeling, it was a certainty. The military was dead set on claiming the championship this year. If they could eliminate Ye, the path would be clear for Tony to take the crown. Ye remained silent. Worse, they had publicly humiliated the military in the last round. There was no way that blow to their pride would be forgiven. Ye had already anticipated this. After he rejected all 3 great powers, he knew if they couldn't get to him out here, they'd make their move inside the exam. She asked what their plan was now. Nearly half the contestants were their enemies. The odds were daunting, 3 against an entire army. Ye simply told her not to be hasty. Just then, Hawu's voice called out to him. As expected, Ye's small group had already formed a team. Hawu reminded him with a smirk that he wasn't the only one capable of soul beast resonance. He then revealed the chilling truth. The 3 great families had united against him, making his victory an impossibility. He claimed his earlier offer of friendship had been sincere. If Ye chose to withdraw from the competition right now, that offer would still stand. Ye thanked him for the warning, but added with a smirk, "I've heard no one has ever claimed first place in all 3 rounds. I think I'll be the first." At that moment, a man in a red cape swept past them. Ye felt it instantly. This newcomer's power was on the same level as Tabot's. The man shot Ye a venomous glare, accusing him of being ungrateful. He snarled that his young master was taking a huge risk just to offer Ye one last chance. And still, Ye had the audacity to refuse. Hawu raised a hand, stopping him. That's enough. Since Ye insisted on walking a path to his own doom, all Hawu could do was wish him luck. Ye met his gaze, his silence a defiant answer. The preparation time was over. An announcement ordered all contestants to check their monitoring bands and ensure they were working. After the check, they would enter the abyss in an order determined by their squad's total scores. The 3rd round of the selection trial had officially begun. Ye, Yao, and Jay, as the top team, went first. Suddenly a voice shouted, "Hey!" Ye turned his head and saw Tony. Tony's lips silently formed the words, "You're dead." In that moment, it was crystal clear. They were the prey for everyone in this trial. He turned to Yao and Jay. "Once we're inside, we stick to the plan. Find a hideout immediately." He was certain that a mountain range this vast would be impossible for them to sweep in a short amount of time. They stepped through the shimmering portal, arriving in the Chiang Mountain abyss. The next batch of contestants followed right behind them. It was the unified forces of the 3 great families. Tony gathered his men, his eyes scanning the crowd to confirm everyone was there. The combined might of the 3 families stood ready as he spoke. He warned them that Ye was no easy target. They would have to go all out. This single operation would determine which of their 3 houses would stand above the others. All personal grudges would be settled after Ye was taken down. Until then, no one was to steal monster points from the other teams. He gave the order, "Begin the hunt." Immediately, a military member activated a technique, sending searching routes through the earth. At the same time, a man pulled back his hood, revealing pointed, inhuman ears. He pressed them to the ground, listening for any sign of his prey. As Hawu's forces spread out, a member from the St. Tessa's faction activated a sinister, blood-forged tracking art. He swore that sinners had nowhere to hide. Dripping blood into a mystical dish, he forged a compass. Tony's confidence was absolute. With the tracking arts of the three great houses, Ye's escape was impossible. They expected to find their prey in moments. But suddenly, one of the soldiers went rigid. Through his sensing vines, he had found Ye. Tony immediately roared for his location. The man reported frantically. Ye was almost on top of them. Tony was stunned. A voice then echoed from the canopy above. Tony looked up. There, sitting casually on a tree branch, was Ye. He revealed himself openly, staring down at them like a king observing fools. The elites of the three families were speechless. A raw fury erupted from Tony. He bellowed that Ye had the audacity to taunt them instead of cowering. He gave the order to attack and kill on sight. Yet Ye didn't even flinch, calmly waiting for their assault. A knowing grin spread across his face, and then came the explosion. From a distance, Ji and Yao watched it all unfold. Worry for Ye gnawed at them. But this was all happening exactly as he had planned. Ye knew they were walking into a trap inside the abyss. So he told his team to scatter in different directions, while he alone stayed behind to face the enemy. She had panicked, begging Ye not to go alone. But his command was absolute. They had to follow his orders. Against the combined might of the three houses, it made no difference if it was just him or all three of them together. While he drew all the attention, he needed the other two to hunt for points. Just then, a bird-like monster was struck down. It was Jay. Tears streamed down his face as he realized the truth. Ye was sacrificing his own score, fighting the three houses head-on to give them a shot at victory. At that moment, he swore his undying loyalty to Ye. Others nearby were also moved to tears by his sacrifice. They gazed at Ye's battle with newfound admiration. Before this, they thought reaching the top 10 was an impossible dream. Now, they pushed themselves harder than ever before. They had to kill more monsters, to earn every single point. They refused to let Ye's sacrifice be in vain. Lightning crashed from the sky. Yao struck down a massive ape-like beast. It slammed face-first into the dirt. The participants behind her now understood. This was how you earned points. But still, Yao couldn't stop worrying about Ye. She remembered all the times he had saved her, all the times he had been there. A thought bloomed in her mind. Could he possibly like her? But she knew how close he was with Vice Captain Eileen and Zhang Yi. Her heart fluttered. Was she just a secret he was trying to keep? Now, seeing what he was risking for her, how could she ever repay such an incredible favor? Around her, the other participants also felt a deep debt to Ye, even though they had never even spoken to him. One girl even considered offering herself to him, wondering aloud if he had a girlfriend. Yao overheard their chatter. Her patience snapped, and she told them to focus on the battle. They stared back, completely baffled by her sudden outburst. Meanwhile, a figure was moving at blinding speed. It was Ye. He blazed through the treacherous terrain, with Tony and his hunters in hot pursuit. Tony screamed that Ye's soul beast resonance would burn out eventually. All they had to do was wear him down. One of his men reported that Yao and Jay had already surpassed Tony's score. Tony waved it off. Once Ye was dead, they would have more than enough time to hunt for points. Ye heard every word. He found it amusing. Because he wasn't just buying time for his friends. With so many enemies on his tail, he wasn't as nimble as usual. He couldn't execute the next phase of his plan just yet. Suddenly, a giant ape monster blocked his path. Then, more monsters began to emerge from the shadows. There was one thing his pursuers didn't know. Ye possessed the ability to vanish inside a horde of monsters. He burst from the forest, charging toward the shoreline, where a massive herd had gathered. Enormous carabao-like beasts stood at the edge of the lake, drinking. The soldiers chasing him felt a wave of panic. They urgently reported to Tony. A herd of spine-backed dromedaries lay directly ahead. Ye had led them directly into a monster nest. Tony's irritation grew. He was disgusted by his men's fear. He reminded them that their numbers gave them the ultimate advantage. Ye's body began to shift and transform, taking the form of a serpent ape covered in thick fur with a terrifying horn. He slipped into the herd, disappearing among the massive beasts. Tony and his men stopped dead at the edge of the horde. Tony's fury reached its boiling point. Ye was still hiding, mocking them. He ordered his men to advance and find him. They began the painstaking task of inspecting the monsters one by one. Lost among the beasts, the men called out to each other. Had anyone found Ye? But there was no sign of him. Somewhere in the chaos, Ye grinned. He decided it was time to stir things up. He drove his claws deep into a monster's flesh, forcing it to let out a soul-shaking roar of pain. In an instant, the other monsters roared back in fury. The soldiers panicked as the entire herd of spinebacks began to stampede. Tony bellowed orders to kill everything in sight, hoping to at least snag some points from the chaos. But to his horror, even more monsters emerged from the darkness. Apes and birds descended from all sides, their eyes glowing with predatory hunger. The entire monster population, including the spinebacks, advanced as one. Tony screamed at his men not to let a single one escape. They had to slaughter them all and claim the points. The battlefield descended into a maelstrom of desperate, bloody combat. With a single thrust, Tony impaled the monstrous ape, hoisting its colossal frame with just one arm. He roared a command to wrap it up, desperate to keep Ye from escaping. In an instant, crimson energy erupted, ripping through the air as an immense pressure crashed down like a raging tempest. The force was so great it shredded the very canopy of the forest. Leaves and debris screamed across the night sky as the woods groaned under the oppressive power. Another beast fell, cleaved in two. Soon, a mountain of blood-soaked corpses lay before the exhausted soldiers. Tony turned to the Saintess, demanding to know if their target had vanished. She confirmed he was still close. But just then, a soldier's blood ran cold. He stared down at his monitoring band in disbelief. His score read a perfect 0. Tony and the others checked theirs, the same result. A wave of confusion washed over the entire team. And then they saw the rankings. In first place was Ye, with an impossible 723 points. They had no clue. He was watching from the branches right above them. A smug smile played on Ye's lips. His active trait, chroma camouflage, an ability born from the forest mutant chameleon, granting its user perfect invisibility. The rules of the hunt were simple. Only the warrior who lands the final blow earns any points. This meant as long as Ye dealt the last hit, every single kill would be his. He'd already unleashed Little Fatty, ordering it to finish off every weakened beast they left behind. Little Fatty tore through the dying monsters, and with each one it felled, Ye silently reaped all the rewards. Meanwhile, the observant Haoyu knelt down, examining the strange wounds on the monster corpses. The truth hit him instantly. This was all Ye's doing. Hearing this, Tony's fury erupted, incensed that they had been played for fools once again. But from his perch, Ye knew their anger was premature. This was just a taste. He was about to show them a truly devastating trick. He hurled something into the dark waters of the lake. A colossal splash shattered the mirror-like surface. Every soldier froze in place. The water began to boil violently, as something immense started to rise from the depths. A titanic water dragon serpent erupted from the lake with a deafening roar. Its ancient, cold eyes locked onto them, and a wave of pure terror washed over the battlefield. This was no mere monster. It was Gu, the undisputed ruler of Mirror Lake. Awakened from its slumber, its rage radiated an overwhelming pressure. A true boss-level existence. Horror gripped them all, but Tony's voice cut through the fear, screaming for everyone to prepare for battle. Haoyu saw the whole picture in a flash. Ye had lured this nightmare out, to pin the blame squarely on them. Any sane person would retreat. But not Tony. His pride wouldn't allow it. With the elites of every major power gathered, he declared, one boss was nothing to fear. From the shadows, Ye silently agreed. That's right, keep fighting it. After all, if they fled, he couldn't steal their points. As Gu lunged forward, Tony bellowed for a defensive formation. Crystals on their arms blazed to life. A massive energy barrier erupted just as Gu's devastating attack slammed down from the heavens. The shield groaned, barely holding on. The impact shattered the very earth beneath them, fissures spreading out like a spiderweb. A violent shockwave blasted outwards. Even Ye was impressed. Not a single soldier was hurt. Then, several cloaked figures made their move. They shot towards Gu, casting aside their cloaks to reveal a shocking transformation. Activating beast soul resonance, their monstrous hands slammed into the dragon's skull. Ye's eyes widened in shock. He recalled Haoyu's warning that others possessed the power of soul beast resonance, but he never imagined even Haoyu's underlings could wield it. The Cockroach God's voice echoed in his mind, urging him to look deeper. Ye shifted into his combat form, activating his ocular skill. His enhanced vision saw blood seeping from the men's arms. He saw the faint, unnatural glow of monster parts, and the horrifying truth became clear. This wasn't a transformation. They had grafted monster limbs directly onto human bodies. Next, the Saintess gave a silent command. Her loyal followers stepped forward as one, casting off their cloaks. Beneath them were massive reptilian shells, covered in glowing talismans. Clasping their hands together, they began to chant an ancient prayer. All right, and that's where we'll leave today's story. If you want the weekly chapter updates for this series, those will now be uploaded on my second channel, Manhwa Updater. So, if you don't want to miss what happens next, make sure to check it out and join the update gang. Thanks for watching. Stay cool, stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next.